From the bizarre set designs to the confusing watch order, Monogatari is an anime that puzzles some while others praise the series' character-focused narrative. The show perfectly captures the cost of knowledge and suffering that comes with living, all while centering around a teenage boy solving supernatural problems that take root in psychological issues. But while that may be pretty easy to make sense of, following the timeline of events, understanding the character motives, and wrapping your head around their conflicting ideologies can be a little more confusing. This video will span the entire Monogatari story and timeline, making sense of the world's narrative while analyzing the psychology and motives behind the beloved characters and their actions. Since the day I first watched Monogatari 6 years ago, I've waited for this moment to come where I could share the impact the anime had on my worldview, and that time has finally come, just months before the release of Often Monster Season. So let's get the first issue out of the way. Monogatari has the issue of a confusing watch order that makes the bar of entry a little high. Adding on top of that, the supposed first season of the series you should watch is Bake, which takes place after two of the other seasons, Kizu and Neko Kuro. To add to that, the first episode of Bake has a flashback montage that explains nothing and makes you question if you chose the right starting point. Allow me to soothe that confusion though by saying that this was intentional to make you confused when you enter, and make you carry that confusion throughout the entire first season of the series. This anime loves mystery, even if it has to force it onto you. Well, that may seem cheap from one perspective, from another it's incredibly artistic. Monogatari is told out of order not because the author was wanting to force confusion, but because the main character, Koyomimonogatari, the person whose eyes are the lens we view the story from, was not ready to share his past experience. Later on, this idea is shaken up as different characters take over the role of narrator, but the same concepts carry. The story is shrewd by the narrator, what we see, a warped perspective. Precisely why scenes throughout the show seem surreal, emotions seem intensified and inflated. Koyomi's arousal a major case of this. You see it through how he views different girls in the series, where his eyes focus, how they're drawn, Haneko's design style altering based on how he perceives her at that given moment. It's incredibly unique, but something that can be hard to pick up on at first. Once you do though, a good amount of confusion can be cleared. From the absence of pedestrians explained by their lack of importance in the telling of the story, to the surreal scenes explained by the fact that this is told with emotions first, logic second. With that cleared up, we can focus on the confusion that comes from the narrative itself, some of which is caused by the non-linear storytelling, some from the complex character psyche and elaborate plot. This video will not analyze Monogatari in the watch order, but in order of the series events, starting from Kizumonogatari, ending with Suruga Devil. Koyomimonogatari will be omitted till the last episode takes place, and the Shinobu arc will be told in full when it appears on the timeline. Now, if you have no clue what I'm talking about, that is very normal, and I'm sorry, it'll make sense later. Just know that this video will explain and analyze the story and its characters in a linear timeline, starting in March of Koyomi's final high school year, where one life-altering decision leads his life down a path of oddities and apparitions. That decision being to save the life of a vampire. There was a time when Koyomi would be labeled as someone with a strong sense of justice, a believer in the systems our society has set up to make sure the wrong is punished. But now, due to some trauma, Koyomi finds that being a loner is best if you wish to protect your humanity. This belief stems from a pivotal moment of his first year in high school, witnessing friends turn against one another, using an innocent student as a scapegoat. But this isn't something for us to explore now. That's not this story. All that's important at this moment is that this teenage boy has shut himself off from others for the past 2 years. But all that changes when one person enters his life. The two connect, one desperate to escape her situation and happy to talk to someone about myths and town legends, about a rumor of a vampire in town. The other, while he may say otherwise, is desperate for human connection. Koyomi coins the reason he doesn't want friends is that their negative emotions would affect him as well. We know that this is just a sorry excuse he uses, not wanting to open up about the true reasons he's pulled away from others. That wall does not leave his mind for some time. Haneko adds her contact information to his phone, forcing him to be her friend. While he never says it, his body language signifies he's happy to finally not be alone. At this point, Koyomi has shut himself off, not just from classmates and strangers, but even his parents. Their harsh and strict methods leading Koyomi to believe he's come up short from what they want him to be, resulting him pulling away out of shame and embarrassment. While from this perspective it seems like a very prominent issue to his family, all they see is a boy going through his teen years, unaware of his inner thoughts. Kizu, in the entirety of the Monogatari series, is an unreliable narrator vampires' tale. Like looking back on a memory or dream, emotions can be angsty, intensified, inflated, or unrealistic. All of this story is being told from Koyomi's point of view, how he remembers it, and how he feels like dramatizing it. What we're looking at is an objective reality, how Koyomi wants us to see his world, but some things that at first may seem fiction turn out to be reality. Rumors are a wish for something to be true, and sometimes they carry the power to will them into existence. Hear that being a legitimate vampire. On his walk home from buying an erotic book, Koyomi encounters Kissshot, the vampire queen. Her state, though, isn't what you'd call pleasant. Her limbs severed, she calls to Koyomi to give her his life and restore her strength, which prompts him to do the most logical thing. He runs away. But then he decides to do the most illogical thing. As he runs away, Kissshot screams out in desperation to be saved, her fear of death bringing her to tears. And this is what prompts Koyomi to give his life to the vampire. We know Koyomi thinks lowly of himself, and it's as if the idea of being seen as the savior to someone so vulnerable gives him a rush, makes him feel worthwhile when in other circumstances he doesn't. His feelings of failure and societal distrust fade away, his acts of altruism, pure yet twisted, a distraction from his own lack of self-worth. And so with a smile on his face, he gives his life for this vampire he's just met. Only it's not living he must give up, just his humanity. Out of gratitude for giving up his own life, Kissshot makes a last-minute decision to turn Koyomi into her underling, which means he is now a vampire himself. He has a lot of questions about the strange situation he's found himself in, but Kissshot's responses are simply lies disguised as truth, stating that he just so happened to become her servant when she really willed this so. She leads him to take on an impossible mission of fighting all three vampire hunters that took her original limbs, allowing her to regain full power and turn Koyomi back into a human, something that goes unsaid though, which Kissshot realized after Koyomi's selfless act to save her was that she really did want to die, just not in such a cold and pointless way as losing to a group of hunters. What she wanted was a selfless death, giving up her life for her servant, inspired by a haunting memory from centuries ago, a tale of trauma and scars that the vampire queen is not ready to tell, and it isn't the story at hand. This is the tale of her sacrifice that is eventually rejected. The power balance is easily felt. Koyomi is outclassed against the three hunters that near killed Kissshot, but to his rescue is a man obsessed with balance, a man who soon Adaagi would praise as his savior, while the man would reject being anything like that. Oshinomeme mediates the conflict between the hunters and the vampires. Think of Oshino like the middleman in every conflict he can find. He works for pure balance between what are known as aberrations, the supernatural beings like Kissshot the vampire, and the humans. He wants neither to have a clear advantage over the other, and seeing Koyomi get nearly slaughtered called his attention. He contracts 3 separate fights for Koyomi against each hunter for Kissshot's ligaments, giving Koyomi a fighting chance against these hunters. But this service of his isn't out of the kindness of his own heart. It carries a debt of 20 grand. Koyomi decides to shoulder it, beginning his 3-round quest to regain his humanity. Before his fight with dramaturgy, Koyomi distances himself from Hanekawa. Knowing himself and what he set out to do, he does not feel that he is a safe person to be around. He's not oblivious to his own inner emotions, and he's worried somehow he'll harm her, so he scares her away with harsh words and deprecation. He's ridding himself of weakness, he tells himself, but his face shows otherwise. He didn't want to lose the only friend he had, but he's more worried about her safety than his own happiness. Dramaturgy is a representation of Koyomi's mindset, that this is a job, something he doesn't want to stake his life for, yet it's the cards he's been dealt. The hunter gives up when faced with Koyomi's overwhelming vampiric abilities. The job isn't worth his life after all. Koyomi seems a little disappointed he didn't have to smash his face in with a steamroller, but he seems even more disappointed in the fact that he was thinking this way. It's barbaric, yet that primal desire is so enticing. The weight of adrenaline and dopamine. His actions also fill him with disdain. So long as he's a vampire, his humanity is in jeopardy. So begins Koyomi's belief that he is no longer human. Despite his sharp tongue, Hanekawa returns, telling him that she wants to help him gain back his humanity in any way he can. Coming off of his first round win, his confidence is through the roof, so he allows her to tag along with him to the second round against Episode, a half-vampire who hunts out of hatred for that vampiric side of him, a symbol of Koyomi's hatred for his own situation. Hanekawa is a help in figuring out Episode's missed trick, but the reveal costs her life, his annoyance leading him to tear open her abdomen with his crucifix. Koyomi is overcome with rage, his abilities heightened by the adrenaline, sending him flying towards the halfling. He begins to crush Episode's windpipe, but Oshino stops him before the point of no return, telling Koyomi if he goes any farther, he really will lose his humanity. He snaps back to reality, Hanekawa's death re-entering his mind, Oshino offering him a solution, the low cost of 30 grand added to his debt. He gives him the idea to use his own blood, which has healing properties, to bring her back. The final confrontation nears, Koyomi only a few steps from returning to his normal state of existence. He makes the executive decision that Hanekawa should not be so involved in this fight. While she has the most pure intentions compared to anyone helping Koyomi, it's not worth the risk. What Koyomi doesn't know is that deep down she has her own selfish reasons for helping him. This world of oddities is like a fantasy, offering her escape from her trauma and home life, something that will be explored later. Hanekawa goes home, but in a dirty blow, the final hunter kidnaps her under Oshino's nose. Koyomi's afraid and unsure of what he should do. Oshino gives him a grim answer that neither of them wanted to hear. In order to save someone they shouldn't have involved in this world to begin with, Koyomi must sacrifice the one thing he's desperately tried to hold on to, and so he does. In an effort not to relive his experience, Koyomi the narrator glosses over the fight with Cutter, skipping over the details, but all the less it's clear that whatever happened, part of Koyomi died that day, and his belief that he is nothing more than a monster is solidified. From Koyomi's perspective, the task is complete, though something doesn't feel right. How is he, an underling to the most powerful vampire who has no experience, able to single-handedly beat all three hunters, when Kishshot herself could not? They should have been a pushover for her. That is, if Oshino had not stolen her heart. The man who craved balance, even the playing field between the hunters and Kishshot. Had he not taken the heart, they would have been slaughtered instantly. The scale of fate, though, favored the hunters, and they won. Kishshot should have died that day, but then comes in Koyomi, ruining the balance. With this new variable, the hunters are now heavily favored in this story, so Oshino once more steps in, bouncing the scales, setting up individual matches. The fourth and last match meant to be against him, for he would be the hardest opponent Koyomi would face. The man who is able to steal the Vampire Queen's heart. However, Oshino doesn't like unnecessary work. Even without his involvement, the scales will return to balance, knowing what is to come for Koyomi very soon. The reality of what he has become, and what Kishshot is. They are vampires after all. It hadn't occurred to him the true nature of vampires, their only source of sustenance being human flesh. If they don't eat, they die. So when Guillotine Cutter strolled in and tried to kill Kishshot, she ate him as one would do as a vampire. Such is their circle of life. And this is intentionally revealed to Koyomi by Kishshot. Clear through her conversation on the roof, it is obvious that her desire is to die for her servant's sake. She's been ready for some time, but when lying on the ground dying, she had felt afraid. She wanted her death to have purpose, die doing something she considered selfless, dying for another's sake. To turn Koyomi back to human, she must sacrifice herself, something she could not do 300 years ago, for the man that was her first underling. Only a few years after becoming a vampire, he chose to commit suicide in front of her. The actions haunt Kishshot to this day, feeling she failed him, not ready at the time to die, and is why she never made any more underlings. That is, till Koyomi. Reading his personality, she knows that she will have to push him to discard her, let her die for his sake. So she reveals something about their existence she knows he won't accept, a diet of human flesh. Koyomi's altruism warps rationality. He blames himself for the death that Kishshot has brought upon the world, and not just Guillotine Cutters, the past 700 years of it. He places that burden on his own back, taking the moral responsibility, and considers committing suicide. But there is one thing that stops him from throwing away his life. Stepping in, Hanekawa forces Koyomi to face his issue head-on instead of running away into death. It's clear that Koyomi to her is an escape from her rather dreary life that is still kept behind a curtain from us. But we get hints of why she wants to be close to Koyomi. As for Koyomi, it's very clear that he thinks of Hanekawa sexually, as seen by his choice to enlarge her breast for the story, something that is altered after Neko Kuro, a choice we'll go into when the time comes. But for now, the takeaway here is Hanekawa has removed Koyomi's desire to escape his problems, and he's in her debt for that. He decides to exercise Kishshot on behalf of all those killed by her hand, precisely what Oshino and Kishshot predicted he would eventually do. Kiss Shot forces Koyomi to face his hypocritic nature. He knew from the start what she was and what she would eventually do, yet he chose to ignore it. Chose to save her despite knowing she'd eat humans. That's just the type of person he is. Someone who would save anyone he finds weak and desperate. Yet when the moment comes and she is no longer that afraid and vulnerable vampire in the subway, he loses that facade, no longer interested in her, choosing to throw her aside, save the future human she would consume if left uncontested. He would kill the same person he gave his life to save. He is, at the end of the day, just a hypocrite with a savior complex. They both know how this will end. The fight between immortals goes on for some time, eventually Kiss Shot giving Koyomi an opening to kill her and suck her dry, offering her a way to die that gives her closure. But Hanekawa ruins this, catching on to her assisted suicide, explaining the situation to Koyomi before he finishes her off. Kiss Shot is enraged that she would reveal this, knowing full well Koyomi won't kill her if he knows she is selflessly giving her life to him. That's just the kind of person he is, and so he selfishly ignores her decision, even in the face of Kiss Shot claiming she will kill thousands tomorrow, hoping this would push him to go through with killing her, but it doesn't change his decision. Koyomi calls upon Oshino to give him a way for everyone to reach a happy ending, but all he can do is scoff. It's foolish to think that everyone can walk away from a scenario happy, but he does know a way that everyone can suffer equally. Koyomi can drink her blood to leave her in an extremely weak state, which would maintain her life and leave Koyomi as an almost human, almost vampire, holding only a few vampiric qualities. However, Kiss Shot will only be able to feed on Koyomi's blood for the rest of their life, otherwise she'll starve. Humans, on the other hand, will run the risk of leaving alive the most dangerous vampire to walk on Earth, and so all parties must shoulder the burden. No one person must bear it all, such as Koyomi's desire. He wants to escape from the pain being put onto his shoulders, and so Kiss Shot and Koyomi become something more than a human, something less than vampires. Tied by an unbreakable bond, the two both forced to leech off the other for survival, Koyomi unwilling to let her die, Kiss Shot pressured into survival. She could choose to starve herself, kill him if she wanted to, but in the face of this reality, she has lost her happy ending of self-sacrifice, and feels trapped to this sad existence that her servant has forced on her. Either could abandon the other at any moment, desert this half-assed loop of suffering they found themselves in, but somewhere inside of both of them is care for the other. Kiss Shot can't kill the man she desired to give her life for, and Koyomi won't allow anyone to perform a selfless act on his behalf. He's a hypocrite, selfish, yet at the same time selfless. His actions ride this line, and his belief that he should help any and all, while refusing any outside help himself, coats his future actions in contradictions and dilemmas. Sometimes you have to let go and choose who is worth saving, otherwise no one gets what they want. Maybe it's better that way, maybe it's worse. And so these two begin their crude relationship, coated in scars. It only takes a few weeks for the next aberration to cross Koyomi's path. As Oshino said, now that he's met one, more will be drawn into his world. The instant you acknowledge their existence, they seem to be everywhere you look. The bad ear mind off phenomenon, a cognitive bias towards something's presence once aware of it. And so Koyomi encounters a meddlesome cat, playing dead on the side of the road. After Hanekawa helped during spring break, Koyomi has started to feel an emotion he believes could be love, but he's not sure, so he relies on his middle school sisters to help him sort out his emotions, which only makes them seem more convoluted. Tsukihi believes it's sexual frustration and not really love for Hanekawa. Karen believes you know you're in love with someone when you want to have children with them. Both ideas don't really seem to help him, so he leaves to buy an erotic magazine, only to run into the person that is confusing his emotions. On her face, a bandage covering an abuse wound from her father. She doesn't blame him for hitting her, she was acting like a know-it-all in her mind. But Koyomi doesn't think rationalizing abuse is how she should go about it. She explains that neither parent is blood related to her. The mother, her real father's new wife after her real mother committed suicide. The father, the new husband of her stepmother after her biological father's death. Neither person cares about her in any meaningful way, which has led Hanekawa to believe that you can't be family without sharing blood. A sad and somewhat hopeless outlook. Koyomi obviously disagrees, but can't beat Hanekawa in an argument built on logic. They simply must disagree. She makes him promise not to tell anyone that her father hit her. Agreeing, he tries to break the air and cheer her up, which is when the white cat with no tail appears. They bury it. Kiss Shot is no longer Kiss Shot, just a small vampire that's a fan of donuts. The reason behind her rather kid-like nature is that Koyomi is projecting that image on her. What Koyomi thinks of her is what she is, though Oshino and Hanekawa have met her as well, since this pair's lives are now so intertwined. He is the greatest influence on how she's perceived. It's somewhat sad what he's forced her to regress to. Oshino is filled in about the cat, concluding that this is a Sawari Neko, a touching or hurting cat, depending on the meaning we take in Japanese. Both apply well. Oshino goes to check the grave of the cat while Koyomi looks for Hanekawa, but on the way to her house, he's stopped in his tracks. In front of him, a girl with white hair and black lingerie, used to symbolize a staunch opposite in this personality of the Hanekawa we know. While it may appear on the surface that this entity known as the Sawari Neko has possessed her, the reality is much more sinister. This Hanekawa is the one that's been stuffed deep down, the one who isn't proper, isn't prim, talking in very casual Japanese that pushes the line of offense, and she's enacted revenge on the abusive parents. They're not dead, though she wouldn't have cared if they were. Koyomi tries to push her to hear him out, find a solution to this problem together, but the Neko launches herself at him, tearing off his limb. She disappears into the night, off to find more victims of her energy drain, a power she claims she uses to rid her master, in this case Hanekawa, of her built-up stress. Koyomi wakes up to Oshino apologizing for putting him in harm's way. He tells him to not look into this any further. He will handle the situation, though it's foolish to assume that Koyomi will sit on the sidelines when someone is in need. When the Neko goes out, Koyomi sneaks into her house, where he sees something that scares him to the core. Within the 6-roomed home, not a single one belongs to Hanekawa. Her stuff scattered in various locations, her futon folded in a hallway. These parents treat her like a dog, giving her nothing of her own, letting her simply curl up in the hallway to sleep. This household situation puts fear into his soul, but most importantly, makes him realize how good he has it at his home. While his relationship is not the best with his parents, at least they still treat him as their son. The same can't be said for Hanekawa. Koyomi convinced his sisters to sleep with him because he was quote-unquote scared, so they wouldn't go out and find this cat aberration that's been going around town. The family values of justice has been passed down to his sisters as well, but Koyomi is more concerned with their safety than with right and wrong. At the end of the day, justice seems so bright and clear, but reality isn't so. Neither are the ideals that make up it. The world is full of shades of gray. 20 times he tried to fight the cat, 20 times he lost. Normally a Sawari Neko would not be this strong, but from what he can gather, Hanekawa has combined with the aberration, sharing her knowledge and self with it, creating something new and more powerful, rivaling even the king of aberrations, vampires. Her tactical strategies overpower Oshino, but Koyomi could just maybe pull something off. After all, he's a pseudo-vampire himself. This whole experience has led Koyomi to question whether this feeling is love. It's hard to say, as he rides the line between that and infatuation. He puts this girl on a pedestal for her righteous and morally unquestionable way of living, but from the looks of it, this isn't the true Hanekawa. It's a cover for the black that lies beneath the white. If all she lets out are her good qualities, the bad gets balled up and is turned into an alter ego that terrorizes the town. The Neko confronts him within their high school, acknowledging that Hanekawa has merged with the oddity. The reason the cat chose to help with Hanekawa's stress issue brought on by her home life was that when Hanekawa buried her, she never felt pity or emotion for the cat. Usually the spirit takes advantage of that good heart the people that take time to bury her have, but Hanekawa didn't have that. She simply did the right thing because that's what it was. She gets no satisfaction out of it, no pride, no pleasure. She tells them to stay out of her way. Hanekawa seems to be a person who holds the dark within, only letting out the light, but everyone has both. Oshino is told by the now recovered parents that when the father hit Hanekawa, her response was, "Good fathers shouldn't hit their daughters." It's almost as if she stuffs anything emotional down and just says the most logically righteous thing, taking the moral high ground, which is disturbing when you think about it. She's like a robot with no emotion, lawfully good, ignoring the anger or frustration she may feel for being hit, coming out later in greater form. Oshino doesn't say he agrees with the parents, but he says he isn't surprised. Living with a girl who is always righteous creates a mirror for your own ugliness and immorality. You see yourself as beneath her, even if she doesn't intend for that, and this can cause a strong reaction from others. Koyomi has found himself there as well, looking up to her as an idol of good, an opposite reaction to the perspective compared to the father's. Regardless, he recognizes that this form will only bring Hanekawa and others to harm, so he creates a strategy to separate her from the Sawari Neko that acted as a catalyst for her alternative ego. He conceals an aberration-slaying sword the vampire gives him, hoping to slash the Neko and sever it from Hanekawa. Oshino wishes him luck. Koyomi understands the Sawari Neko is just Hanekawa's excuse to let out her true self, that who he really is talking to isn't the oddity, it's a mix of both. So he tells Hanekawa that he hates her, that no matter what she tries to do to distress, it doesn't change her situation, her home life, or what she's experienced. He does this to anger her, but there is some truth to his words. There is nothing she can hope to achieve by avoiding her problems and taking her stress out on others. And Koyomi does hate this Hanekawa, the real version that she's repressed. He has no love for her, yet that Hanekawa that was on the surface, he did love that part, the ideal that she was. He owes that Hanekawa his life, stopping him from suicide, pushing him to do good, so he offers his life up to her, and she takes it. Hidden within his body, the aberration blades, slicing the cat away from its master, but it seems they are linked too closely and cannot be separated. Something going wrong in the severing process. The Sawari Neko fur appearing across her body. The little vampire appears before Koyomi, absorbing the Neko's power and sealing the entity inside of Hanekawa, resolving the situation with the band-aid over the issue. While the Neko's reign of terror has been stopped, it doesn't change the fact that Hanekawa still doesn't know how to deal with her stress, or even to be her true self. She's become something like a time bomb, waiting to blow once again, and who knows if next time Koyomi will be able to stop her. Back as her righteous self, Hanekawa lacks any memories of the events of Golden Week, though she may just be suppressing them. Koyomi can honestly say to himself that he does not love Hanekawa, and what he felt was infatuation for a piece of her, the goodness of that surface level. He held a fake love, it wasn't for the real thing, only the idea that she represented. One day he'll meet someone he can truly say he loves, but for now, he'll just go back to his subnormal life as a pseudo-vampire, and so he climbs the stairs that lead to his next chapter. Introduced in a flurry of imagery are the events of Spring Break and Golden Week, repressed memories Koyomi wants to forget, but also ones he knows he shouldn't, ones that you can't fully distance yourself from, glossed over in fear of the emotions that they'll bring up. While Koyomi on the surface is quite the comedic relief, we know deep down the pain he feels for his own existence. He still holds himself responsible for the events that transpired, and they motivate him to help others. Though be as it may, he can't fix the issues found within. This is a fight one must face themselves, as we'll soon find out. The girl, fragile in mind and in weight, is caught by Koyomi, revealing the fact that she weighs roughly 5 kilos or 11 pounds. He becomes curious of her situation, given the fact he has experience with those who have odd problems, so he digs in. Not much ground is learned about Hitagi except that she is considered a good student and athletic, but it seems that when beginning high school, she's isolated herself from others. There's a possibility that something happened in her past that pushed her to do this. The profile we thought Hitagi was as clear as day here is different from reality. While Hanekawa talked of her being friendly and kind, the one in front of us comes off as cold and unapproachable. But that doesn't stop Koyomi from trying to help her, even after she puts a staple into his cheek. While Hitagi may think Koyomi doesn't understand what she's going through, when he shows her his cheek fully healed in seconds, it's clear he knows things most don't. Weighing the risk with the reward, she follows Koyomi to the cram school we're all too familiar with, in hopes of regaining her weight.
私を助けてくださるって聞いたのですけれど。
君が勝手に一人で助かるだけだよ。
These words ring clear over all the issues faced in Monogatari, applying just as well here. Oshino isn't a savior, just someone that knows how to set the stage for you to confront your own problems. The weight crab that has stolen Hitagi's weight is just an allegory for her own repression of emotions, yet at the same time a real crab that came across Hitagi's path. All she needs though is a push to confront her trauma and the proper stage. Koyomi and Oshino supplying just that. One out of his kind heart, the other for a small price of $1,000. The weight crab mythology comes from Kyushu, not to say that the oddity of lost weight must occur there, as the weight crab's existence spans past this region. It'll appear wherever it's needed, taking on the burden of emotion for those who desire it. In this case, appearing before Hitagi just before entering high school, as her mother left their family. But that's only the surface of her trauma. A final straw that led Hitagi to abandon her anguish and give it to the emotional crab. Hitagi has always been frail and easily sick. To cope, her mother turned to spirituality for refuge, which isn't an all-around bad thing, unless you don't proceed with caution. Pretty soon, Hitagi's mother found herself wrapped into a cult, estranging herself from her daughter, in too deep to realize what she had become a part of. The two never spoke with each other, her mother's fall from reality hard for her to watch. Then one day, her mother brought a cult leader who proceeded to assault Hitagi under the guise that he would fix her. Her mother stood idly by, praying for her recovery, forcing Hitagi to take matters into her own hands, stabbing the cultist. But her actions tore the family apart. Her mother sinking deeper into the cult, her father taking Hitagi to somewhere safer. Because she saved herself, her family fell apart, and ever since she blames herself for the collapse. If she didn't stab the man, stopped him from trying to, then their family would still be together. It's the typical abuse victim self-blaming, and while this isn't a great outlook on the situation, as Oshino tells her, if that's how she thinks, those are her own feelings. They aren't for anyone else to bear. Leaving them to someone else isn't the answer. Leaving it to the crab will only bring you shallow existence, avoiding reality. This cues the reappearance of the crab she once met 2 years ago, a crab that no one else but her can see, as this is a mental issue that has been given a semi-physical form. Only those affected, or believing in its existence, aware of the entity. Hitagi finds it in herself to plead for her emotional weight back. The crab returning the painful memories to the girl. For a moment, the crab became impatient, and it seemed as though Oshino may step in and solve the issue. But had Hitagi not stopped him and made clear she would do this herself, her issues could become ongoing. Just as Hanekawa's cat issues was solved by Koyomi, solving another's problem for them will only lead to you becoming their emotional crutch, something bad for both parties. The underlying issue unresolved, just patched, waiting to overflow another day. But if you face it yourself, like Hitagi, you can begin to heal, begin to be whole once more. As Oshino said, no one can solve your problems but you. For Koyomi, Mother's Day isn't a day to be celebrated, but a day that forces him to stare in the mirror at his fractured relationship with his parents. It isn't something that has one singular event to pinpoint, but is more of a slow burn into his teenage years. His mother and father have very traditional morals, and pushed a strict value-based moral structure on their kids. Academics near the top of that list. When Koyomi's grades began to fall in high school despite his efforts, his relationship with his parents took a hit. He believed they were disappointed in what he had become, so he pushed away. Their relationship becoming awkward and estranged, precisely why on a day like today, he tried to abandon ship and flee to a park. Unluckily, his sister Karen caught him in the act and lectured him about showing mom gratitude on a day like today and spending time with her. Koyomi retaliated and left anyway, pissed that his sister scolded him, but more pissed at himself for being so petty and small-minded. She was right in some ways, saying that he'll always be a kid acting like this, that what he's doing isn't a mature way of handling his feelings. He was only thinking of himself when he left, and he knew that wasn't right. Yet it still stands that he has no desire to go home or to apologize to his sister yet. He wants to be left to his own devices here in the park.
荒木くんじゃないの。
After a back and forth, Koyomi shares his frustrations with her, their talk interrupted when Koyomi spots a little girl he saw earlier who looks just as lost as she was then. He goes up to her, asking if she needs any help. She responds with a sharp tongue.
あなたのことが嫌いです。
Koyomi doesn't take this lying down, getting into a full-blown fist fight with a child. After winning against someone less than half his age, Hitagi comes over to see what the hell he's doing. He hands her an address telling her that this girl next to him is lost and needs to find her mother's house. Since Hitagi knows the area, having lived here when she was younger, she leads Koyomi to the location, but somehow, despite having clear memory of the streets, Hitagi finds herself lost. The group wandering in circles. When trying to check GPS, they have no signal. Hours of searching lead to a dead end. She can't locate Mayoi's mother's house. The only one who doesn't seem surprised is Mayoi, claiming that she's a lost snail. She's been unable to find the way to her destination. While Koyomi is on the money that this lost snail is a supernatural aberration, he does not quite understand the full picture. Hitagi offers to go talk to Oshino about the issue while he stays with Mayoi. Koyomi is back at it, only to be caught beating a grade schooler by Hanekawa, who given her very abusive upbringing doesn't question the physical violence as much as she should. When trying to talk to the girl, Mayoi repeats the same statement she first gave to Koyomi. Koyomi tells Hanekawa what he's dealing with, and after hearing that Hitagi had come to see Koyomi, she reads the room and sees herself out, knowing from what Koyomi said that Hitagi has grown feelings for him, though he is blind to it, or realistically, choosing to ignore it. Oshino lessens the fog surrounding the aberration Koyomi is dealing with. The lost snail, or lost cow as it's called in other regions, is like a ghost and relatively easy to deal with for most people. Given Koyomi's personality though, Oshino knows that it won't be as easy for him and sends Hitagi back to break the news to Koyomi's face. She eases into it, posting an anecdote about two perspectives holding two different truths. There's no method in the world to prove which is right, but it's just as wrong to assume that you yourself is mistaken as it is to assume the other perspective is correct. This can be applied to any situation that involves differing perspectives, like what the meaning of life is, or in this case, is Mayoi real or not? Hitagi cannot see or hear her, yet from Koyomi's perspective, she is as real as anyone else in this world. Neither reality is wrong, but the fact of the matter stands. This entire time, the girl in front of him was the lost snail, and Koyomi was the one affected by it. The only conditionals to coming in contact with the lost snail is the desire to not return home, precisely why Hanekawa could see it too, given her desire to stay away from her pseudo-parents as much as possible. Hitagi delivers the solution to the snail problem, which is relatively easy. You just have to stop following it. But for Koyomi, this may as well be impossible. Given his kind heart and high empathy, Koyomi refuses to leave Mayoi alone like this. She must have said the words "go away, I hate you" hundreds of times, trying to prevent people from becoming lost trying to help her. He refused to be another passerby that leaves the wandering lonely spirit who's been lost for over 10 years following a bus collision killing her, trying to find her mother's home with no end in sight. Koyomi vows not to leave her in this cycle, which Oshino knew would happen, so he had one more idea in mind. Aberrations only know what they know. In this case, Mayoi's knowledge of the streets is based on how it was 10 years ago. Even if the house of her mother is no longer standing, in Mayoi's world, it may as well be there. And so after a 2-minute walk transformed into an hour, Hitagi found the supposed spot, announcing that here it is, leaving Koyomi confused, but not Mayoi, who jumps in joy rushing into the light of the mother's home. Hitagi had initially withheld the information that they can convince the aberration that a house is still standing, despite it being long gone, so she could get more of a read on Koyomi's character. When he had first saved her, she assumed that he did so specifically because it was her, but she realizes that he would have helped anyone in her situation, that it is just the kind of person he is, and she loves that about him. Koyomi, though, doesn't want to think what he did was all that abnormal, and of course he wouldn't. He's the type of person who believes in doing the right thing no matter who it's for, and believes that that is the norm, assuming the best out of people. Despite for years others knowing about Hitagi's ailment, no one reached out like Koyomi did, and it's part of the reason her feelings for him are so strong, though she believes that even if she just saw Koyomi helping Hanekawa or someone else, she would still have these same special feelings for him. Koyomi acknowledges how she feels and says if they're to pursue this kind of relationship, he only wants one thing: for her to promise not to lie or withhold from him again, the way she did with not being able to see Mayoi. He wants a relationship built on honesty, and Hitagi fully agrees. She apologizes for not saying something earlier. It was only out of fear that something was wrong with her again, like in the case of the weight crab. She did not want to acknowledge that as a possibility. Hitagi pushes Koyomi to share how he currently feels about her. He calls back to their conversation on the bench about how the adjective tore should be used instead of moe.
流行るといいよな。戦場があら、トレ。
Koyomi expected Mayoi to never return, yet she's been given the role of wandering spirit and chose to remain in the area, a decision made on the hinges of the friendship Koyomi and her share, and a deeper motive explored at a later point. But that's not the story at hand. There's something that requires our current attention. Stalking Koyomi over the past few days, Kamburo has tried to get closer after finding out he started dating Hitagi. Given the pedestal she puts Hitagi on, she talks as if every subtle thing that comes from Koyomi's mouth is a message from God himself. Surely the man who would date her own goddess would be one himself. Having made little ground studying, Hitagi hands Koyomi Oshino's payment to drop off on his way home. He had tried to talk to her about her relationship with Kambaru, who had said the two attended junior high together, but the mention of the name caused her to lash out. It seems that in high school, when Kambaru found out about Hitagi's illness, she used a similar scare tactic on her as she did with Koyomi, but Kambaru didn't push further like he did, and that was that. She ends it saying that they are different people now and no longer have a friendship, but it seems deep down she feels bad for destroying their bond. Halfway to Oshino's, Koyomi realizes that he forgot the payment at Hitagi's, but that's the least of his worries. In a flash, he finds himself on the tracks, heavily injured. In front of him, a raincoat-bearing demon. No, it's clear underneath the yellow coat is Kambaru herself, his would-be killer. Hitagi appears in front of him, Kambaru disappearing. She asks what's happened, not wanting to bring up Kambaru again, seeing how sharp the name is with Hitagi. He lies, which she is completely aware of. She's not stupid, but she doesn't push any further. Well, not the best idea, but then again, when has Koyomi ever had any? He goes to his would-be killer's home to get some answers to last night's events. Kambaru flat out admits that it was her who attacked him last night, or in a roundabout way, corrects herself, telling him it was really the monkey paw on her hand. She herself was in a daze, the events that happened like a dream, fuzzy in memory. But that doesn't really explain why.
私はレズなのだ。
This makes her situation crystal clear. She wished to be closer to Hitagi on the aberration known as the monkey's paw, which is known to grant the user's wishes in a roundabout way. So the paw is attempting to take Koyomi out of the picture to achieve this goal. Everything seems rather straightforward and tied up, but that's just Koyomi's perception of it. Given the story is told through the altruistic lens of a kind teenage boy, he doesn't question for a moment motives within the unconscious of Kambaru Suruga, but Oshino does. While Koyomi may represent natural good of the world, Oshino is a chaotic neutral. He plays both sides and in this case is playing for Team Koyomi, the odds stacked against his favor due to his trusting nature. There are holes and half-truths in Kambaru's story of the monkey paw. She says she was gifted it by her mother, who would later die in a car crash along with her father. She then became bullied at school for being slow, leading to her first wish on the paw, to be a faster runner. But the paw chose to attack the other runners in a race and not just make her faster, which would have been easy. So leads Kambaru to think it's a monkey paw, but Oshino believes that this is just a psychological crutch to make her feel less responsible. Kambaru trains from that point forward to be the fastest runner, not knowing how long the effect of the paw will last, not wanting anyone else to be hurt. Years go by and Kambaru has yet to use the paw since, though it calls to her every so often when she's pushed against the wall and has to rely on herself to fight out. She believes her mother left the paw so that she would have to rely on her own strength and not others. But that seems a very ironic gift if that was the message. Oshino believes this too. Kambaru would finally cave to using the paw after seeing Koyomi and Hitagi together. He had filled the spot that Kambaru always wanted to be in. She wanted to make Hitagi smile like he does, be the person she leans on. She curses herself for being a fool and listening when Hitagi told her to stay away. But how could she not? It was the first time Hitagi had ever asked anything of her. Her frustration leads her to the paw's drawer. She does not remember pulling it out, nor questioning the increasing length of the oddity, but she remembers her wish to be by Hitagi's side. Deep in her unconscious, what Kambaru really wants is for Koyomi to die, to be removed completely from the picture. If the wish was simply to be close to Hitagi, the paw would have granted exactly that, because this aberration isn't a monkey's paw that grants wishes in a roundabout way. It's the hand of a rainy devil, and with a demon, a contract is a contract. 3 wishes for your soul, and it grants your deepest desires, not just the surface level. Kambaru, deep down, wants Koyomi dead, and her face tells us all we need to know. Oshino cannot be fooled by such an emotional tale like Koyomi, and he tells the boy to question more, wondering why he would take the words of his would-be killer at face value. There's 2 solutions to this problem: either cut the rainy devil's arm off Kambaru, or let it kill Koyomi. The answer seems simple. An arm for life is a rather fair deal. But while Kambaru accepts this fate, Koyomi is the one who opts for an alternative. He wouldn't do anything that meant another life would be harmed in the process, even if it meant harming his own. Koyomi believes that with the help of his pseudo-vampire abilities, he could potentially overwhelm the devil in a one-on-one. Given that Kambaru seems against the idea of killing him, he would only have to fight the arm off, which in turn would void the contract, the devil seeing it's outmatched. Oshino thinks this is a dumb idea, but given his value on neutrality and letting those involved solve their own issues, he lets Koyomi try, though he makes a call to ensure the boy doesn't die, though he does not share this with him as he enters the octagon.
Yo.
At first, the fight seems in his favor. Having to focus on just the left arm should be doable, but a wrench is thrown in the mix. It seems Kanbaru herself still wants to kill him. Koyomi is overwhelmed with attacks, pushed to the brink of death, but the plan will still work if he dies. The wish will be complete, and everyone will get what they want. Only he has to lose something tonight, even if it's his own life. But Hitagi interjects.
随分とはしゃいでいるわね。
Oshino knew that in that room, Koyomi likely would try to sacrifice himself instead of cutting the arm off, so he made a call that he knew would turn the tide. Hitagi questions why it is he lied to her about Kanbaru attacking him that night. He stutters, but she doesn't let him finish. She knows he would have likely chose to go down this same route of sacrificing his own life, even if his body was not regenerative. His actions affect the life of others even if he doesn't see it that way. Throwing his life away would in turn affect her, having told him earlier she would kill anyone if they murdered him, meaning the surface wish of Kanbaru would not come to fruition and is cancelled. The devil has lost. Kanbaru confesses her love to Hitagi. Hitagi tells her she doesn't love her, but she can still stand by her side. She apologizes for pushing her away. Koyomi stands by watching the reunion, realizing the irony of his actions. This was always something between Hitagi and Kanbaru. He had just inserted himself in, tried to solve personal issues for others. Something he commonly does and commonly fails to fix, usually resulting in him turning into a human punching bag. Surely Oshino found this funny. He knew this wouldn't be solved by Koyomi's truism, but by the mending of a bond. Unwanted favors, interfering where he isn't wanted. This is what he does. He comments that everyone in their own way is perverse, deliberately acting in a way that is contrary to the norm. That may be true, but there isn't anyone that does it quite like he does. Koyomi has been tasked by Oshino to put a talisman on top of a nearby shrine. With him, Kanbaru has been tasked by Hitagi to bridge a friendship with Koyomi after nearly killing him. Koyomi acts as if he's displeased by this, but deep down gets along with her just fine. At the top of the shrine, it's clear something is not right here. Kanbaru gets woozy and scattered around the place are snakes chopped into pieces, staked onto the ground and trees. Seeing this, it finally hits Koyomi where he saw that girl who ran by them before. That was his little sister's friend, Nadeko. Koyomi shares the events of the day at the shrine with Hanekawa, who says it must have been a hard time for him, but not in the way he's running with it. Hanekawa points out to Koyomi that Hitagi has found herself in an awkward position of wanting Kanbaru and Koyomi to get along, but not get along too much. She, at the end of the day, still wants Koyomi to pick her over Kanbaru. Koyomi thinks this isn't a probable idea since Kanbaru is lesbian, but that's just a showcase of the immaturity he faces. He thinks sexually first. After all, he's a teenage boy. What Hanekawa is really implying though here is emotionally, picking to hang out with Kanbaru over Hitagi, that kind of thing. She points out Koyomi's kindness makes him irresponsible, creating an example by going in for a kiss and pausing just before. We can tell that Koyomi didn't necessarily want this, but he also doesn't make any movements to reject it. He lacks the ability to disregard others' feelings for him, something that one day will bite him in the ass. Being wholly altruistic, trying to save and please everyone isn't realistic, and Koyomi will learn just that. Hanekawa ran off after suffering a headache, a sign that the Sawari Neko aberration may be returning to her, though Koyomi doesn't have the time to think about it. Still curious and worried as to why Nadeko is cutting up snakes in a ritual, he returns to the shrine finding her there. He called Kanbaru to assist him with this, hoping that the presence of a girl would make a high school boy coming up to a middle schooler a little less weird, but it's clear that Nadeko wouldn't have had a problem with this anyway, calling him big brother and showing clear signs she has a crush on him, carrying over from all those years ago when she used to come and play with his sister.
さあ入って
Nadeko shows Koyomi and Kanbaru the scales burned onto her skin. A girl in her class had put a curse on her after Nadeko rejected the boy she liked, jealous of her. Nadeko had tried to break the curse on top of the snake shrine, but it seemed to just be getting worse, this problem clearly needing some guidance from Oshino. Oshino tells Koyomi that what Nadeko is facing is a high-class aberration snake, known as the Jagirinawa. But this kind of oddity never should have been able to be summoned by some amateur with a grudge. What Nadeko did wasn't the wrong process of breaking it either. She was just unlucky in where she tried to break it. That snake shrine at one point was completely empty, but ever since the events of spring break when Kishshot came to town, the place has been a heightened location for malviolent yokai, to the point in which a yokai war nearly broke out. Koyomi putting the talisman on that shrine prevented that though, but nonetheless, that was after Nadeko's snake curse had become a Jagirinawa, and if they're not quick about breaking this, she could die. He gives Koyomi a mala praying bag, telling him to have the girl pray on top of the shrine, and the snake should disappear. But before he leaves, Oshino warns Koyomi of his potential departure. One day, he will leave this place, and Koyomi won't be able to come to him for help anymore. He warns him against getting involved with everyone's issues. As a 1/10 aberration, Koyomi feels that he owes it not just to the people affected by the oddities, but to the aberrations themselves to find the peaceful endings to these conflicts. But Oshino points out the fallacy of this role. Koyomi can walk away from this life as a pseudo-vampire anytime he wants. All he has to do is kill Kissshot like she wanted on that football field. What really is holding Koyomi here is his inability to make a choice that will negatively affect a living being. To every conflict, there is someone who must suffer. Regardless, Oshino knows that Koyomi probably won't change, but he tells him going forward he should think carefully about getting involved. Sometimes it's best to remain on the sidelines, for everyone, something he hasn't learned just yet. The ritual, while long and taxing, goes smoothly until it doesn't. The thing is, it wasn't just Nadeko's friend who had a grudge. It was the boy she rejected as well. A second Jagirinawa strangling her to death. Although he was warned against it, Koyomi steps in and rips the snake off her, but he now has become the target of its wrath. Having no business fighting a full-blown aberration, he's quickly put on the brink of death, Kambaru stepping in and forcing him to tap out, the snake leaving the shrine to return to the caster of the curse. As Oshino said, if you curse someone, dig 2 graves. Koyomi has a hard time accepting that. His inability to fight the Jagirinawa means that now a boy will die. But is he really worth saving? Having cursed a girl, why shouldn't he face the repercussions for his actions? Especially if that meant the girl he had cursed, one who does not deserve to die over turning someone down, gets to live. Koyomi knows that this is the better resolution, and he can't help feeling as if he's failed. He takes responsibility like he was the one who cast the curse in the first place, which is illogical, but a common pattern for him, even when he's only involved in the slightest amount. Nadeko thanks him, but he does not feel worthy of the words of gratitude. He had tried to save the ones who nearly killed her. He doesn't deserve praise for those actions. Nadeko returns Kambaru's clothes she wore during the ritual to Koyomi and quickly departs after Hanekawa appears. It may be that she was embarrassed or afraid of a high school girl, but that wouldn't add up since she was fine around Kambaru. It's obvious in their conversation that she plays up and praises Koyomi, so the logical conclusion is that she felt embarrassed being caught flirting with him by another. Koyomi, on the other hand, is as absent-minded about Nadeko's feelings as with Hanekawa's, or the more likely ignoring them out of a hope they will disappear, and he won't ever have to acknowledge them. Still though, Hanekawa's headaches worsen till the day her breaking point once more reaches a limit. Koyomi originally dated Hitagi because she asked him to, feeling a draw towards her but not love just yet, the relationship growing stronger by the day. Their date showed him the soft side of Hitagi and also made him aware of his own. Her father told him he hasn't seen her smile like this in a long time, and how he's helped mend their father-daughter relationship. He thanks Koyomi for all that he's done, but once again Koyomi feels he's done nothing. She did all of this herself. What he doesn't realize is just being there at her time of need is more than enough. Gazing at the stars, Hitagi tells Koyomi that she's given him all she has to offer, in hopes that it's enough. The first time she's openly telling Koyomi just how much she's putting into this relationship, and the two share their feelings under the stars. Mayoi questions Koyomi's choice to pursue a relationship with Hitagi, thinking he would go for Hanekawa instead. He makes the excuse that she doesn't think of him that way, nor does he, an almost denial of the potential that the relationship had before the incident of Golden Week, and before Hitagi had came into his life. There's also the concern of Shinobu wandering around, Mayoi informs him about. Koyomi takes note to ask Oshino about this later, but there's something else that requires his attention first. Hanekawa contacted Koyomi asking him to skip school and help her. He ran into Hitagi before leaving, in which case it seemed that Hanekawa had already contacted her and convinced her to let Koyomi skip, using her absence the day before as ammo to get her to comply. It's odd seeing Hitagi so compliant with someone, but it's clear that she is a bit afraid of Tsubasa. Hitagi isn't as oblivious as Koyomi when it comes to emotions. She knows that Tsubasa loves Koyomi, and knows she swooped in, deep down afraid of what Koyomi would do if he acknowledged the feelings that Hanekawa has for him. But soon she won't have to wonder. It's clear that from the cat ears on her head that Hanekawa's Sawari Neko aberration is returning. Only this time, the point of stress isn't her abusive home dynamic, but her unrequited love for Koyomi. When speaking with Oshino about it, it's clear he already knows this, but he withholds telling Koyomi. He speeds up the process of Hanekawa's alter ego coming out and ties her to the roof so they can deal with the other issue at hand. During Golden Week, they were able to reseal the Sawari Neko by having Shinobu drain the stress manually, but currently, she's missing. Koyomi dispatches a search team calling in favors from everyone he's helped, who are more than happy to return the favor. Oshino wishes Koyomi good luck on his search, and from that moment forward, he disappears into the wind. It was time that Koyomi faced his own problems without his guidance, though he won't know of his absence for a little longer. His search for his vampire companion is cut short by a meddling cat.
なぜいる
Oshino knew he could handle Hanekawa and Shinobu on his own, or more like he needed to learn how to, so he let them both escape the cram school. The Black Ego shares with the absent-minded Koyomi that the source of Hanekawa's stress is none other than the love she has for him. He believes her to be bullshitting. She had given him advice for his relationship, been happy for him, but she points out that this is precisely why her stress got so bad. He was basically rubbing her loss in her face, unintentional. Given the missing vampire, the only solution they face is if Koyomi promises to love Hanekawa, removing the source of stress, but he tells her he just can't do that. He may owe Hanekawa his life as he believes, but he won't allow his debt to her to be used so selfishly for gain. He knows the words from the cat are the words Hanekawa truly wants to say to him, but she'd rather the aberration confesses her feelings on her behalf in fear of rejection than saying it to his face. Koyomi finds this shallow and disrespectful to all the people out there that have had to confess their own feelings and face potential rejection, not able to rely on an aberration to be their buffer. Seeing that this solution will go nowhere, the Neko asks Koyomi to step into the light. Koyomi's biggest issue up to this point is that he'll help others, but never will he ask for help, even when he may need it. The people around him, minus Oshino, have forced themselves into positions to help him. Never has he reached out his own hand, and the Neko plans to put him in a scenario where his only way out is to call for help. She brings him to the brink of death, making him believe she will kill him. There's a moment when Koyomi thinks about just letting himself die here. It would solve Hanekawa's problem, but he realizes it would, as Hitagi said, make more issues for those he's close to. For Hitagi, Kanbaru, Nadeko, Mayoi, even Hanekawa herself. His death isn't the right answer, and he calls for Shinobu to help him, which she does without hesitation. The sad excuse for a vampire still has her pride. She won't reach out a helping hand unless asked. She drains the stress from Hanekawa, her face conveying the sense that this was the plan all along, to force him to call for help, call for Shinobu, to put this problem on the back burner once again. The cat had talked as if aberrations and humans could never get along. They should be feared, recognized, but hated. Yet here she is, helping Koyomi put this issue to rest. It may be, just like Koyomi's belief that everyone takes help selfishly, that they are both lying to themselves, lying in order to believe their own values. As ironic as it may be, Koyomi's selfless acts are shrewd in selfishness. Not once has he wanted to be repaid for his actions, and when he finds himself in a bad situation, he'd rather give himself to death than rely on outside assistance. He won't bring others into his problems, into his life, and yet Oshino is like a crutch for him. Each time he goes to the man, it's to seek help to help another. Koyomi is an altruistic person through and through, born out of the dislike of himself. He does not see himself as equal to others, yet he doesn't hold this same belief when choosing who to help and who to let be. He's impartial except for himself, full of contradictions, yet in the end, who's not? No single person on this earth does not contradict their own values, their own beliefs. You say one thing, then you find yourself doing the opposite. Koyomi is, just like everyone else, full of holes, of issues, problems, and trauma. Buried below his good Samaritan actions is just a normal teen, living in the gray, trying to be something better than himself. And maybe that's what he should take away from Bakemonogatari, that his actions, while good intended, still reap consequences that could be seen negatively, that it all depends on perspective. You have to choose who to help and who to throw under the bus. Life isn't as simple as doing what is good. At the end of the day, you can't save everyone, can't help everyone, can't make everyone happy. What may seem like the right thing to do may harm someone else in the process. Regardless, we try to do what we see as just, and try Koyomi will. But reality can be hard to face when met with a conflicting ideal, as comes apparent in Nisemonogatari. As Oshino said, there are no good and bad, only shades of gray and people with circumstances. Actions can be viewed as good and evil much easier than a person can be viewed as such. Is a man who killed someone to save a child a bad person? He took the life of another, yet he also saved the life of another. We can't view each other in such a black and white stance, yet we do it anyway. Such is society. Maybe one day will be different. Oshino is gone, leaving Koyomi with the knowledge he gave him, and with his own long-standing problems, the small vampire, and his selfish choice not to grant the death she wanted. He concludes that Oshino's choice to leave meant he trusted that Koyomi could face these oddities that cross his path alone. What he's experienced over the past several weeks has also made him realize his true feelings for Hitagi, and that the relationship isn't something he should take for granted. Something he did early on, even if he wasn't consciously aware of it. But even if everything feels solved for his friends, his sisters spark problems of their own. From the altruistic acts they enact that rival Koyomi's own, it seems the moral high ground runs in the Aragi family. Since the beginning of summer break, Koyomi has found himself placed in a study regimen by Hitagi and Hanekawa. His aspirations to follow Hitagi to college means that he needs to take his classes more seriously. But as for today, Hanekawa has called off his session, so he takes the opening to see the cast of characters and shine more light into their personalities. His younger sister is the first who crosses his path, her feeling of childness still strong as she talks about being a fighter for justice, but cannot define what justice is to her. She believes Koyomi has gone easy on her and their other sister because he's quote-unquote grown up. The real reason is he's afraid of his vampiric strength and doesn't want to accidentally hurt or kill them. His sisters have coined the name Fire Sisters for their constant involvement in any problem at the middle school, which is a constant thorn in his side. They think they're fighters for good, embodiments of justice, but their motives are not their own, as we'll learn, finding their beliefs and ideals in others, easily influenced by how others think since they don't define good for themselves. They see things as black and white, something Koyomi has grown out of. Maybe he has matured, but he has yet to reach the title of adult. He still faces his own denial of what's around him, shown through his interactions with Nadeko. Over the phone, she's extremely desperate in getting him to come to her home as quickly as possible. Since Tsukihi had been close with her through childhood, Koyomi asks her to come. She makes clear that she does not want to get involved, as Nadeko would much rather see Koyomi alone. He seems to not understand what Tsukihi is implying, but really he's just feigning ignorance, as will become clearer and clearer. Almost as if to disprove the earlier idea that Koyomi has gone and grown up, Mayoi appears before him. Within this embodiment of his youth is rather mature ideals, telling Koyomi to burden the knowledge of the supernatural and not dump it on his family. It's a secret best kept to protect them, and if they were ever to find themselves involved one day, he'd be there to walk them back. There's only two people that Koyomi talks about his own problems with like he does here, Mayoi and Shinobu. Never does he share what he's going through with the others he's helped. Maybe this is because Mayoi and Shinobu are supernatural extensions of himself that he feels comfortable talking to them. Or maybe he's too busy being the rock for everyone else that there's no time for him to express his own conflictions. Either way, the unique bond between these two is clear. Nadeko comes onto Koyomi in any possible way, from wearing very revealing, girly clothes, telling Koyomi he has to take off his sweatshirt, the game she wants to play. Koyomi is confused if Nadeko knows what she's doing or if she's just pretending not to know. He himself feigning his own ignorance to her tactics, refusing to acknowledge this middle school girl's feelings for him, and refusing to feel any sort of way about her. Nadeko's mom comes home suddenly, scaring Nadeko, afraid of what she'll think of this situation, aka her trying to push herself onto a high school boy while playing Twister in a very unfriendly Twister outfit. On his walk back, Koyomi wholeheartedly believes that her mother's surprise appearance saved him from something, though he won't admit to himself what that is, feigning ignorance not just to us, but himself as well. What's more perplexing though was Nadeko's insistence that Koyomi did not look in her passcode locked closet. Very strange thing for her to have, something that will come to play at a later date, but also something that fits within her personality. Nadeko is the type of person to get her way through being ditzy yet forceful, clear from her conversation on the phone and insistence on Koyomi's actions at her house. She trips you into doing things her way, and if she doesn't get her way, well, that just never happens. But it just may, later. For now, you'll just have to be left in the dark. Koyomi and Kanburu have an odd relationship, building off of her original desire to murder him and their forced friendship by Hitagi. They come out of that with a rather close, rather strange bond. One that sometimes goes a bit too far, as Kanburu borderline assaults Koyomi for questioning her love for boys' love novels. You can look those up in your own time, I won't ruin it. Kanburu tells Koyomi that he needs to be careful around his relationships with others, as it's easy to take advantage of his kindness, Nadeko even being brought up as a reference to this. Running parallel to his own people issues, the odd relationship relationship between Hitagi and Hanekawa is referenced, which will become more clear moving forward. From an outsider's view, it's as if Hitagi is praying to some god to avoid her vengeful wrath. This is built on her fear that if Hanekawa makes a move on Koyomi, that he will choose the cat girl over her. This idea comes from Hitagi's own lack of self-confidence. She doesn't really have a reason to assume this. While she may act tough on the outside, her real persona is soft and delicate. After cleaning her room, Koyomi departs, but while he was being assaulted by his dear Kohai, his sister has been busy playing her game of justice, which just so happens to end very poorly. After tracing the rumors of a charm salesman to the issues surrounding their middle school, the Fire Sisters, with the help of Hanekawa, find the culprit Kaiki, who Karen ignorantly confronts on her own. She tries to use her ideals of justice to influence Kaiki, but to a man like him who does not believe in such black and white concepts as she does, she cannot back her own statements. Kaiki makes her doubt what's important in the world. For him, this is money, the root of everything good and evil. He claims that he isn't a bad guy. All he does is sell charms. He doesn't create the malice that some might have. The outcomes, whether good or bad, are the faults of the middle schoolers that come to him.
お前は善行を積むことで心を満たし、俺は悪行を積むことで貯金通帳を満たす。そこにどれほどの違いがある?
Questioning what is good, what is evil, who is right, who is wrong. Karen doesn't seem to get it, so she just continues to repeat that she'll fight him. Kaiki doesn't want that. Again, Karen acts as a broken record. It's clear to us that she has no understanding of what she's fighting for. She doesn't question the different sides of the situations she inserts herself in. She doesn't question the motives of those involved. She acts without thinking, and that is why she's weak. That's why she loses to a con man with no morals. He hypnotizes her into believing she's been stung by a wreath-fire bee, leaving her body heavy, a high fever, and also with no money. A service for a service, he says. Even if it's not in her favor, he deserves payment. She's left there to be found by Hanekawa and Tsukihi. Kaiki walks to Kambaru's house to check on something he promised an old friend. The two cross paths, Koyomi asking if he needs something, Kaiki expressing that he heard the daughter of Gaian lives here, but it looks like he doesn't need to worry about it. Her rainy devil problem already had been solved. Kambaru's relation to Kaiki will become clear when it's necessary. For now, it's simply left as a throwaway comment. The mystery of Kaiki becomes more alluring, yet despite this, Koyomi does not follow him, sensing that getting involved with that man could only bring trouble. He felt as if he was a mix between Oshino and Guillotine Cutter, the worst parts from both. He heads home. Koyomi mentions to Hitagi that he saw a strange, ill-omened man. Hitagi's response to this information, a kidnapping, chaining Koyomi in the crammed school for his safety, as she claims. While she does look like she enjoys keeping him chained up and playing with him, she is telling the truth. Her past experience with Kaiki has left her very cautious and afraid of that man. She knows that he is a bad match for Koyomi's personality, and her desire to kill him for what he had did to her is strong. This desire comes from him being the first man to con her family, promising to rid her of the weightless crab. He had extorted money from her father and eventually left without fixing anything, which was followed by the family divorce. She blames him for all that happened to her family, a simple scapegoat for the weight she initially had put on herself, and so she desires revenge. How she speaks of things isn't what Kaiki remembers of their short time together a few years ago, but that's a different tale. This is one about the false sisters, and one of them is suffering from a serious illness that Koyomi has just been made aware of. At any point, Koyomi could have left this crammed school, staying out of respect for Hitagi, but now with a person in need of his help, he must go. Hitagi isn't afraid of fighting him to keep him from leaving, but this is interrupted by a phone call she gets from Hanekawa. We don't hear what's said, but we can tell by Hitagi's mannerisms that scales of power favor Hanekawa. Hanging up, she concedes to Koyomi, apologizing, something she normally wouldn't do. No witty comeback or box cutter to his neck, she really just caves. It's clear the relationship between the two is strange. Koyomi lectures his sisters for being reckless, that they are not strong, which is why they fall short. They are not heroes because they are right. A hero does not lose, they are strong. These two are fake heroes, but they don't understand that. They assume Koyomi is talking strong physically, but what he is truly implying is strong in will, something they don't even consider. They have much to learn. Hanekawa mentions the opposing way Koyomi worries about her compared to his sisters, and frankly anyone for that matter. He's more desperate and brash, yet with her he's gentle, which is precisely why Hitagi feels threatened by their relationship. It's unique, different. For Koyomi, this is because he believes he owes Hanekawa his life, but that really is just what he says out loud. He does deeply care for her, even if he does not see her as a romantical partner. Her outreaching friendship and help during the story of Kizu, which led him to respect and care for her, followed by the events of Golden Week, which led him to be cautious and understanding of her underlying faults. We also get a little more information on the strange relationship between Hitagi and her through the words she said on the phone.
引き分けがないようだと 私が荒木くんに告っちゃうぞって。
To this day, Hanikawa won't just outright say she loves Koyomi, even when this is the second time it's been said in a roundabout way. Similar to Nadeko, he feigns from responding, choosing to let it play off rather than address it. He's too kind to reject Nadeko and, more seriously, Hanikawa's feelings, and refuses to be honest with his own, or maybe they're just too complex for him to understand. Reflecting on Karen's situation, which Hanikawa filled him in on, he realizes that she had a point. His monologue about being strong was more so directed at himself. He believes his own ideals make him weak. His quickness to take responsibility for Karen's situation, even when he tells Karen that it's her own fault for getting involved with Kaiki. He believes he's to blame for letting her get involved, when really what could he have done? Without Oshino's influence on his deprecating self, it looks as if Koyomi's ideals won't progress. But maybe there's hope that can be found in other sources. Still, the problem at hand is his sister's illness, something that Shinobu offers a hand in helping with. Having been forced to listen to months of lectures from Oshino, Shinobu has a large database in her head on supernatural occurrences that is too convenient for Oshino not to have planted this. It seems like a parting gift to help Koyomi on his journey. She tells him that the bee comes from a tale of a plague that broke out in Japan. They wonder if Kaiki could have really brought out this supernatural bee when he considers himself a con man. It could be that this is a fake oddity.
偽物じゃからこそ本物よりも本物らしいということもあろう。
If a fake can do exactly what the real thing can, shouldn't it be considered more powerful? It's able to deceive you on whether it's real or fake while doing precisely what the real one can. Given the supernatural operates solely on the belief in them. As long as you believe that something did what you are thinking, you're manifesting the same outcome whether it's real or not. In a nutshell, it's a matter that is decided by whether or not you believe in its ability, not in whether or not it's a real thing or an indistinguishable fake. Your belief gives it power. As their conversation reaches a conclusion, Koyomi brings up spring break. Shinobu shutting him down, saying that's in the past. There's nothing they can do to change it. She will always hate him for making her live, and he will always hate her for what she's done. They reconcile at this, deciding to live till they die and leaving it at that. Karen tries to convince Koyomi she's fine when obviously that's far from the truth. She doesn't want him taking care of her, which in that case, she should have never got involved with Kaiki. They go back and forth on being right despite not being strong enough. Koyomi once again reiterating that being right is not enough. She wouldn't have froze when Kaiki questioned what made her right and him wrong if she was strong. He tells her she still has a lot of growing up to do, in which she responds that she's already an adult, trying to point at her boob size as proof, still thinking that growing up in strength is only found in the body, not the mind. Mayoi answers his predicament perfectly the next morning.
中学生が子供なのは当たり前ですけれど、自分が子供だと分かっていないところが問題なのです。
Before leaving, Koyomi has taken upon himself half of Karen's illness through a method Shinobu described to him, a symbol of the responsibility he feels for her condition, despite his only involvement in the whole B case, the fact that it's his sister. The talk of what it means to be an adult or a kid causes Koyomi to wonder when he himself will be considered an adult. Mayoi's response that as long as he thinks like that, he never will be. His sisters think of him as one, he himself doesn't know. Mayoi knowing he won't be until he stops thinking that every problem people have around him is somehow partially his fault. Mayoi reflects on herself, coining she's an adult in the mind, child in frame, which isn't too far from the mark given her extensive time reflecting as a ghost since her death. The two part ways at Hitagi's, Koyomi still wondering how real Mayoi is, still unsure whether she exists or not, likely somewhere in between. With 100 sharpened pencils, Hitagi plans to murder the con man that ruined her life, Koyomi talking her down from doing so, a wall of pencils separating the two, a physical representation of the wall within Hitagi's heart. Koyomi pours his own out to her, telling her that he loves her and he doesn't wish for her to go to jail over a past grudge. He tells her they'll go together and can protect each other, him keeping her out of prison, her protecting Koyomi from Kaiki's deceit. This confrontation more for Hitagi than anything, a hatchet she needs to bury in the past, yet was unable at the original time it took place due to her emotions being repressed by the crab, her rage for Kaiki finally appearing after the crab had returned her emotions. But before their confrontation with the ill-omened man, Koyomi must deal with her runaway sister. Obvious from her limp body under the freeway, Karen is in no condition to do anything, yet she pushes herself regardless in the name of a nuanced sense of justice.
他人のために動いている。誰かのために動いている。そこにお前たちの意志はない。
Karen is forced through her fight with Koyomi to recognize her weakness, her own lack of will. Koyomi refuses to fight back, maintaining a defensive role against her actions. She demands he admits defeat, which he refuses, resulting in her admitting loss after a long conversation about the Fire Sisters being fraudulent heroes. She knows that deep down, that they are standing on empty ground. Nothing they say is their own thoughts. They just play the role of fighters of justice like it's a game. They don't really know what it is. She questions why it matters if they're fakes, if they're in the right as Koyomi says they are. His response is nothing. She'll always be lesser to anyone with a stronger will, someone who has their own beliefs and morals. Even if they're wrong, they'll be stronger because they'll have a reason, something Karen faced against Kaiki. He takes her home and goes to meet Hitagi to end the issue with the con man. Kaiki admits defeat off the bat, telling Koyomi his sister was hypnotized and she'll recover in 3 days, regardless of what he does, telling Hitagi that he's sorry about her mom and he'll leave town. Hitagi points out that what he says is just hollow words and he agrees. He doesn't care, he just knows he's lost to them and doesn't need to fight to prove that. It's become more trouble than it's worth. Deep down, Kaiki does have emotions like every other living being, something again explored later on, but he's walled those out, choosing to pursue something that is unchanging and undying. Money. It will always bring satisfaction and never sadness, the more the better. So he avoids anything painful and thinks of himself as a pathetic con man, and not a good one at that, as he tells Koyomi. Kaiki too acknowledges that Karen was in the right when she visited him, and he shouldn't be too harsh on her for doing something kind. Her mistake, though, was coming to him alone. She wasn't strong in her beliefs, though there was someone that fits that picture, who could have been there if she was a little more patient. Kaiki sees his life as a dreary daily occurrence, nothing special nor dramatic, something he knows Hitagi thinks too. But Koyomi, he can tell, is different, sensing the presence from his shadow and the fact he took on half of his sister's fake illness. Kaiki makes clear he doesn't believe in the supernatural and doesn't want Koyomi to rope him into his delusions. Karen's bee was a hypnosis trick that Koyomi and her believed was real, so she got sick and Koyomi took on half the illness. Koyomi references the story Shinobu had told him about the bee. Kaiki retaliates, saying the story was a falsified tale in history believed to be true, so how could the bee exist?
幽霊を信じはしないが、幽霊を怖がるという人間の心理はわかるだろう。怪異など俺は知らない。しかし、怪異を知る者を知っている。
It only has power in the minds of those who manifest the bee into existence. If you don't believe, it simply doesn't exist. As he moves to leave, he tells Hitagi the man who assaulted her had died in a car crash. Simple as that. Nothing special or dramatic, and that's simply how he sees the world. As a canvas of gray with no reasoning to act with good nor bad intentions. He lies and tells Koyomi to not worry about him being Hitagi's first love, followed by him commenting that there is no truth in this world, a lie being just as equal to truth. Hitagi denies his claim. The idea that there is no truth to the world is a real ideology named factual relativism, very similar to skepticism. Truth is subjective and based on perspective, circumstances, and culture. It's only a few steps away from Oshino's belief in bounds, that each perspective and subjective have equal weight. But from the way Kaiki acts, he seems to favor the fake, the lies, seeing them as more powerful. If the fake can mask itself as the real thing, then it would have a greater value, something Koyomi finds himself agreeing with, though he adds one extra addition. He believes that there is a truth to this world, true justice. He just doesn't pretend to know it. Whatever is right or wrong is subjective. That is true. It's something to define for yourself, but that doesn't mean there isn't a fundamental right to the world. Deep in the unknown, there could be the thing known as truth, but that isn't how we can define the idea as of today. The truth we throw around is empty, full of holes built upon uncertainty. But somewhere outside our grasp as humans is the real thing. We may never know it. Maybe death will make it clear. Maybe not. I'm not going to pretend to know, because none of us do. At the end of the day, all our values, our beliefs, and morals contradict each other and even ourselves. Nobody remains true to themselves 24/7. We all fall from grace, but we can choose where we land and if we climb again. Karen and Tsukihi may be fakes, following a sense of justice they don't define, nor can they. But somehow that makes them closer to the real thing. Following an ideal with no explanation, just a word of justice to describe a feeling they've recognized as right, pure and righteous. One day they'll understand Koyomi's more shaded perspective, but for now their world remains black and white. And that's how it should be. They're still kids after all, whether they realize that or not. Karen tries to charm Koyomi into introducing her to Kanbaru, someone she looks up to for her ability. She tries to dress more cutesy and girly, being nice to her brother, which Koyomi's first reaction to is to wonder who's bullying her. This brings out a deeper issue that Karen faces. Over the years, anytime Karen would try to be more of a girl, Koyomi would instantly think that something's wrong with her. In her words, those words made me want to commit suicide. He still doesn't realize the strength his words have on his influential sister, and how they transformed her into a justice-seeking tomboy. A sister Karen believed Koyomi would be proud of, so she became just that. Regardless, the matter still stands. The tomboy Karen wants to meet the perverted lesbian Kambaru, and Koyomi, being his overprotective self, fears what Kambaru would do to her, so he plots a very strange game to put her to the test. One which no sane person would think of, and we're just going to gloss over. The takeaway here is the odd experience made them respect each other a little more. So, after a rigged game of rock, paper, scissors, Koyomi takes Karen to meet Kambaru while riding on her shoulders. From how she speaks and acts, this woman is sure to be another supernatural involved individual. Kagenui sets herself apart from the other two we've encountered though in values, placing a higher value on the real thing and claiming the fake is evil. But we're not going to get into that just yet. For now, she simply wants directions to the abandoned cram school, that which Koyomi gives over. Oddly, she calls the two by the names of the oddities that have entered their lives, almost like she has extensive research on each of them. Koyomi continues to procrastinate his studies, wandering around with Mayoi, encountering another strange individual, Yotsugi, who he gives directions once more to. His procrastination continues as he agrees to take Shinobu to the donut shop, Tsukihi telling him to study, which if she's the voice of reason, he's really pushing his luck. The two get on the topic of the Fire Sisters, Tsukihi sharing that she has no real interest in justice, no clear image of it like Karen or Koyomi does. She is just easily swayed by those around her, so she has faith in her siblings' way around it. Using the donuts as a bribe, Koyomi quizzes Shinobu on the two they encountered earlier. She tells him that Yotsugi, the doll-like one, was not a real human, and that's all the information his small payment of 10 donuts will get him. If he wants to know more, there's someone behind them that likely has the answers. A little angry he hasn't left yet, Kaiki assures Koyomi he'll be gone soon. He just had some minor business to attend to prior to leaving town. For the low payment of his entire wallet, Kaiki tells him that Kagenu and Yotsugi are the real deal compared to the con man he is. They actually hunt down the supernatural, specializing in the immortals. Despite claiming to not know them very well, he has a good amount of knowledge of them. Koyomi assumes that the pair is after him and Shinobu, given that they are partially immortal vampires, but that turns out to be off the mark. There are other immortal oddities, and one just so happens to be his little sister. A rage-enseethed Koyomi who tries to lash out only to be cool. Shinobu calms him, pointing out she's still alive. It seems she knew that his sister was the immortal Phoenix this entire time. Having took over the embryo that was within their mother, the bird was born as Tsukihi. Shinobu's negotiations gets the pair to back down for the next 24 hours to give Koyomi time to process. Kagenui's motives in the situation stem from her belief that Tsukihi is a fake that invaded a human family, and for that is evil and should be exterminated. The pair walks off, leaving Koyomi left questioning what it means to be family. What does it even mean to hold value? Why should the fake be worthless? Who defines what part of the fake is fake? At the end of the day, Tsukihi is still his sister, though she may have an immortal firebird within her. She may not be entirely of his blood, but that doesn't make her invaluable. He tries to find his answer in Karen.
月ちゃんのためには死ねるか
死ねる。笑いながら死んでやる。
He looks over his sister's face, reaching in to kiss. It felt weird, kissing his sister, and that's exactly what he expected, and proves in his mind that she is nothing but the real thing to him, even if others consider her a fake. It's an odd way to go about confirming this, but Koyomi is a rather odd individual. Shinobu and Koyomi confront the pair, Shinobu in a more powered state for the upcoming battle after receiving an extra helping of blood. Given that Kagenui craves violence, it's decided this disagreement will be settled through fist. Before they throw punches, she confirms the suspicion that she, Oshino, and Kaiki were university mates, having the same major and being in the same club. And it seems that Kaiki, the one who says he does not believe in the supernatural, was the one who sold information on Tsukihi being the immortal bird. Hypocrisy at its finest, something that Kagenui realizes about her own self here as well. She pushes for Koyomi to not force his own beliefs on others, his retaliation being that they're his family. He'll do anything he believes will protect and safeguard them, even if that's lying and hiding the secret that Tsukihi is a phoenix. He takes the burden of responsibility for her condition, although there's not a reason for him to do so. It's just the type of person he is. Her belief of the real thing being more valuable than the fake is rocked at Koyomi's acceptance of Tsukihi, and she's left to question if what she is doing is contrary to her own beliefs, pushing Koyomi to accept her take on fakes, pushing her own beliefs onto him. She reflects on a game Kaiki and her used to play. They had both believed in the theory of fundamental evil, an opposite to fundamental good, thinking of good as a pipe dream and the evil a reality, desire at the root of humanity. If we ride that theory, good would be considered hypocrisy, given it's underlined with desire, meaning there's no such thing as doing something out of the good of your own heart. It's just a surface level facade. But Kaiki had proposed that given if something is fundamentally evil, yet performs something good, then in its efforts to be the real thing, it is of greater good than that of something that was just good to begin with. Kagenui realizes this applies to this situation as well. In Tsukihi's attempts to be a sister and daughter, she is more of one than a run-of-the-mill child, despite her being a fake. She starts to feel weird and unmotivated in the current job. Koyomi's unwillingness to fight back contributing to that.
あなたが僕を人間扱いしてくれたからですよ。今まで推しの一人だけなんです。
Hitagi, Shinobu, Mayoi, Hanekawa. Anyone who knows about his vampiric abilities treats him like an immortal. Anytime he was injured, the only one who would be worried is Oshino. Hitagi only commenting on his recklessness, never actually worried. Hanekawa still sees him as an escape from her normal world, her friend who's a vampire. Yet since meeting, Kagenui had always referred to him as human, one with some slight side effects. This comforted him, gave him a sense that he wasn't the monster he thinks of himself as. And he thanks her. She decides to let things lie as is, something she remarks that Oshino would probably smile at. While Kaiki had believed the fake is worth more, and she always believed the real thing was, Oshino had always argued that they had equal worth. So here she is, doing something that he'd get a kick out of. To separate herself from the man, she decides to leave in a way that Oshino would never.
さようなら。
Koyomi's story of fakes has reached its conclusion, ending with the clear message of fake isn't invaluable. He has seen it firsthand, how one can be realer than the real thing in pursuit to be recognized as so. And it's a good closer to Nisemonogatari, but the story doesn't end there. Koyomi's growth as a person is still left unfinished. There are demons in his closets and in his shadows. He still holds a belief that he should take on the responsibility for everything around him, a result of a story buried deep within his past and present in his shadow reflected in his future. His friends still have their own issues to face. Except for Hitagi, no one has reached their personal resolutions. While their supernatural oddities may be at bay, they will once more bleed back into this world. The psychological issues that were their catalyst still unsolved. Koyomi's story has just begun, yet this video has just ended. There is still so much more to make sense of Monogatari, and much more will I explore soon. To be dead but alive, dead but resurrected, or simply dead. Which state of existence brings the most happiness? It's an interesting question. In some ways, they're all lucky enough to be conscious after dying, but that's a somewhat generalized thought for three existences so widely different. Koyomi is a quasi-human vampire. Yotsugi is Tsukumogami, a tool, or in this case a doll with a spirit. Mayoi a ghost, though the motive for her continued presence as one is uncertain. She had completed her unfinished business, had she not? It's a question that's bothered Koyomi since the day he helped her find her mother's house, yet something he never brought up with her. In some ways not wanting to know, because if he did, we know that he'd do everything to help her. But that would also mean saying goodbye to a friend. Is Mayoi happy with her existence? From the looks of it, I'd say yes. But Koyomi seems unsure of that. Maybe it's a building guilt from not asking these kinds of questions or trying to help her progress to the afterlife. But either way, his time to reflect is cut short. His summer homework due in the morning, and he's all out of time. There's a solution to this issue, one which involves time travel, a shrine portal, and a small vampire that is more than happy to help Koyomi leap back to keep his grade point average up. After all, this is her idea. The goal was to travel only a few days back so he could finish his work, yet somehow the pair ends up 11 years off that mark, in the month of May, on Mother's Day. It's relatively easy to see how this could have happened. Given Koyomi's wandering brain and desire to help others, when time travel is introduced to him, the first thing that comes to mind in his head isn't his soon-to-be-due homework, but the idea of saving Mayoi from the car crash that would turn her into a lost snail aberration. And since this jump is based on what the user is thinking, they have found themselves right before it happens. Ignoring the concepts of paradoxes or butterfly effects, Koyomi guides Mayoi to her mother's house, preventing her death. They once more travel through the gate back to the present, but what they find isn't their normal hometown, but a barren landscape devoid of people. It would seem his actions of saving a child from death led to the world's near total annihilation. Only the real reason isn't that simple. Because Mayoi never met Koyomi as the lost snail, never sparked a friendship, a pivotal piece of information was not shared with Koyomi that day Shinobu Shinobu went missing, that being where she went. Had Koyomi not found Shinobu that day, she never would have entered his shadow, meaning he never would have been saved by Black Hanekawa, who, in this world line, killed him. Shinobu had been at this time playing with the decision that if Koyomi did not find her, she would destroy the world. While it seems petty, it was more like a childish threat you'd say you're gonna do if you don't get something you want, which you may not even be vocalizing in the first place. Not something you'd really follow through with, but regardless, it has its consequences. Shinobu's inability to compromise her pride and be honest with herself that she's lonely and wants to be closer to her friend meant that Koyomi would die that day. Mayoi's tip-off to him just meant Shinobu could enter his shadow and be there to prevent his death, but they aren't as lucky here, and time has run out. Shinobu's originally empty threat comes to reality after her servant dies. In grief, she destroys the world, turning everyone into zombie-like quasi-vampires. Her hatred and sorrow somehow altering their form, failing to turn them into true vampires. Shinobu never wanted any of this to happen. Seeing this world play out this way leaves her with a heavy heart, one Koyomi decides to burden with her. As they originally reconcile, they will die together, but they will also live together. Their lives inseparable, their bond deeply rooted. For an arc named after Mayoi, it appears the true focus is on the relationship of a servant and his one-time master. As it turns out, Mayoi was in fact able to continue living, something Koyomi finds comfort in knowing. Older Mayoi had been entrusted with a letter by an old friend who had taught her how to fight the quasi-vampires, that man being none other than Oshino Meme. He had left a letter with Mayoi to one day give to Koyomi. Somehow Oshino had deduced what Koyomi had done to cause this to happen, but he assures him it's not as if his actions could be prevented. You can't erase and alter time, you can only jump to another possibility, and so Koyomi had entered a world line where he saved Mayoi. This chain of events involving Shinobu was always fated to happen on this line. He had learned of Koyomi's time jumping when collecting oddity stories over the years, running into Mayoi, who described an odd man that helped her home. When the description eventually lined up with the person he would meet during the Kizu story, that being Koyomi, he had his realization. He had left this letter with a simple ask for Koyomi to save the world from Kiss Shot, who had failed suicide and is still causing a mess for the remaining survivors. He, along with Kaiki and Kagenui, were off to a suicide assault against the vampire when they were last seen. We can only assume what happened to him. He ends his letter telling Koyomi that he doesn't have to save this world. It wouldn't matter nor affect the line that he originally came from. It's just a simple favor asked by a friend. He also notes that Koyomi of this world dated Hitagi, wondering who the Koyomi from this other world line ended up dating. While the last bit may seem unnecessary, its inclusion tells us that Hitagi and Koyomi were fated to be together, even if Mayoi, whose presence in original issue is when Hitagi confessed her feelings, never happened. Koyomi has often said he started dating Hitagi because she asked him, but their connection looks to be deeper than that, something that feels as if it was fate, but that's just an extra layer to the story. The issue at hand is still unsolved. Koyomi decides that he will save this world, but he's honest with himself about it. It's not for a purpose as heroic as saving the world that drives him. All he wants is for the world line where Mayoi survives to not be such a dreary one. He had started this quest originally to bring her happiness, yet here they are in an annihilated world. Shinobu joins his march towards the final boss, the two in this together. For dying together,
生きるときはなお一緒かの
the pair confront Kiss Shot, Shinobu for the first time verbalizing her feelings, scolding herself for being too prideful and petty, knowing that their loneliness could have been solved earlier if they just opened themselves up a little more to the boy in front of them. Koyomi can tell this is coming from the heart, that this is the person Shinobu is behind the wall she's built over 300 years. And Kiss Shot knows that too. She's happy just knowing that there was a world where things were different, one where the two of them became as close as the pair in front of her are. Signs of affection, warm atmosphere, compromise. If only she could have compromised then, but that's the past. This is now. This is reality. Kiss Shot asked Shinobu to drain her energy and use it for them to get home, knowing full well she'll die, something she's seeked out since losing her servant. She asked Koyomi for a final head pat, a sign of affection she's shown the like over the series, something she tried to hide under her helmet at Bake, something that she selfishly wants before dying. It's not an order, just an ask from a partner. He doesn't turn her final wish down. Everything returns to its original state, though Shinobu and Koyomi's relationship has deepened over this adventure. At this point, school has already started, and the homework this time travel was supposed to be for remains unfinished, though their trip was not a total loss. On his way from the shrine, he runs into Mayoi, who's happy to see him, bringing us full circle. Despite his mission to change Mayoi's fate, she remains happy with what it is now. She mentions that she doesn't wish to be human again. After all, she's nearly been a ghost for longer than she was human. It seems his worry for her was not needed. The relationship continues as it always has, with a little more appreciation. But the laws of the universe have deemed this friendship unnatural. An invisible aberration, or more to say an anti-aberration, an entity coined the name the Darkness. The void-like presence pursues Mayoi and Koyomi, only to be saved by Yotsugi, who happened to still be in the area after her conversation with Koyomi yesterday. Shinobu claims to have met this darkness 400 years ago, in the same period where she met her first underling, the Aberration Slayer. It had appeared before her while she tried to live an existence that was contrary to the one she was given. Instead of a vampire, she played the role of a god. This was not allowed. An aberration must strictly live by the principles they were chosen to act under, which if this entity was to appear again, one of them has to be the target of the darkness. One of them more obvious than others. But given Koyomi's deep-rooted desire to never shift weight onto others' shoulders, he ignores the obvious in front of him and continues to play dumb. More to say, he is dumb when it comes to these circumstances. He is very much a person that is smart when he applies himself and stupid when he chooses to be. Yotsugi appears and mentions they should see a person known as Gaian, someone who knows everything, including how to solve their problem with the darkness, which in that moment reappears. In the flurry to flee from the entity, Koyomi and Shinobu's connection was severed. The consequences irregular. It isn't that Koyomi is no longer a quasi-vampire, more that his powers are leaking, his ability to regenerate very minimal. Shinobu, on the other hand, is trapped in the cram school where the darkness lies, her power weakening in tandem with his despite the fact it should be growing. Something is very wrong. Koyomi and Yotsugi try to contact Kage Nui so they can get assistance in solving the mystery of the darkness, but instead they stumble upon someone who knows everything. A very pushy and off-putting character, someone that even makes Yotsugi uncomfortable despite knowing her prior to this meeting, almost as if she's afraid of her superiority. Unlike the other three oddity specialists, she is older, having been their upperclassman in college, and one that far surpassed them in knowledge. Gaian offers her help to Koyomi on the condition he does her 3 favors. The first to introduce her to her nephew Kambaru, the second to help Yotsugi with the job she was entrusted that has been interrupted by his current situation, and 3 to have Kambaru help with said job. Given that Gaian continuously tells us she's all-knowing, it's clear she has some scheme in mind regarding these favors, though that isn't an issue at the moment. Koyomi has no other choice but to agree. The only thing currently on his mind, Shinobu's safety. He had just strengthened their relationship and he refuses to lose her to this entity. The thing is though, Koyomi nor Shinobu can stop this darkness, because they aren't the target. It's only after the lost cow runs contrary to their existence that the darkness appears. A lost cow that should have entered the afterlife, it still hangs around, the ghost of a ghost who's overstayed their welcome, and the law has come to enforce the rules. The darkness is an anti-aberration that wipes those that don't follow the rules of their existence. Gaian compares it to human society, how it removes those that don't fit its mold, banishing them from our line of sight. Disgusted and pitied. The darkness is like an extreme version of that, but same in the sense that it is a non-physical object that represents the unspoken rules. The reason they are currently safe here is because for the moment, they are lost in the mountains, which means Mayoi's role as the lost snail is being fulfilled. But if they were to return home, the entity would once again reappear, and so there is only one option for them. Mayoi must disappear. Koyomi refuses to accept their situation, spouting hysteria that they can just remain lost for the next few decades, and Mayoi never has to disappear to the afterlife. Mayoi comments how childish he sounds, and how he's ignoring the feelings of everyone waiting for him at home. In some ways, Koyomi hasn't let go of his biggest fault, not being able to accept that not everyone can get the happy ending he wants, not being able to accept someone sacrificing something for him. It's the same as when Kishot tried to give her life for him, but what's different this time is he does not have the power to stop Mayoi. He's forced to watch the selfless actions of another, unable to selfishly stop them. Koyomi doesn't understand why she would go through with this. Mayoi points out it's the same thing he does every day for the people in his life. Just as he has doubts about his actions, worries and fears, she's afraid of what awaits her on the other side as well. But she braves it for the one she loves because that's what you feel compelled to do. The ghost tells Koyomi she loved him and disappears from his life, leaving Koyomi with the burden of loss. But more importantly, the feeling of failure. He is once more watched as society, in this case the aberration's equivalent, bend another's life. There's still time before Koyomi will share his past with us, the trauma that made him what he is today, that created his flaws. Before tackling that though, there's a predicament with Shinobu and Tsubasa that needs to be explored first. Parallel to Koyomi's trio of adventures is Hanako Tsubasa's own discovery of herself. During his trip through time, Hanako encounters a tiger, not one that could have escaped a zoo, but a large white aberration that radiates a sense of fiery rage, and it would seem that this fire is walking towards her home. Gone is her home. Her parents look for a place to stay while they find somewhere to rent. Not wanting to be a nuisance in their life, Hanako tells them she'll stay at a friend's house, to which her pseudo-parents allow immediately, without even wondering where she plans to go. It's logical, given her actions up to this point, that Hanako finds herself sleeping in an abandoned cram school. She has long had the issue of reaching out for help, and so she turns to a place where no one will be bothered by her presence. What she doesn't realize is that her absence bothers them all the same. Hitagi finds her here and breaks down into tears, worried about where she might be, what might have happened. She lectures her on the severe lack of safety her choice was. She apologizes. Hitagi takes her to her home. Hanako reflects on Koyomi, something she thinks about often, which we could infer before, but given that we were in Koyomi's story, we did not get to understand Tsubasa the way we get to hearing her thoughts during the story of the tiger. She knows that Koyomi only sees her as the pure white, good angel she's acted as on the surface, but she knows that isn't who she really is. He knows that too, but he chooses to feign ignorance. Her true colors bleed out in instances like with the Sawari Neko, and quite obviously, the fire that burned her house, the tiger at the center of it. Her love for Koyomi isn't something she can pinpoint a time or place. She just knew she loved him when the feeling came. She had known about him before spring break. As confident as Koyomi made it seem, his idea that he was invisible was incorrect. Koyomi was well known and visible to his classmates and teachers, just not for good reasons. His frequent absences made him more noticeable than he would lead us to believe. She had noted that this started around 10th grade. Before then, he was more like his sisters, but that first year of high school made him more pessimistic, making him who he was when they met before Kishot came into his life, and before she did. Koyomi had changed since they met, but despite that, she loved him all the same. He began showing himself more outward. He stopped trying to cut himself off from society and opened himself to the people that stumbled into his life, like her. Change wasn't all that bad, yet still, she refuses to do the same. She still cuts herself off from her heart. Hitagi asks her if she still loves Koyomi, which she answers yes to without so much as a second thought. Hitagi isn't angered by this. She understands that love isn't something you can so much as cut off. Yet Hanako has no sense of envy or jealousy. She just sits in the pain, almost as if numb to her situation. The personality known as Black Hanako resurfaces, and has been at least twice before now shown by the skipped chapters. She confronts the tiger, telling it not to harm her white self. The tiger does not care, nor does it plan to do anything. It only marches on in wrath to fulfill its pyromaniacal duties, threatening the cat out of its way. Their conversation is left at that. Hitagi confronts the cat when it returns, not threatened nor angry. She just speaks to it as if it's the first time they've met, and in a sense it is. While the cat may just be a different part of Hanako, it's a side she has yet to see before. They shake hands, Hitagi asking the cat to take care of Hanako for her. To repay Hitagi for the hospitality, Hanako makes breakfast, a breakfast that shows us and Hitagi the roots of Hanako's issues. The eggs remain unseasoned, the bread plain, a salad with no dressing, coffee served black. It's not that she dislikes seasoning, sugar, and spice, it's just that she doesn't need them. She's perfectly content with the plain food in front of her, which is telling of how she's perfectly fine in a situation oozing with stress. She has no relationship with the people she should be calling her parents, no space face of her own. She has never been able to tell the boy she loves how she feels, and even in this situation, she hasn't made any move to change it nor express her distaste. She has shut herself off from the negative emotions. Only the whiteness of her purity lives within her aberrations burdening her emotional baggage.
嫌いなものがあるっていうのは好きなものがあるのと同じくらい大切なことじゃない。
Hitagi wonders if Hanako really loves Koyomi, or if this love is just as plain as the rest of her emotion. Not an ounce of envy or desire to be with him. Could she really say she loves a boy she makes no effort to express herself for? Koyomi has been MIA for a couple days now. Only one abrupt text coming through during that period, letting them know he was okay. And now, a text sent to Kambaru asking to meet him at the cram school. Hanako is a bit hurt that he didn't ask for her help, but instead of entertaining these feelings of jealousy, she brushes them off and assumes there is a greater reason for it. Her and Hitagi talk about their desire to help Koyomi, but feel they would just get in the way of what he has to do. It's clear that Koyomi has a one-track mind and doesn't have the ability to think about anything outside of his eyesight. It's just how he is and always has been. Given Hitagi's small home, Hanako can't stay any longer since her father's returned home, so she devised a plan to convince Karen and Tsukihi to take Hanako to their home, and so she goes to live with the Areagis for some time. The Areagi parents allow her to stay as the Fire Sisters expected. Their parents are the source of the sisters and their brothers' justice-driven values. They all have their own ways of upholding that value, but it's the same motive all the same. They would never turn away someone in need of help, and so she stays in Koyomi's room, in Koyomi's pajamas, in Koyomi's bed. The bliss keeps her from falling asleep for some time, the cat waiting for its time to shine. Despite having no desire to carry out Gaian's favor, he owes her for solving the problem with the darkness, even if it meant saying goodbye to the lost cow Mayoi. Kambaru instantly agrees to carry out whatever Koyomi needs her to do, despite his pleas for her to say no. It just goes to show how committed she is to Hitagi, and at this point to Koyomi as well. This is her way of serving the woman she loves, and out of that she found a deep bond with Koyomi as well. While they discuss the rendezvous point with Gaian, a suit of armor strolls into the abandoned classroom, speaking no words, but giving off an aura of wrath. Kambaru tries to fight it off, telling Koyomi to run, but neither will abandon the other. They're both pushed against a wall, the suit seeming to drain their energy like a vampire. It drains Koyomi of his voice to speak to them. It makes clear it's searching for what's left of Kishshot, knowing that Koyomi and it are bred from the same stock. The samurai suit in front of them is the first minion of the vampire queen Kishshot. The one who killed himself seems to have failed to do so, coming back 400 years later in search of his old master. Koyomi and Kambaru are only spared as the cram school becomes engulfed in purple flames, the vampire samurai seeing himself out. When the Neko awoke, she had found Shinobu in Koyomi's room. The Sawadi offered to take Shinobu to her master, but it seems they had arrived too late. The school was no more than rubble. The two depart ways, Shinobu returning the favor by letting her know the tiger she is seeking out does not exist as far as she's concerned, meaning that this tiger is a new aberration, just as Black Hanekawa was only months ago. The two only survived the flames thanks to Yotsugi, and continue to only survive because of her. Before she went on her way, she marked Koyomi with her foot, something that makes sense a little later, but at the moment it just comes off as odd. Another problem arises. No matter where he walks, Koyomi becomes lost, unable to find the park where Gaian wants to meet, almost as if the lost snail had cursed them once again. Maybe the words of the vampire samurai had done so, telling them to head straight home with no detours. Maybe there was more at play than we currently understand. But there is one woman that would know, no matter the circumstances. Gaian tells Koyomi to listen to Kambaru's ideas, and they are able to get to the park, but she isn't the one waiting there for them. Koyomi is surprised to see her, having had no idea how to find her after the encounter with the darkness. Their connection still remains severed, Koyomi still completely human, yet Kishshot remains in the form of Shinobu. It seems before she and the cat parted ways, they had fought off the monkey aberration, which is odd. It's as if all the aberrations Koyomi had encountered have reared their head once again, in front of them appearing the crab that is combined with the rainy devil and Jagirinawa snake. It's confusing and something we can address later, as it wouldn't make much sense to yet. Regardless, this is the first form of something Koyomi will encounter again. They kill the amalgamation and Shinobu leads them to meet with Gaian, entrusted with the new location by Yotsugi. Gaien wastes no time confirming that the armor Koyomi faced was the first minion. His ashes seem to have returned to this place 15 years ago, his homeland, which makes Kishot's return last year have more of a cause. Whether conscious or not, she returned to the same place in Japan she had came to hundreds of years ago, a place as it would seem was the hometown of her first love. Here at the Snake Shrine, where aberrations seemed to gather, the minion's ashes culminated for those 15 years, causing the shrine to collapse at his presence, which spelled a bad energy to be released upon the town. Before, the Snake Shrine had dispelled the aberrations before they could take form, but now it's like they slipped through the cracks. Even Oshino's talisman patchwork can't seem to keep them from escaping. So entered these aberrations into the life of Koyomi and friends, made possible through the shrine's waning deterrence, but more importantly, brought on by the psychological issues they all have. It's not an accident that these aberrations have appeared before Koyomi time and time again, though he may think so. Gaien turns down his belief that this could happen to anybody and tells him to face the fact that he is unique, the path his life has taken, something special, and something that doesn't happen to just anybody. There's a reason he's encountered so many, and a reason that amalgamation of aberrations appeared before him of all people. Koyomi is special in this sense, whether he realizes that or not. Shinobu denies the return of her first minion, refusing to believe it to be true. Even if it was, she tells Koyomi that he is the only one for her, and did not worry about her past relationship with the first one. It's clear that what she's telling him is more for herself than him. She averts her eyes from the emotions inside her, something she cut off 400 years ago when he had killed himself. It had been too long. He had left her so long ago, and so she refuses to acknowledge his existence or his desire to meet with her. She loves Koyomi, and where she has found herself now, there is no reason to open old wounds and broken bonds. Koyomi goes to the store to get them supplies. A rule in the Arataagi household is that all members must eat breakfast together, something that brings them all together, making them feel like a family. Hanekawa doesn't recognize it at the time, but in this moment she feels a bit envious. Her family is nothing like this. It isn't really something you could even call a family. She goes to leave after eating, but Koyomi's mother stops her for a moment. She does not know Hanekawa's situation, nor does she plan to ask about it, but she is as perceptive as Koyomi, though unlike him, she does not shy away and feign ignorance at the situation and feelings of others. She says,
私たちは君をもてなしてあげることはできるけれど、君の家族になってあげられるわけじゃないんだ。
a harsh truth that I'm sure Tsubasa already knew. She's happy to care for Hanekawa as long as she needs, but they can't replace what can be called her family, no matter how broken and loosely tied it is. Hanekawa tells her they just had a small falling out, Arataagi stating that a falling out between parent and child may as well be a form of child abuse.
家族はいなきゃいけないものじゃないけれど、いたら嬉しいものであるべきなんだ。
She leaves Hanekawa with one more piece of advice.
人は嫌なことがあったらどんどん逃げていいんだけれど、目をそらしているだけじゃ逃げたことにはならないんだよ。
As long as Hanekawa thinks her situation is alright and something to be content in, nothing will change, and her emotional state will continue to worsen. She's averting her eyes from the pain she feels in her heart, the anxiety and her feelings of love and lack of it. Yet she does not run nor find a solution. Without hearing an ounce of her story, Arataagi was able to grasp what is at the root of Hanekawa's problem and give her sound advice to move forward with. It's funny just how full of wisdom Koyomi's parents seem to be. Surprisingly, it seems that Episode is back in town, a favor called in by Gaien bringing him here. On his way to meet her, he stumbles into the girl he nearly killed. Oddly, instead of being completely terrified by Episode or even angry, she politely greets him, sparking a conversation. Episode says he notices something different about Hanekawa since the last time they met, almost as if the great shadow he had sensed within her during spring break was gone. All that's left behind is the white, pure as snow, an angel of sorts, but one that makes him uneasy. Gaien cuts in on the conversation, doubling down on the sense that Hanekawa has lost something that she herself must choose to reobtain. Only she can confront this tiger Gaien has told her to coin as Kako. After all, it is a part of herself that is burning down the building she has slept in. If she doesn't hurry, Hitagi and Arataagi's homes are next in the tiger's path of wrath. The desire to be understood through inflicting harm equivalent to that which is in its heart. The desire to watch the world burn as hers has. Gaien leaves, telling Hanekawa she knows nothing, the purity of her nature blinding her, leaving her with nothing more than ignorance. Being just of the good ignores the dark we all house within. There is no yang without yin. They are equal sides to the coin, and one has taken the form of that tiger. Koyomi's shopping trip takes a turn when he runs into the first one demanding a meeting with Kishot. He sees Koyomi as his rival in what we can only assume as love, though he does not attack him due to the mark Yotsugi left on his face, marking him as her prey. Despite this, the first one tries to poison him, episoding Gaian stopping him from drinking it. Gaian sets up a duel for later that night to please the first one and get him off Koyomi's ass. He isn't forced into attending, there's nothing really in it for him. He'd be putting his life on the line for a petty vampire who refuses to acknowledge the man who has come back from the dead to see her. Yet this simple decision weighs on him. Words were said, ones that offended Shinobu because they were the words she's heard in her head that she's ignored. Kanbaru berates her for ignoring the first one's wishes to see her. She knows that the man returned for love, as that is the only logical conclusion based on his actions. Pretending like his feelings don't exist is cruel, but Shinobu is afraid of those feelings, because she has them too. They're faint compared to what they were, and her connection with Koyomi is stronger than what they are. But regardless, she's afraid her bond with Koyomi would change, afraid of the emotions that could flow back from the bond she lost 400 years ago. She tries to fight back against Kanbaru, but her words contradict. Kanbaru is coming from an experience similar to the first one's, which is why she's so frustrated with Shinobu. Her unrequited love that gained closure after she finally expressed it to the one she loved. She wants the first one to get that chance too. Shinobu cannot argue with that. She storms off, pissed she lost the argument. Seeing how much this situation is weighing on Shinobu, Koyomi decides to go to the duel, as pointless as it is. The two of them are partners in life and in death, their existence more intertwined like shadow and light. If her wish is to not see the first one, then Koyomi will fulfill that. The pointless duel has a driving purpose for him now. Koyomi once more taking the burden of the situation off the shoulders of those around him, as he always has. Hanekawa's research on the tiger leads her nowhere, finally having the realization while she plays with the Fire Sisters that Kako is a piece of her just as Black Hanekawa is. All her envy for love and affection, all her suffering balled up into an aberration. In Koyomi's bed, she contemplates her feelings towards the boy, believing that it may be best if she never saw him again. She rolls around in his bed, hoping to leave behind a small sense that she was here, hoping that he'll think of her when he smells her fragrance, if only but for a moment. She writes a note to her other self, the side of her that lives in the shadow, to read when she wakes up. A message calling back her sisters to the home in her heart. She no longer wants to be the pure white that she has become. Even if there is a fear Koyomi will not like her after this change, she wants to be someone who gets jealous, that gets angry, that gets anxious. Someone who holds grudges, who cries and yells. She wants it all, and asks Black Hanekawa to bring Kako home. Reading the note, the black personality is more than happy to carry out the request. She sets off to find her sibling after writing one last note addressed to Koyomi. Gaian tries to convince him to back out of the duel, telling him that Hanekawa is about to fight a tiger and Hitagi's life is in danger. He sends Kanbaru over before him to make sure Hitagi is safe and plans to head over himself once this duel is over. Gaian questions his priorities, but Koyomi does not seem worried. To this day, Koyomi still can't weigh people against each other, choosing to help everybody, even if it makes the possibility of losing everything more likely. The sword is placed in the middle, the two of them prepare for the draw. Somewhere from an unseen location, Shinobu watches, her sword waiting to be claimed. The first one questions why Koyomi showed. He has no stake in this. He had hoped the lack of reasoning would draw Kishot out to protect her second minion, but it seems it doesn't matter. She has no intention of speaking to him. He's hurt. The duel commences. Koyomi does not rush for the sword, instead running past, placing a talisman on the vampire a moment before the sword would come down upon his head. The first one suffers, his essence melting as the talisman disperses his every being. He cries out for Kishot in his final moments. Koyomi standing over him, prepared to end his suffering. But Shinobu finally shows herself, holding the first one's head. She pours out her heart, the bittersweet sight of seeing him again. The happiness and the pain his return brought her. She tells him that it's too late for them now. She has a bond that is more precious to her now than the one she shared with him. It's time they say goodbye. She cries as she consumes the first one, ending his suffering and giving him the death he had sought out 400 years ago. Koyomi watches all of this, grim overall, but in there a sense of envy for the relationship the first one had with Kishot before him. He finds the emotion weird, but it doesn't stress him. It's only natural for him to feel that way, seeing the bond she has with someone else. He leaves to go help the girl who has had his back since spring break. Kako has no intention of returning to Hanekawa. Her burning envy and torment will be spread in flames. All will feel what the tiger is forced to feel. Such is its existence, its purpose. Black Hanekawa tries to fight the tiger, as pointless and reckless as it may seem. She refuses to let Hitagi, whose home has been chosen as the next site of the flames, to be hurt. Her energy drain is no match for the aberration. Burn marks coat her body as she's tossed aside. She's failed to defeat the entity, but she has succeeded in delaying it by a mere 10 seconds. 10 seconds that allow Koyomi to cross the town with the aberration slaying sword that finds itself planted in the tiger's neck. Kako screams in pain. Even though the tiger acted rough on the exterior, inside it's just a hurt kitten trying to brave the pain of emotions. Seeing Koyomi again leaves a burning desire in Hanekawa's chest. It feels like 100 years since she last saw him. He already has a grasp on the situation, having read the note she left in his room describing the change in herself she is seeking out, the embracement of all that she is. Koyomi accepts her for whatever she wants to be, whatever she wants to become. He pats her head, consoling her. The emotions within her continue to build until she can no longer hold them in. For the first time, she confesses her feelings.
私は荒木くんが大好きだよ。結婚を前提に私と付き合ってくれないかな。
He's happy to hear her say that, but there is a girl out there that he loves more than her. He won't go out with her, so she's rejected. She saw that coming, but her feelings are finally out there, coming from her own mouth. She absorbs Kako, and on the railway, she cries. For the first time, Hanekawa lets her emotions flow, letting the tears fall. Hanekawa's hair is now equal parts silver and black. It's strange and would get many looks, so she dyes it black in the morning. The hair is a symbol of her growth and acceptance of her good and bad sides. She finally asked her pseudo-parents for her own room when they move into their new home, which she receives. It doesn't change the fact that these people who should be her father and mother are nothing really of the sort. But for the first time, Hanekawa asks for something and acts a little selfish. Maybe their relationship will be more normal. Regardless, for the first time, Hanekawa has changed her situation for the better. Instead of festering in the stress and frustration, she can look in the mirror now and see herself, not a dissociated version. She can now feel how she wants to feel. Wake up and ask herself, what kind of Hanekawa do I want to be today? She has become what she was always meant to be. Not just the pure, white as snow side of her personality, but also the black, aggressive, and risque. The envious, hurt, and fiery. The white may lie within ignorance, but she has moved away from them and towards a future shaded in color. The story of Shinobu Mea, like all of Koyomi's stories of time and darkness, were stories told to the woman who calls herself Oshino Ougi. Stories that Koyomi was reflecting on and sharing. The time is probably somewhere in February. The events described prior taking place in August. For some odd reason, Koyomi can't help but share these stories with Ougi, she giving him some strange yet logical advice, calling him out on his unreliable narrations. She points out that Shinobu didn't eat the first one's armor, and Koyomi never explained why episode was with Gaian. She hypothesizes that he was there to help Gaian craft another aberration-slaying blade using the armor, but Koyomi doesn't seem all that concerned, trying to convince himself that Shinobu definitely ate the armor too, but the seeds of doubt have been planted. Ougi leaves, wishing Koyomi luck on his college exams. Yotsugi visits Koyomi immediately after. She questions if Koyomi still believes himself to be unhappy being a half-vampire. He originally chose this state so that everyone could equally suffer together. Reflecting, he still stands by that choice. He's mostly forced Shinobu to suffer by going the route he did, which weighs on him. But that could just be an excuse for Koyomi to dislike himself, a reason for him to be hard on himself. He puts up with misfortune and acts as if doing so is like putting in a good effort, but really he's doing nothing of the sorts by choosing a path of suffering. She tells him to shoot for a happy ending.
不幸で居続けることは怠慢だし、幸せになろうとしないことは卑怯だよ。
Koyomi believes he still has time to change his mindset, choosing to continue to live in misfortune for now, not ready to move on from it, attached to it in some way. As Yotsugi said, he sees it as putting in a good effort. It'll be hard for him to break the habit of burdening the suffering of everyone around him. Koyomi's only issue is he may not have the time to change, unaware of the impending reach of death that awaits him before his college exams. But that's a little too far in the future for where we're at now. We must go back to October, after the events of the envious tiger, when the mystery that is Oshino Ougi first appears. There are many mysterious forces at work throughout Monogatari, but none are as unpleasant as Oshino Ougi. A character shrewd and unknowns, her eyes cold and lifeless like dead fish, as if looking into them will take your soul. Ougi is rather on the nose about her schemes, something that Koyomi most definitely has to have picked up on, but his curiosity gets the better of him. After meeting the transfer student for the first time, he follows her into a room that does not appear in the school blueprints, a room that Ougi tells Koyomi he manifested. While we believe Ougi is the culprit, as will become clearer the deeper we go, these two are connected in a complex relationship we have yet to see in the series. But the focus for now is not on the two of them, just Koyomi, who is forced to face the past that shaped him into the person we came to know in Kizumonogatari. Here in this classroom takes place a retelling of the class special assembly trial of July 15th. Ougi presses for Koyomi to relive it. Immediately after school, the class leader Sodachi Oikura calls for a special meeting with the entire class. Koyomi comes in last, seeing all his classmates have already been seated. In front of the entire class, Sodachi claims that someone leaked the answers for their math final exam to a study group that took place the day before the exam. All members of said group scoring an average of 20 points above those who didn't go. Sodachi tells the class she will not let anyone leave until the culprit steps forward, setting into motion the trial. Koyomi is forced to preside over by Sodachi. Given that she was in the study group, she would not be a neutral party, and given that Koyomi, the boy who acts as if he is a terrible student since we met him, obtained a perfect score on the exam. Koyomi does his best to see that they have a civil discussion, but the entire ordeal is blown out of proportion, classmates accusing each other of being the ones who leaked, some just wanting to leave, others assuming that there was no such leak. The trial continues for hours, becoming more chaotic, the students more restless. Koyomi cannot take watching them turn against one another. It's overstimulating and overwhelming for him, and no one will listen to reason any longer. He tells Sodachi that they should just call off the trial, but with hate in her eyes, she gets up and demands that they vote on the culprit. Majority rules, and leave it at that. Sodachi would rather a scapegoat is punished over no soul at all, and she has one in mind. And so, they vote, only 2 students receiving votes. Koyomi is first receiving 1 vote, that of Sodachi's. Her hate for Koyomi seems motivated, but Koyomi doesn't seem to know why. Sodachi, on the other hand, receives the remaining votes of the class. Everyone fed up with her shit, but the injustice of choosing Sodachi, who Koyomi knew to be innocent, wasn't what caused him despair. It was a specific hand in the air, the one of the culprit that Koyomi subconsciously knew, but at the time did not acknowledge. He lost sight of his sense of justice for a moment, watching Sodachi call for a pointless vote. He ignored what he thought to be right, Sodachi leaving the room to never be seen at school again. Koyomi left feeling guilty. This is what led Koyomi to begin to flake, to disappear from class. It was him burdening himself for no good reason, thinking that forcing unhappiness on himself is a great effort that will lead to atonement. Ougi believes Koyomi's sense of guilt for Sodachi is too strong for his lack of involvement. The class voted her as the scapegoat, not him. But it was more than just the students that voted, their teacher did as well. The one who created test questions around the studied materials of the study group. The culprit of the 20-point higher average chose Sodachi to pin the blame. This shook Koyomi to the core. Before then, he had saw adults, precisely teachers here, as models for what is righteous and just. He believed in them, and seeing that which you look up to lie and unjustly accuse someone of cheating caused him to distrust the people around him, including himself. He knew all along the teacher did it, yet he didn't stick up. How could he? Would he even be believed? But that's not even the question. At that moment, he didn't say anything because he didn't want to, and so his self-blame and guilt was created.
友達はいらない。人間強度が下がるから。
Koyomi began to believe that to protect his sense of right, he is better off distancing himself from others, removing himself from the animosity that can be created in a pack. This would all change when somebody as pure as the snow would enter his life and show him that people can be good. But as of July 15th of his freshman year, so began Koyomi's regression to a pessimistic loner. Koyomi's confrontation with this past allows them to leave the classroom, but it's called into question whether Ougi intentionally locked them in to force Koyomi to share this trauma with her. Ougi's comeback is that Koyomi did this to himself, a cage within his heart, and the two go their separate ways. Koyomi reflects on the math teacher's current maternity leave and how it puts a sickly feeling in his stomach. She never paid for what she did. Instead, she was on a joyous leave for something as magical as having a child. It doesn't sit right with him. But now that the teacher is gone, someone else, almost as if swapping places, returns to school. That being Sodachi herself, a girl that had not shown herself in 2 years, had returned with the same fire of hate for Koyomi that she had left with. Koyomi's attempts to be friendly with Sodachi get him nowhere. She still radiates hatred that dates back further than the trial incident, back to middle school, but it seems either Koyomi has forgotten what happened or he is unconsciously denying said event.
自力で沸騰したと思っている水が嫌い
His act of playing a fool pushes Sodachi over the edge. She despises things that believe they are happy of their own volition. She becomes hung up on Koyomi's math skills, believing that they are the sole reason he has become the happy person he is now. She blames him for something he does not grasp. Koyomi tries to calm her down. Sodachi's instinctual reaction to stab him. Hanako tries to keep Hitagi at bay to no success. Sodachi begins launching her verbal assaults towards Hitagi, who is now in her path of mental insanity. She insults Hitagi for choosing to date Koyomi, insults Koyomi's inability to realize and help those around him, all which comes off rather opposite of who he is now. It seems whatever failure lies within his past subconsciously motivated him to take a 180, but yet he never speaks about it, much like he doesn't about the trial incident. Sodachi's temper reaches its peak when Hitagi claims that there isn't anything she hopes to gain from Koyomi. She just wants to be in his life, which provokes her once more to lash out. The classroom incident ends with both girls falling unconscious and being taken home. Koyomi after school decides that he should look into the notes that Sodachi spoke of being in his middle school locker. It's impossible to tell if Koyomi is playing a fool or if he actually is one in this case. Has he really forgotten his time with Sodachi, or does he just pretend not to remember? For the second story of Owarimono, just as he did in the story of the trial, Koyomi does not speak as much of what is going on in his head, but there is a character that pushes that outward.
ここが荒木先輩の通っていた中学校ですか
Pushing her way into Koyomi's ventures, Ougi seems to be around every turn, somehow wiggling her way into joining him and checking his old locker. Anytime Koyomi questions her presence in the story, she gives a long-winded explanation of how he invited her. While he never remembers doing such a thing, he never really questions it. Ougi seems inseparable from Koyomi, listening, questioning, and analyzing him.
Hey.
Inside his locker, Koyomi retraces the steps of a riddle he once found several years back, the Monty Hall problem, a famous probability riddle. The idea is that 3 doors exist and you are able to choose one. Of these 3 doors, 2 have behind them goats and 1 the prize of a car. After you pick one door, a door that you did not choose is revealed to you, one which reveals a goat. Now with only 2 doors left, you have the option to switch your answer to the other door or stay with your initial pick. So which should you do? The answer is switch. While it may seem pointless because what if you pick the right one initially, you are still more likely to win if you switch your answer. The reason being, which Koyomi did not understand at the time, despite choosing to switch, is because the fact that one door is revealed to you, one that has to be incorrect. You now are left with 2 doors. One could have a car, the other a goat. The idea is, given probability, that your door has a 2 in 3 chance of having a goat. You have 3 objects and 3 doors. Let's say you play 3 times and always choose door 1 first. 2 of those times a goat is behind that door. 1 time a car is. The door revealed after you pick for the first time will always show you one of the incorrect doors. So given that you now have an option to switch, 2 of the 3 possible outcomes of what's behind your door, the correct answer is to switch doors because you had to go behind yours initially. It is a logical and probable answer. So what's the importance of this riddle in this situation? The answer is nothing. I just made you think it was important. It's just something that interested a young Koyomi and made him seek out what was on a map in an envelope that was his changed answer, and got him interested in math, which we know he was very good at in his first year of high school. Ougi and Koyomi break into the old home. Koyomi sharing things about his life, which is out of character for him. He talks of his parents' occupation as police and how if they were to be caught, they wouldn't bail him out even though he's their child. They believe in the law and justice of society and will carry it out with no special treatment. He speaks of his strong ideals of justice being a direct result of how they parented him, and for the very first time acknowledges his memories of Sodachi and being here at this house with her, though he chooses to not name the girl in the story as Sodachi. For who she is at this house is not who she really is. His loose lips around Ougi cause him to tell us the entire story of the letter riddle and his summer break before 8th grade. In middle school, Koyomi struggled to maintain good grades, especially in math. For him, his worth was defined by his grades, his ability to learn. That was what he saw as righteous at his age. It was his duty to perform at school, just as he saw his parents perform their duty as police. So when he got the Monty Hall letter, he followed the map within to the rundown house. There, a girl waited for him, telling him she would teach him all about the math that he became fascinated with through this riddle. From that day forward, the two would study every day, with only 3 conditions to their sessions. Always meet in the attic. Don't tell anyone about these sessions, and don't ask her name or who she is. The girl would tell Koyomi she never wanted anything in return for helping him, just for him to love math. He had felt weird about this and tried to repay her in different ways, but she always refused. Koyomi loved these sessions, yet they abruptly came to an end on the final day of summer break. When he arrived to the room on the upper floor that they had always met at on the last day of summer, the girl was not there. He waited, but she never appeared. The next day at their school, Koyomi looked for the girl throughout the classrooms, but was never able to find her. It's almost as if she disappeared from existence. From that point forward, he avoided the house out of fear, and so he chose to forget about her and those sessions, pretending as if they didn't exist, yet at the same time he couldn't. Koyomi had pushed these memories to a place he didn't have to talk or reflect on, though they would never leave his mind. The tutoring did help his grades get better, recentering his sense of justice, but the memories of the summer would fade with his neglect. The math the girl taught him allowed him to become the person he is, allowed him to enter Naotsu's high school, allowed him to meet Tsubasa, date Hitagi. His math and intern Sodachi created who we know as Koyomi Aragi. Ougi understands the root of Sodachi's hatred, even though Koyomi once more acts as if a fool, as if ignoring what his deeper subconscious is telling him. That house he entered, while in terrible shape, windows smashed, floors torn apart, was not due to weathering or neglect. That damage was due to domestic violence. What Koyomi had assumed was like a secret hideout for the two of them to meet in was actually Sodachi's current home, explaining a lot of the holes left in Koyomi's story. Sodachi had desired Koyomi to voluntarily tell his parents, who were policemen, about the state of the Uekura household. She had left randomly, likely due to her family finally fully falling apart. She had overestimated Koyomi's ability. His misunderstandings and compliance to her 3 conditionals for these sessions stopped him from achieving her desired goal. She's blamed him ever since for not following through, even though she never directly asked him for help. This likely due to some sense of guilt she felt convincing her family. So she left the decision of sharing what was going on up to Koyomi, though she likely never thought he would believe the house was abandoned. This explains the letter being empty that he found on the last day at the house, a symbol of how Sodachi saw Koyomi as a man after his shortcoming. Empty. Koyomi shares the adventure from the other day with Hanekawa. She believes that his discovery at the mansion isn't the full picture. Koyomi is a very tight-lipped individual when it comes to his personal life, especially with his parents' occupation. There are only a handful of people who know about it, so how did Sodachi know that his parents were police? The memory that holds that answer could be vital for him to understand the full picture of how Sodachi became the girl she is today. Just how deep does her life of hell go? It seems due to the dispute the day before, both Hitagi and Sodachi have decided to not return to school. Given their roles as class and vice president, Hanekawa splits up with Koyomi to go see each of them. Koyomi opts to visit Sodachi, seeming to want to work out their issues. Hanekawa goes to visit Hitagi, and the two part ways.
あれ、荒木先輩じゃないですか。
Wherever Koyomi is, Ougi seems to be just in the shadows. That's a good way to explain her, and not too far off what Koyomi thinks as well. It would seem he acknowledges their strange connection, but he never goes as far as to confirm his suspicion, so I won't either. Ougi once more makes up a long-winded narrative of how Koyomi promised to hang out with her, an obvious lie that Koyomi does not remember, but Ougi insists happened. She wiggles her way into inviting herself to come with him to see Sodachi, despite his pleas. She picks her words carefully, wrapping Koyomi into her web, almost as if she knows how he thinks, knows how to work him. The choice of this frame more than just a metaphor. Koyomi is on the verge of caving to her desires when a voice calls out in disagreement.
お願いしちゃダメ。
Hanekawa does her best to get Ougi to back down, countering each of her arguments for why she should come. For the first time, she comes off as harsh and insistent, a far cry from the Hanekawa we knew before Tsubasa Tiger. For her own reasons, she does not trust Ougi, doesn't believe that she really is Oshino's niece, nor that she is trustable to leave alone with Koyomi. Her existence is strange, mysterious, yet Ougi gives us a clear picture in as few as 9 words.
私は何も知りませんよ。あなたが知っているんです。 Araragi senpai.
These two are strangely the same. Ougi states her motive is to be there to save Koyomi, a similar structure to Koyomi's stance of butting into people's problems in order to save them. Hanekawa points out this is opposite of her uncle's stance of people save themselves. Ougi denies thinking similarly, a major clue that these two couldn't be related, and that Ougi is somehow linked to Koyomi.
うまくやりすぎるのもそれはそれでバランスを欠くものです。中庸には収まりませんからね。
This is a perfect example of Koyomi's actions at the end of Spring Break and something he's struggled to pursue through each story, choosing that which makes all content, not necessarily happy. The inability to sacrifice anyone's happiness, no matter if they deserve such. Ougi leaves it up to Koyomi to decide who goes with him, trying to use his feelings of debt to Hanekawa to convince him to take her instead so that he doesn't force anything onto Tsubasa. He's lured in by this, but Hanekawa snaps him out by playing to his depraved nature.
おっぱいを触らせてあげる。
These type of comments never really come to fruition. We've seen them before during Spring Break and Golden Week. They play on the raunchy and flirty humor between him and Hanekawa, a parody on their affection that will never be. But here it's used as a wake-up call for Koyomi. For her to go so far as to say something like that meant something was not quite right. Hanekawa believes Ougi to have set her sights on Koyomi for some deeper motive. Koyomi seems to be avoiding this idea intentionally, maybe because deep down he knows what she truly is and wants to play the fool. Maybe he really is the fool Ougi believes him to be. Given if what I suspect her existence to be is true, the answer is both, but I'll keep foreshadowing this reveal for a little longer. It's more fun that way. Before entering, Koyomi reveals the story behind how Sodachi knew his parents' occupation. With the help of Sengoku and his parents' memories, he puts together that there was a time where Sodachi stayed at his home, his parents taking her under their protection due to the abuse going on in the family. It wasn't long till she up and left though, returning to her broken household, her stay not leaving a lasting memory with Koyomi. He's only told that she, for the most part, would sulk in the corner.
よく来たわね。
In some ways, Sodachi has calmed down. In others, she is still her petty, unhappy, groveling self. She still hates Koyomi and now has some spite for Hitagi, threatening to sue her for the bruise on her face. Koyomi using his blood to heal it and avoid this issue altogether. He quickly changes the topic to why she is the way she is, telling her he remembers their time in middle school and lies when he says he remembers the elementary incident as well. Sodachi then shares her experiences that led her to be such a bitter person. When Koyomi's parents took Sodachi in, it was an awakening to how shit her home life was. She saw Koyomi and his sisters living cheerfully in a calm household, something she didn't think was real. She's been under the impression that her household life was normal, and so Koyomi's home life seemed the oddity. This made her jealous, feeling like his sisters and him having fun in front of her was their way of gloating about how good they have it, which is why she went back home to the violence and abuse. It was what she was comfortable in. Despite this, she tried to change her family for the better. Once she saw how bad she had it, she couldn't shake the desire for something better. But each time she would try to turn things around, the abuse would worsen, and Sodachi's helplessness and trauma grew. To cope, she would convince herself that what she was experiencing was normal, and that there are people out there that have it worse. She should be happy that she has it at least this good. That mindset wouldn't stop her from trying to turn things around. In middle school, Sodachi would make a last-ditch effort on the brink of her parents' divorce to try and get another party involved. She wanted to get Koyomi's parents involved, so she did the whole math study session to try to make him relay to his parents the state of her household, but her plan fell through. Koyomi did not remember her stay with them years ago, nor realize the state of her household. At the end of the summer, her parents divorced, and her mother took her away. She moved schools, and so Koyomi never saw her again. The divorce took a heavy toll on Sodachi's mom. She would try to take care of the woman, but she had locked herself in a dark room, refusing to eat. Her only words to her daughter how much of a worthless piece of garbage she was. Despite this, Sodachi would try to care for her mother, even when she stopped responding, stopped eating, and stopped moving from the dark corner she lurked in. 3 years went by. 3 years she tried to take care of her mother, till one day, upon entering the room, Sodachi found that her mother was gone. Her assumption, she ran away. Thanks to the federal aid she had been receiving due to the single-parent household and her mother's lack of work, Sodachi moved from the house back to her hometown, where she enrolled in Naoto High School, the very same high school Koyomi Araragi was in. Seeing him brought up a lot of unprocessed trauma, and to keep herself from being overwhelmed, Sodachi painted him as her villain, the reason her family fell apart, the reason her mother disappeared, the reason she was so unhappy. And so began her hatred, which along with her mental state, would only shatter and break more after the cheating trial, as she closed herself in, severing herself from society for 2 years. The hate Sodachi held for Koyomi is a mere projection of the hate she feels to her parents and the trauma they gave her. Wanting to blame something for her misery, not wanting to believe that her parents were fully responsible. Despite what they had done to her, they were still her parents, and in a cruel way she couldn't help but still love them and want to think the best. Her belief that her past is a normal experience and Koyomi's straight-arrowed family is a rarity clouds her from being happy. She gets so caught up in the fact that Koyomi isn't on his knees thanking the heavens his life is normal, when the real issue here is that she can't comprehend that Koyomi's life is more normal than hers. To add to that, she acts as if she knows everything about Koyomi's life, unaware that while his life is better than hers, it's not as if he doesn't have his own struggles, his own trauma, his own shortcomings. She questions why she can't be happy like Koyomi. Well, the answer is more obvious than she would like to admit.
あなたが幸せになれないのはあなたが幸せになろうとしていないからだよ。
She agrees. The way she sees it, she never could be. She's given up on the idea. She thinks it's too late for her. She continues to spiral down the rabbit hole of depression and dread, telling Koyomi that her hatred for him made her life a little more bearable, to which he implores her to keep hating him. If it makes it easier to wake up in the morning and continue living, he is more than happy to be her villain. All he wants is for her to love herself a little more, give herself a little more slack, and realize, more than anything, that everyone has their own seeds of doubt. Everyone has their own source of sadness. That doesn't have to stop you from being happy. His monologue leaves the room quiet. Sodachi asks them to leave as she's expecting a government representative to check on her quality of life soon. They oblige, but tell her they will be back to convince her to come back to school. She tells them if they can figure out where her mother is, she'd not only re-attend school, but apologize to Hitagi. The pair are left with the mystery of Sodachi's mother's disappearance. Just as they begin to mull over what they know, an unexpected classmate reappears. Still very angry about not being picked by Koyomi, Ougi berates Hanako's inability to understand what happened to Sodachi's mother, when she herself already knows the answer. She continues to try and drive a wedge in between Koyomi and Hanako, till Tsubasa claims she can arrive at the same conclusion within 10 seconds, which she does.
ゼロは数えなくていい。
She's more shocked than anything that it was the first assumption that Ougi arrived at. It speaks upon Ougi's thought process and who she is as a person. Koyomi is very confused, left in the dark, forced to guess through hints from the other two what happened. But if we're going to be honest, I believe Koyomi was aware of the possibility the entire time. He just couldn't bring himself to believe it. After over 30 hints, he's forced to face the truth. What Sodachi had cared for over 2 years was nothing more than a corpse, finally realizing that her mother was gone after it had completely decayed, to a point that it was unrecognizable to her mother, leading to the assumption her mother had fled. She literally could not believe what was left of that woman was her mother. Hanako is against telling Sodachi this. It's too grim and she feels it would destroy her. Ougi, on the other hand, pushes Koyomi to tell her the truth regardless. It's the truth. It should be told. He had made the decision when promising to solve the issue for Sodachi, so he tells the other two to wait here. He will deliver the news of her mother himself. He, the villain, will show his gratitude for her help in 7th grade with ingratitude. She is surprisingly calm and accepting when he tells her, resembling the more calm and considerate person he knew at the study sessions, and less the demon of hate she became. She tells him her Fed aid will be halved and she will need to transfer schools due to her being relocated. It's something she's content with, and Koyomi can only hope that it allows her to start over. Her past simply left in this town, the mystery of her mother solved. The two part ways. Ougi apologizes for acting out of line the other day. She thought that Koyomi would run away instead of facing the problems of his past, had she not gotten involved. She admits she underestimated Hanako's strengths and leaves it at that, saying goodbye to the boy for now. Hanako mentions to Koyomi she will be taking a month leave to travel and scout locations for the exhibition she plans to take on after she graduates to learn more about herself and the world around her. Hitagi texts him that Sodachi came by to apologize before leaving town. She also passes on a message from her that a note was left beneath his desk. He reaches down and grabs an envelope, and he can tell from the weight, this time, it's not empty. He smiles. It would seem that he's grown, and Sodachi acknowledges that. The sheets of blank paper alone, enough of a symbol. After nearly crashing into Nadeko, Ougi acts disinterested in the girl, though this could be complete and utter bullshit. This story is told through the lens of the girl who had a run-in with some snakes, the girl who plays sweet and innocent, though her true personality is anything but. After what is described as a short conversation, Ougi treks on in search of the ghost of a little girl who died a decade ago, despite the fact she's now long gone. For roughly 4 months, Nadeko has been free from contact with aberrations, but it would seem that that grace period is over, and the white snakes have come to haunt her reality. After several encounters throughout the day, she calls Koyomi hoping for his help, which he'd be more than happy to give, but it comes across she's less worried about the snake illusions and more interested in getting to see Koyomi.
楽しみにしてるね。
An odd thing to say when the last time she encountered these aberrations, she was almost strangled to death, but it might be that Nadeko doesn't value her life or the potential dangers these snakes mean. She may see them as an excuse for her actions, for calling Koyomi and getting to see him. Koyomi is more concerned hearing her say this, believing something has to be wrong with her to be looking forward to something related to aberrations. And he would be right. Something is wrong with Nadeko, and it couldn't be more clear when the voices begin to speak to her.
北白蛇神社に来な、なでこちゃん。
No obligation. That's the circumstance that surrounds Nadeko's every move in the story. She's never forced to do anything, including listening to the voice on the phone telling her to come to the shrine. Yet here she is, face to face with the massive snake god Kuchinawa. The snake preys on Nadeko's disturbing nature, her surface portrayal of soft-spoken, helpless personality that always puts her in a situation where she's the victim of any scenario. She agrees to help him, acknowledging that there isn't a world where she would say no to this, which makes more sense looking back once you know the full picture. But for now, I won't share that with you. Kuchinawa becomes a scrunchie on her wrist till she locates his body, the object of worship for the snake god of the shrine. Using Nadeko's guilt to influence her into doing his bidding, he has no control over her. He can't force her to do anything, yet Nadeko obeys him as if this was the case. They agree that she can live normally during the day, and at night, look for his body. Despite the promise to be quiet and not intervene during the daytime, the voice echoes through her head, as if describing Nadeko's true emotions. The snake god speaks on her subconscious behalf, analyzing the sad state of the classroom of children who only months prior were using charms of a con man to curse one another. The state of the classroom has been pushed upon Nadeko's shoulders by her teacher, who deemed her class president. He uses Nadeko's guilt-driven, shy and victim-like nature as the dartboard for what should be his issue, the state of his class. But it's much easier to push this issue onto the girl who won't speak up even for herself. Nadeko had tried to dig in the sand pit to find Kuchinawa's corpse, but as it turns out, it's not there, despite the belief that it was. Koyomi finds her here and brings her back to his house, where he insists she sleeps over. He lectures her for going out so late on her own, and after he makes some questionable moves, Shinobu knocks him out and begins to analyze Nadeko. She too pins her as someone who feigns ignorance to her true nature. That victim playing bullshit is just a cover for who she really is. Nadeko denies this. Shinobu takes Koyomi downstairs. The following morning, Tsukihi and Nadeko have a heart-to-heart about Nadeko's love for Koyomi. After pushing it out of her, Tsukihi believes that Nadeko's feelings of love for Koyomi are not what she makes them out to be. If Nadeko truly had romantic love for Koyomi, she would have some inkling of desire to compete with Hitagi, to try and win Koyomi over, but this is far from the case. Instead, Nadeko keeps her love for him in the shadows, preferring it to stay hidden. Tsukihi believes this is because she enjoys the fact that it makes her life easier. She has an excuse to deny the confessions of other boys, and she never has to search for love. She can just wallow within the unrequited.
絶対に叶わない恋愛を安心してやっているって感じなのかな。
But the heartbreak still hurts all the same. Koyomi's relationships with others still make her jealous. Her love for Koyomi isn't love, but it's a jumbled, warped, and sick amalgamation of that feeling. Tsukihi is tired of Nadeko acting like this cute, ignorant victim, so she breaks the shield that hides her true self, that being her bangs. Behind those extra inches of hair, Nadeko has been able to hide her true self, more accurately her facial expressions, despite her ability to trick herself and others into seeing her as this innocent, shy girl you'd never want to hurt. She's never mastered the expressions to suit such a role, so when her teacher comes up to ask about the class dynamic once again, this time he doesn't leave after feeling like he's kicked a puppy. Nadeko's expression has always been rather flat and standard, and so her trick no longer works. She decides to just use her words to shoo him away, but what comes out is nothing but built up rage. The true Nadeko has revealed itself, no longer shackled by her restraints. Not only does the teacher receive this treatment, but so does her classroom full of conniving children. She leaves school early after the explosion, Kuchinawa making clear that none of this was his doing. That was 100% her, and Nadeko knows that more than anyone else. She breaks into Koyomi's house, where she has been told the object of worship is. What she was looking for was none other than the white talisman originally given to Koyomi by the Hawaiian shirt man Oshino. Kuchinawa tells her she can ask for a wish as a reward, so oddly enough, she wishes for Koyomi to love her back.
そいつは叶わないな、戦国。
It would seem the jig's up. Nadeko can no longer play innocent. She claims not only she is the victim of this scenario, but also the wrongdoer. She doesn't try to hide behind the snake anymore, knowing the true nature of its existence. She has the entire time. Shinobu points out that the snake hasn't even been resurrected yet. The delusions of Nadeko slowly crumbling the more characters she introduces to the story. The snake, a character created by her subconscious for her conscious to believe in. It's clear here and now, Kuchinawa does not exist. Or to put it better, not yet. Nadeko is the only person that could be at fault for his resurrection. She isn't the victim she believes. There isn't any point of hiding behind her story anymore. Nadeko tells us on the day she met Ougi, she was tipped off about the talisman. She had been told Koyomi had the object of worship, so she went out at night knowing he'd come look for her, allowing for her to enter his home, make a copy of his key, and return when no one else was home. In a sick way, she desired to become that god, because then she'd be able to get her way and run away from that act of innocence. Koyomi and Shinobu come to face her on top of the shrine, but Nadeko has become too powerful of an aberration for them to take on in their current state. They are brought to the brink of death. The slow crawl to madness was brought upon by the shackles she put on herself. By forcing herself to act cute and innocent, she was ignoring who the true version of herself was. But this is just the personality aspect of her. She's ignored her love life, her school life, her dreams, everything. She's become a whole lot of nothing, afraid of the pain and suffering that comes with trying to pursue and be something. So she runs away. And the first step to do so is to kill the boy she's chosen as the love that will not come to be. Dead, he can't cause her more heartbreak with his friends and girlfriend. It'll make for the most romantical, unrequited love there can be. The love for a dead man. But one thing may stand in her way.
もしもし、戦場ヶ原ひたぎです。
The god has some lack in knowledge when it comes to murdering the two before her. For starters, the boy has a direct link to the small vampire in front of her. If she was to kill him first, Shinobu would once more become kiss shot and slaughter an aberration like Nadeko. On the other hand, if Nadeko was not to kill the girl on the other end of the phone before Koyomi, then not only would Hitagi murder Nadeko, but she would also enter a full-on rampage of murder, something that is more in theory than an acting promise. But nonetheless, Hitagi has convinced the acting god to follow an order to her 3 murders. While she's at it, she also convinces said god that if her intent to kill is real, then she could postpone the murders for some time, say, till the day of their graduation. Nadeko decides to grant the commoner Hitagi her wish, and she holds off from murdering Hitagi, Shinobu, and Koyomi until graduation day. Nadeko dreams of the day Koyomi will walk up those steps in 6 months. Him with the entire cast ready to defeat the final boss. Her. She believes that she will overcome all of those before her, kill every last one of them, but reality isn't that dramatic. Nadeko isn't all that smart, and Hitagi has been underestimated. What the snake god does not know is that Hitagi is much more calculated than she could ever be. Hired by Hitagi, Kaiki takes over the narration of this story, one that's shrewd in half-truths, deceit, and lies. He tells us to question his tale, wonder how much is real and how much is dramatization. While he can't promise credibility, he ensures it will be entertaining. And so, the story of how Kaiki will deceive a god begins. Hitagi's request from him is big, and the payment is small. There isn't anything in it for him, and he can't think of a reason that fits his corrupt morals to accept the job. Though, the fact he searches for a reason to accept this speaks for itself enough. Despite what Kaiki would make us believe, he seems to have a soft spot for Hitagi. But not only will he not admit that to us, but he can't admit that to her either. So he thinks, and arrives at the conclusion that he can save Koyomi and Hitagi for the sake of Kanbaru, the daughter of Gaien's sister, a woman who it would seem he has some attachment to, though she is dead. But for one reason or another, he desires to have a relationship with Kanbaru, and this is enough reasoning to accept such a risky job. Under the guise of a concerned parent who has a missing child as well, Kaiki goes over to the Sengoku residence hoping to gain some more information on Nadeko. What he learns is that her parents are rather doting of their child, thinking of her as cute and innocent, all things we know Nadeko has come to hate. They have never caught on to Nadeko's crippling mental state, and even with their daughter gone, they have yet to open that closet which was password locked, as they were told by their daughter never to go in there. Even with her missing, and a potential clue to her whereabouts could be in there, they still refuse. Kaiki sees himself out. If he is to deceive the snake god, then he needs to at least meet her to get an understanding of how she works. He places his gift in the altar and is instantly greeted by the child. She comes off as happy yet mentally insane, talking about her desire to kill Koyomi and his girlfriend, overjoyed but patiently waiting, and because of that, bored. Kaiki makes pleasantries with her before seeing himself out, promising to come see her again soon. So far, it seems this job will be relatively easy. Kaiki shares the good news. Nadeko is an airhead, and as such can be easily deceived. He sees her as someone who doesn't trust anybody, but at the same time doesn't have any reason not to trust what they say. She's indifferent to the world around her and the people in it. She doesn't care, so she doesn't look for deceit or lies in people's words. Or at least, that's what Kaiki thinks. She's too hyper-fixated on the shallow idea of killing Koyomi and his girlfriend, whose name she can't even remember. He'll continue to gain her trust, and at the end of January, he'll simply tell her that Koyomi and his girlfriend died in a traffic accident, and she'll believe him. Hitagi no longer needs to worry, which, for the first time in months, allows her to relax, knowing that her boyfriend's life is no longer at risk. Her life may have been in jeopardy too, but that's not something someone like her would cry over. That's just the kind of person she is, a hopeless romantic. Yotsugi runs into the con man at the local cafe, sharing with him a message from Gaian, telling him to pull out of the situation involving Nadeko. Given his nature and dislike for Gaian's overbearing personality, Kaiki has no interest in pulling out. This is also due to the stake he put into the job, that being for Kanbaru, and deeper for Hitagi as well. So he takes Gaian's bribe of 30 grand and continues his plan. He may make an enemy out of his senpai, but he's got a larger budget for operations, and a hefty take-home pay after the job's done. After his most recent visit to the deranged god, Kaiki has the feeling of someone shadowing him, so he takes a taxi out of town, then walks back hoping to shake them. He's unsure who this person could be, a kid maybe he conned in the past, but that wouldn't be right. They would have been more confrontational like Karen was. It could be one of Gaian's lackeys, but she wouldn't be the type to do such a roundabout way of confronting him. It could be an entity that desires him to not change the situation with Nadeko the god, and who else fits that mold better than the one who gave Nadeko the idea to become a god in the first place, the girl named Ougi. But Kaiki doesn't have enough information at this time to arrive at that conclusion. He breaks into Nadeko's household, opening the closet to find something both insignificant and vital to the case of Nadeko Sengoku. Kaiki isn't somebody that listens to orders from others, as we saw with Gaian, so this mysterious note telling him to pull out won't shake him up either. If anything, it strengthens his resolve. Maybe that was the note's goal. Maybe that was Gaian's goal. It's improbable that the note would be from Gaian, given that she's not someone who asks twice. She would have acted against Kaiki by now if that was her intent. So Kaiki's left with this mystery he has no intent to solve, because he's disinterested, and also knows who sent it. He tells Hitagi that he'll be seeing this through. During another visit to the god that's gone mental, Kaiki has a chance encounter with a girl he's heard so much about, who should currently be overseas. He comments that a child like her shouldn't be as polite and formal as she is, and the two have a long discussion over a car ride in Hanekawa's hotel room. It would seem that no one knows that she's returned. She only made a one-day stop back in Japan to check on the situation with Nadeko, and trusted that Kaiki could handle it. But she has some questions that only someone close to Oshino could answer, that being his family history. Kaiki confirms that Oshino has no niece, which makes Ougi's story a lie, and her actions much more scary and calculated. Hanekawa's information on Nadeko both confirmed Kaiki's suspicions that the cute and innocent front was something Nadeko was not, as well as something she hates about herself. It's also obvious that what she describes as love for Koyomi is anything but that. Given her mental state, there is no way she is capable of love, and so what she describes as such could only be one thing, a tool that allows her to forsake the idea of love, such as the intent with killing Koyomi, If he's dead, her love will forever be sealed and unchanging, allowing her to live in a world that's easy, love no longer an object to chase. It would be like stone, forever still. Nadeko likes the idea of the unchanging love found with being in love with a dead man, but this brings up an issue Kaiki overlooks. If Nadeko does not care for others, has no emotional stake or trust in them, there is a possibility that gaining her trust is impossible. If it's impossible for her to lose trust, as he said, Nadeko being an airhead that has no reason not to believe people, then it is also possible that she can never trust anyone to begin with. The day of the deceit comes. Over the phone with Hitagi, he tells her to make sure Koyomi doesn't do anything rash. If he was to waltz up to the shrine after Kaiki claims he's dead, the whole plan would be ruined. But therein lies the problem. Given Koyomi's nature and habit of taking the responsibility in every situation, getting himself involved in every situation, whether he should be or not, even if told to stay away from the shrine, he'd probably go anyway. Because in that way, Koyomi is still immature. He believes too earnestly that he can help those around him and those he cares about, when sometimes it's better to disappear from their life, to allow that person to grow. Not everyone can be your friend, and not everyone benefits from your existence. Koyomi does not understand that sometimes your responsibility is to not take responsibility. It's up to Hitagi to ensure that he doesn't act like an idiot and uproot the entire setup. Yotsugi one last time stumbles upon Kaiki. She wonders why he would go and do something so out of character as to help Hitagi, but then points out that this isn't the first time he's done so. 2 years prior, when he supposedly conned Hitagi, Kaiki had uprooted and squashed the cult her mother was originally a part of. His good deed did not help the issues though, and only worsened the problem. He had not thought that the mother would be mental enough to join another cult, and so he ensured that the family would follow through with a divorce, knowing that the only way for Hitagi to have a future was if the mother was separated from her life. He had underestimated, however, how much of a grudge she would hold over this taking place. Hitagi could not see the benefits that came with the separation from her mother, but that's the job of adults, to realize things that children can't see, to have their best interest at heart, even if it means they grow to hate you in the process. Kaiki donned the role as a villain for Hitagi's growth, and he's content with doing so. After all, he's not a good guy, but he isn't a bad one either.
亡くなったんだよ。
It's been said, the lie has been planted and all that's left is for Nadeko to run with it, but that's not quite how it goes. Kaiki had undermined how black Nadeko's heart was, how distrusting she really was. He had thought the reoccurring visits would open her heart to him, but really she never had any intent to trust him to begin with. And so, as Gaian predicted, he fails.
海木さんも私を騙すんだね。
His plan blew up in his face. Nadeko seems to have grown darker due to being deceived by Ougi to become a god. It's not something she wanted, but it's what she is now, so she wears the role with a bittersweet taste. She decides as punishment she'll kill Kanon, Tsukihi, Hanekawa, Mayoi, and Kanbaru on top of the other three. But Kaiki has one more trick up his sleeve.
漫画家になりたいのか?
Within the closet were hundreds of manga panels, drawn talentedly, but shunned into the back in embarrassment. This suggests, as Kaiki has set up since he arrived at the shrine, the idea that this is Nadeko's true dream, one that she will share with absolutely no one, embarrassed by it, but also protective of it. She doesn't want anyone to say she can't be a manga artist, so she does her dream in secret. Kaiki talks about his love for money as it's irreplaceable, unlike how he sees relationships. He makes her question why she should throw away her dreams, all from misplaced love and a self-righteous boy. Once she kills him, what then? Will she sit around her and watch as the world around her deteriorates over the years as a god? Why throw her life away? Why throw that dream of being an artist for Koyomi's sake? Is he really the only thing in her life? Nadeko is shaken by this, convinced to give her dream an actual chance, instead of choosing to throw away everything in her life for the sole purpose of killing Koyomi and blocking out all emotions. She's insane, her motivation and actions illogical and conflicting, but she's not irredeemable. Kaiki has convinced her to try and be a manga artist, and to pretend that he was successful in his deceit. He knocks her out with hypnosis, and goes to remove the talisman, but then the problem appears. Koyomi tries to insert himself into the situation, but Kaiki tells him to back off.
わきまえろ。お前が1000億のためにできることなんか何もないんだから。
There is really nothing he can do. He brings nothing positive into Nadeko's life. He only holds her back from becoming something other than the time bomb, hiding behind the guise of cute and innocent to avoid having to act, afraid of the failure that comes with trying to accomplish something. All Koyomi has done is reaffirm that guise, praise it, and solve her every issue for her. Kaiki exercises the talisman, returning her to normal, handing it to Koyomi, and seeing himself out of town. He leaves with one order to Koyomi: have nothing to do with her life. Koyomi, as expected, believes that to be irresponsible, but it's quite the opposite.
戦国なでこはお前がいたならダメになるだけだ。
He leaves, quoting Oshino, saying if she's alive long enough, something good might happen to her. Koyomi is left there, helpless. He must recognize now the good that can be found in being uninvolved, something Oshino had warned him about, something he had not heeded. Maybe now he can realize. Kaiki calls Hitagi one last time to give confirmation the job was complete, successfully. He gives her grief for the letter she slipped under his door telling him to pull out, a smart decision made based on his personality. She knew that it would strengthen his resolve to see it through, and he believes that this was Gaian's goal too. As he walks through the snow out of town, he makes us aware the truth and lie in his story. We're told to take the tale with a grain of salt, and as such, we should do so with this scene. Lying in the snow, dying from a hit on the head, Kaiki realizes his mistake. He had forgotten about the person who had shadowed him, and that's not to say it's this kid here, the one wrapped in a jagirinawa, the one snake that returned to sender when Nadeko was freed. The karma had come for the boy that cursed an innocent girl, and now that karma had come for Kaiki, the one who gave the child the means to commit such a curse. The child says Ougi had told him he was back in town, but he can no longer think of who Ougi is, because at this point, he's basically dead. The rules of an aberration have been explained to us time and time again, that their existence relies on humanity's belief in them. There are rules to their nature governed by a mysterious force. They act how you perceive them. They prey on your flaws. Yotsugi is no different than any other aberration, though her circumstances may be a little unique. A Tsukomigami, Shinigami, doll. This is what defines her, yet Koyomi perceives her differently. He looks at her as a former human turned doll, which isn't altogether wrong, but still ignores her current state of existence. Something he's done once before, something that ended poorly. We can only hope that this time the results are different. Nadeko has been released from the hospital a few weeks following her descent from the Shirohebi shrine. Koyomi has followed Kaiki's orders to stay away from her, though he still worries about the girl, feeling uneasy cutting ties. But he believes Kaiki was right in what he said, so he puts his wishes aside for the sake of Nadeko. Tsukihi can tell that what happened with the snake girl weighs on Koyomi. She tells him to let it go. It's not his fault that this happened. Like he always does, he burdens this onto his shoulders. He fails to realize how worthless it is carrying the weight of others, when that's something one must do for themselves. Ironically, while he may do so for others, he does not for himself. He does not pay attention to the aspects of his own life he should change, nor realize the weight of his actions. Both his wishy-washy study routine for college entrance exams and the fact that he no longer appears in a mirror. Shinobu concludes that Koyomi is turning back to the state of a vampire, arriving at the conclusion from the mere evidence and the fact that his foot his sister initially broke has been slowly healing. It seems that he isn't to the level he was during spring break, but the collective perception of Koyomi as a vampire seems to be slowly returning to the minds of those in his life. To better understand his situation, he gets hold of a specialist and their aberration partner. Over the past year, Koyomi has time and time again relied on his stance as a quasi-vampire to solve issues with aberrations. From Haneko's cat issues, Kambaru's devil hand, Kaden's bee, the fight with Kage Nui, the list goes on, but none of these instances involved his abilities as much as Nadeko's. For months straight, Koyomi would visit the shrine, and at each visit he would be killed. Time and time again, he would use his healing ability as a vampire to visit the girl that desired his death. Piled on top of all his other adventures, Koyomi has slowly tipped more towards the existence of a vampire and less of a human. His soul is leaning more and more towards a vampire, and the only way to stop the process from continuing is for him to stop using such power anymore. This issue he is running into is precisely why specialists use mediations to deal with aberrations, like for instance, Kage Nui and Yotsugi. There is no reversing this damage, and if he's not careful, he himself will become a full aberration, and Kage Nui will exterminate him, deeming him a threat to humans if this continues. Koyomi promises he won't use the powers anymore, a promise he makes to them, but not to himself. He's not sure he can follow through if someone he loves finds himself in a life or death scenario. scenario. If his abilities will save their life, he will use the powers in an instant, noting that what matters to him is right in front of his eyes, not the consequences to his actions. Kagenui is aware that he'd probably break this promise when push comes to shove, but regardless, there's nothing they can say or do to change his ways. She takes note that Tadatsuru, a former acquaintance of hers, would not be so kind to Koyomi. He had saw oddities as beautiful creatures, but also recognized the need to exterminate him. She believed he would kill Koyomi for simply existing. Coincidentally enough, the man she had just spoke of has kidnapped both Koyomi's sisters along with Kambaru, whose house they were sleeping at, as Koyomi wanted them away while he met with Kagenui. Given the last time they saw each other, she was trying to kill his sister. At the crime scene, Koyomi found a 1,000-folded paper crane with a meetup location. He originally thought that Tadatsuru was after his sister, but Kagenui clears up his confusion. Tadatsuru had always specialized in immortal aberrations that were already dead. That is to say, people like Yotsugi, Mayoi, and in this case, Koyomi and Shinobu. Kagenui and him had never gotten along due to their opposing beliefs, which one can make out given their specifications. While Kagenui chose to specialize in immortal aberrations, particularly the ones that are completely immortal, undying like Tsukihi the Phoenix, Tadatsuru found infatuation with the immortal dead. They likely argued about what exactly defines an aberration, its purpose and rights in the universe, etc. Kagenui finds it too coincidental that Tadatsuru, a person from her past that's a perfect matchup against Koyomi, would randomly appear after years when Koyomi's vampire issue had just been diagnosed. It would seem that a puppet master is working behind the scenes. Koyomi, on the other hand, believes this is reparations for his actions, once again burdening the situation on his own two shoulders, whether it calls for it or not. Kagenui doesn't believe in such an idea, which is where their ideas conflict. One believes he is responsible for the crumbling of his world, the issues that have appeared, which in an odd way he is. The other believes that another force is working against Koyomi to force him to change. His current state of self is full of self-blame and misplaced self-worth. She lets him borrow Yotsugi to confront Tadatsuru.
ああ、遅かったですね、荒木先輩。
Ougi, miraculously, is at the exact location of Tadatsuru's rendezvous point, making a point to note that she's been there since the morning, waiting for Koyomi to get there so she could cheer him on. Her motives are still unclear, but piecing things together, we can assume she is responsible for a lot of what's happened since the darkness first appeared. We've seen her directly influence Koyomi's life through the reliving of the classroom trial, and confronting his past with Sodachi, and Nadeko becoming a god, so it could be that she was indirectly involved with the return of the first one and Tsubasa's tiger. We have no clue what her existence is, but we know she has a deep-rooted connection with Koyomi, and all her actions, including orchestrating the events transpiring at this moment, have been for Koyomi's growth as a person, and cleaning up the problems he shelved both in this year and in the past. She's forcing him to mature, to grow up, to overcome adolescence. She comments on his growth so far, given the kidnapping of his sisters and his inability to use his powers. If such a thing happened during spring break, he would have freaked out, cried like a child, and admitted defeat, wanting to die. But now he faces the issue head on despite the constraints. He takes what comes, does what he has to do. It's an improvement, but that maturity came at a price of sacrifice, loss, and hurt. While Ougi seems to think of these things as vital for growth and good things to happen, Koyomi notes he does not see them in such a light. The growth he had isn't worth the loss of others. He acts as if he had some control over the sacrifices he's witnessed, which is where his maturity stops. What he has witnessed are things that happen every day in life, and he must stop believing that he directly caused such events. He is forced to mature. He can't stop this process, just as he can't stop the loss and pain he faces. These things come at you, whether Ougi was there to make it happen or not. How Koyomi deals with these issues will make or break his character, which is why Ougi uncovered his past for him to make peace with. As he walks the steps to the Shirohebi shrine, he is forced to reflect on the pain he will have to face at the top. For if Ougi orchestrated this situation, there is a lesson he will be forced to learn. Yotsugi is aware of the premeditated situation and is rather sure that Ougi is the one behind it. Koyomi, on the other hand, seems to ignore the answer in front of his face. He more than anyone should know what Ougi is and what she is doing, yet he looks the other way, pretends he doesn't understand. Why? I have yet to understand why Koyomi is so afraid of the truth, but maybe that is something he will share with us at a later date. With a motive that likely lies in deterring Koyomi from using his powers, Yotsugi tells Koyomi he should give her up to Tadatsuru, who has a special interest in the doll, having been part of the college occult club with Oshino, Kaiki, Gaien, and Kagenoi, the creators of Yotsugi. Kagenoi and him argued over who should get the doll as a companion, Yotsugi choosing Kagenoi over him, causing discord which resulted in Tadatsuru leaving the group. Given his track record when it comes to sacrifice on his behalf in somber situations, Koyomi's instinct in this situation is to flip Yotsugi's skirt. There really isn't much to his actions besides to break the air and pull away the discussion from Yotsugi's sacrifice. It's childish, believing that there's a way out that ends with everyone happy, and so childish is his reaction to someone telling him there will be sacrifice. Koyomi's idea is to stroll up and distract Tadatsuru while Yotsugi gets the girls out, but this plan has flaws and ignores the safety of Koyomi, a common theme in all his ideas, the sacrifice of himself in place of others.
そこで何かを学ばない限り、お兄ちゃんはいつも料金を踏み倒し、でも最後には全てを失うことになるんだよ。
He refutes Yotsugi's idea to kill Tadatsuru, and the two try and do it his way, Shinobu commenting that she will force Koyomi to become a vampire if it means saving his life from the situation, knowing full well he plans to walk into death here. But it would seem the stage show does not have Koyomi play the role he believed. The way Kagenoi makes Tadatsuru sound is that he desired to kill Koyomi on the spot, but it would seem her personal opinions have clouded her judgment of the man. The first thing he wonders is why he's here. Koyomi is confused. It should be obvious, but it's not. Why should he want to exterminate Koyomi, a human, even given his new leaning towards a vampire? Tadatsuru still sees Koyomi as a human because he still holds humanity and the values that come with it. It's clear to Tadatsuru that he's been casted in the role of the perfect matchup to Koyomi, as are Kagenoi and Yotsugi a perfect casting for Koyomi's support group, but he has no real interest in playing along with this game. He tells Koyomi to seek out Oshino, who he believes will be able to mediate this odd stagecraft they have all been placed in, but it would seem Oshino does not want to be found. It might be that he wants Koyomi to sort his issue out for himself. People save themselves, and Koyomi must learn that both for himself and others. Tadatsuru leaves Koyomi with one last piece of advice: find a resolution using human compassion, and to not become a monster in the pursuit. He accepts the fate of his role in the play, and the end that comes with it. Koyomi doesn't understand what's happening or why, yet at the same time he does. Yotsugi's words to him following the murder make it clear.
こうならないでね、お兄ちゃん。人間はこうなってしまえばおしまいだ。
Of her own volition, she killed the man because she's a monster. She kills without emotion, without a second thought. Koyomi cannot change that. No matter his own idea of who Yotsugi is, he cannot change what she is, just as he couldn't change what Kissshot was. Koyomi was able to get the three girls home safe and sound. Reflecting on the events of the night, it's clear that the person who created the scenario had the goal of driving a wedge between him and Yotsugi, forcing him to recognize what it means to be an aberration, forcing him to recognize Yotsugi as such. It could be a deterrence for him with using his powers. It could be just the sole goal of severing his bond with Yotsugi. It could be both. Whichever it may be, Gaien and Kagenoi know that they must take countermeasures against the entity's plans. If the goal was to create a fissure in Koyomi and Yotsugi's relationship, then they will do the exact opposite. So Yotsugi becomes the life-sized doll that the youngest Fire's sister wins at the arcade. Koyomi's life continues to take on new shapes and forms, but nothing will be as life-altering as what awaits him just 1 month around the corner. Koyomimonogatari can be summed up to short, mundane events throughout the past year that foreshadow Ougi as being Koyomi. Look at how false relationships have saved Tsukihi and Ougi from being consumed by the darkness as they were accepted in their roles, and analyze what it means to be an aberration or not one. Sometimes the myths and legends are just nothing, sometimes something, and sometimes they're both. Regardless if you realize oddities are everywhere yet nowhere, it's a matter of perception. That's the kind of things that Koyomimonogatari tackles. things that help you understand more of the world, but things I've either already addressed or need not to. That is except for the events of Koyomi Dead. The death of our hero met at the hand of Gaien, acting on behalf of the town in a plan that only she knows the end to. The situation becomes dire when the plan to move Yotsugi into his home backfired, Kagenui disappearing, resulting in the chain of command breaking, and given Yotsugi's role as an aberration doll, unable to receive orders without her puppeteer. Kaiki is incapable of contact, and Oshino's location is unknown, so it's fallen to Gaien to solve the issue being Koyomi. The boy who will act if seeing a person in need is dangerous in a game of shogi. Koyomi lacks understanding that there must be sacrifice to bring balance to the world, and when the enemy is waiting for him to act, in a duel where the first to act loses, Gaien must eliminate that chance, and so she kills him. The king of this game is missing. The shrine has no master, something Gaien entrusted to Koyomi which he failed to accomplish, and so this drastic measure was taken on the day of his college exams. Funnily enough, the reason Koyomi would fail his exams was exactly what Hitagi had assumed would be the biggest issue. It's not that he lacks the intellect, the issue is him getting to the exam without running into an oddity. Koyomi Adaagi is dead, coming to in hell.
あれ8、9時
There isn't much to say about where Koyomi finds himself. He's been sent to the lowest layer of hell known as Avichi, a place where you're burned alive for quite some time while you wait to be reincarnated. Mayoi notes the reason he was sent so low was due to saving a demon, which makes a little sense. She, on the other hand, contrary to Koyomi's belief she went to heaven, was sent to the top layer where she would stack rocks for eternity, her sin dying before her parents. Now that one is dumb as shit. The reason she has found herself currently at the bottom with her old friend is because she was sent to bring him to the top layer by someone. This someone a hell resident that told her of Gaien's plan, which was to kill Koyomi followed by resurrecting him. He thinks this idea of killing then resurrecting doesn't have a rationale, but then realizes that what she's doing is trying to sever him from his vampirism, using the Kokoro Watari, almost like a reset on his existence. He, with Mayoi, climbed the layers of hell as he's faced with visions of his decisions. The first choice that set him down this path was saving the demon known as Kissshot. He spoke of the regret he had saving the demon, but here in this vision he goes to save her once again. In reality, Koyomi acts as if this decision was a heavy burden, but over his time opening up to the vampire, his choice became less and less something to think illy of, and more something he was glad to do. Yet the superficial act continues of being swallowed by grief from his choices. His next vision shows Hanekawa, a woman who's changed his life for better and for worse. She's been a good friend and almost his killer. She has caused him issues, yet also helped him countless times. He doesn't regret helping her and becoming her friend. Hitagi appears in his vision, the act of him catching her highlighting the first real moment between them. Despite the fact that he didn't need to catch her, given her weight she would have landed and been perfectly fine. Yet even if he knew that, he would get involved nonetheless because that's who he is. She's been stubborn, kind, and a good partner. He does not regret saving her either. Mayoi presses Koyomi on his belief that he got in the way of Hitagi and Kaiki's romance, pointing out that the idea is likely just something in Koyomi's head. It seems Kaiki's throwaway comment made a lasting impression. He wishes he never met the man in the first place. All these moments, including those not mentioned, Koyomi made the conscious decision to get involved, even when there was an option to stay out of it. Reflecting, he admits that he'd do everything he's done again if given the chance. But there is one doubt in his mind.
だけどももっとうまくやれたんじゃないかという気持ちはどうしたって否定できない
Mayoi thinks he's being too hard on himself. Speaking of her own experience, she thought Koyomi did all he could at the time. He isn't a god who can know everything and the right way to go about it. He's human, and he did his best. Nadeko's situation seems to be the one he's most hung up on, feeling he failed her several times over. But we all make mistakes or miscalculations. Still, he did what he believed was right. He's reminded of his debate with the Fire Sisters about justice. Koyomi believes that most will prefer to correct their mistakes over doing what is right. One would think it's the same thing, but to Koyomi, if one is allowed to correct their mistakes time and time again, the form of this righteousness would be black instead of white. He thinks of doing things for the self doesn't make one right, but by using the evaluation of society to define what is just, despite going against this time and time again, through being a poor student, a rebellious son, a savior of a demon. Which path of righteousness did he follow in his head? If taking the path of white, how would he achieve anything he wanted? It's hypothetical, but the righteousness in the black is something he's been pushed towards by Ougi, and more so himself. It seems Koyomi believes he's walking a selfish road. He's unsure why this hypothetical idea came to his mind at this point, and why he couldn't remember the name of Ougi, contradicting himself when he says that the conversation wasn't about him, later apologizing for speaking about himself the entire time. He knows it all too well, that Ougi is his inner thoughts, so why doesn't he just admit it? The man he had watched die at the heavy shrine sits in front of him. Tadatsuru tells Koyomi that what he saw that day was one of his controlled dolls die at the hand of Yotsugi. He had, long ago, made dolls not too dissimilar to Yotsugi to house his soul. He had, however, partially failed, dying in the process, yet still living in the doll he had created for himself. He had become forced to live partly dead, partly alive, using his doll bodies to interact with the world of the living. The only people knowing of his ability, Gaien and Oshino. He explains that he had received a note beckoning him to the town of Naotsu to exterminate Koyomi and Shinobu. But prior to this mail coming in, Oshino had visited him, explaining in detail the circumstances of the pair and the town they are in. He made clear how harmless they were, using leverage of exposing Tadatsuru's true form if he didn't cooperate. It seems that Oshino has been carefully making his moves to assist in setting up a scenario for Koyomi to face his own issues, that of Ougi, never getting directly involved. Such is his motto. People save themselves. The only person that can save you is you. Oshino seemed worried that without the help of Tadatsuru cooperating, that Koyomi would be put into a scenario where he'd resort to vampirism to save those he loves, knowing full well he'd sacrifice his own self for others without a thought of the long-term consequences. So, when the note came as Oshino said it would, Tadatsuru went along with the play, after contacting Gaien and setting up this contingency plan. It's time for Koyomi to rejoin the land of the living, yet he stalls the reincarnation. He doesn't see himself as worthy. There are many people in hell that likely deserve to be resurrected before him. It's as if he's cutting in line. Mayoi smacks some sense into him. He is as deserving as anyone else of this privilege. He is a person who loves life, and this entire plan revolved around bringing him back for a reason. He should not feel bad and feel grief for being given opportunity that ignores those who wish they had his position. It's offensive to not use your privilege out of grief. Use it for the better, for those who can't. Use the opportunity to help and save others, and above all, yourself. As Tadatsuru signals the thread to pull him up, Koyomi grabs Mayoi with his legs, seizing the opportunity in front of him to use his privilege to raise a friend up with him, reviving not only himself, but the snail friend who's always been his cheerleader. Tadatsuru gives Koyomi one last note of information. The one that sent the letter to kill him was someone he knows well. It would seem the sever was successful. Shinobu is now once more kiss shot. Koyomi is now fully human. The reset button was hit, and Gaien used Yume Watari to resurrect Koyomi from the dead. The first one's sword that brings back oddities. In this case, a human, thanks to Tadatsu's interference in hell. With him, Mayoi has been resurrected as well, and given the way he went about bringing her back, she is currently not a target for the darkness. She is, for a time, just an adult in the body of a 10-year-old. Such is the decree of Monogatari lollies, each physically questionable, yet mentally unquestionable. With his resurrection complete, Gaien tells Koyomi he can still make it to his exams. She'll make the final preparations for the battle against the enemy, against the entity that Koyomi has created. The lull before the storm. Before Gaien's battle against the unknown begins, Koyomi spends White Day with Hitagi. Yotsugi is still mulling about Koyomi's home, under orders to oversee him until Kagenui reappears, still missing. Oshino's whereabouts are still unknown, while Gaien, Mayoi, and Kishshot plan their offensive. The future is uncertain, so Koyomi keeps his eyes on what lies in front of him, as he always has. Hitagi had obtained a driver's license while Koyomi had been studying for his exams. She had been worried that Koyomi would never be able to due to his vampirism, but it seems she was all worried for nothing, her devotion shining through in this action. While they drive to the planetarium, the first stop on their date, Hitagi informs Koyomi Hanekawa was able to deduce Oshino's location to two possibilities, though Hitagi can't remember what they were. She, for the most part, doesn't care. So Koyomi sits there in the dark of where his mentor could be at such a high-tension time. The subject changes to Hitagi's love for the stars and universe, how she describes galaxies as vast yet unbound, stars clumping together as if they get lonely like humans. Speaking on her character, she's loyal, very loyal, and is so in an attempt to outsource her own affection. She carries a lot under that monotone, sarcastic exterior. We saw it with her growing friendship with Hanekawa, her care for her kohai Kanbaru, and of course in her relationship with Koyomi. Despite the impression she gives off, she is the opposite of cold and apathetic. She tells Koyomi of her ambition to create a more refined map of the universe while she studies in college. Speaking of the current map of the galaxy that resembles a hand fan, which shares a familiar name, Ougi. Koyomi dreams of Ougi, or more to say, Ougi invades Koyomi's dreams. The words she shares with Koyomi here come off as subtle, persuasive threats, telling Koyomi he should not get involved with Kishot, Mayoi, and Gaien's plans. He's no longer a vampire, and may not be something she needs to worry about. She jumps over Koyomi's questioning of if she had tried to exterminate him, posing a question of her own. What does Koyomi think it means to do the right thing? For Koyomi, who has always tried to do the right thing in every scenario, his actions have left mistakes. The righteous acts he's done canceled by the negatives that came with it, rebalancing the world to zero. Ougi contrasts this with the lives of the Fire Sisters and Kagenui. Both seek to serve justice by correcting mistakes and injustice that tailors to their view of right. Koyomi had saw this method as ignoring the bigger picture, but by doing so, the girls are able to avoid the problems Koyomi runs into. They serve the desires of their self through this justice. They have no regrets in doing what they see as right. Yet Koyomi sees a black and white road of justice. He doubts his self-determined justice and always looks at the other side of the street, not just his own. So what is it that Koyomi defines as right? What is it that makes him doubt what he's done so far, which in some ways he believed to be righteous and other ways self-serving? Ougi tells him to reflect as he already knows the answer. She herself serves justice by correcting mistakes, namely the ones created by Koyomi, calling herself the laws of the universe, but making clear to him she is not the darkness, one of Koyomi's hypotheticals of her existence. She references the idea of living as two halves, severed, both alive, immortal in a crude way, the shape of the universe, and Ougi, a way to interpret their relationship. The conversation diverges into immortality and the cost of such a power. The price Gaien will pay for Koyomi's revival has yet to be delivered, but given the retribution bestowed upon those involved in the creation of Yotsugi, the revival of a human, we can only guess what awaits her. Kagenui and Taratsuru had been cursed to never touch the ground. Kaiki and Oshino's retribution uncertain. Maybe Meimei was forced to be a nomad. Maybe Kaiki is forced to forsake human connection. We have really no way of knowing yet. Koyomi is left to reflect on the principles of right, of mortality and loyalty as he's forced to wake up. Their date continues, their day spent enjoying each other's company, trying their best to not think of what may happen tomorrow. Hitagi seems to believe that Gaien's enemy is Koyomi in some way, which isn't off the mark by any means. They continue to their final stop of the day, where Hitagi coaxes Koyomi to begin calling her by her first name, no honorifics. He does, and their bond deepens. In a last-ditch effort, Ougi tries to coax Koyomi to her side, that there's something she must do, something she must achieve or die trying, even if it means falling into Gaien's trap. She can't run away from what is practically her destiny. Due to her limited odds of success, she takes a radical course of action.
私を助けてください
The true birthplace of the issues known as Ougi dates back to 400 years ago. Kishot landing at Naotsu, emptying the lake during her landing, caused the current deity of the time to lose its purpose, Kishot uprooting him, but she herself could not fill the god's role. The village merged its spirituality with a neighboring tribe, adopting the Shirohebi snake deity we knew as Kuchinawa. Yada yada, flash forward to the first one's ashes gathering at the shrine, which led to the collapse of the deity of the snake, as did Kishot's arrival once more, the town of Naotsu losing its god again, the oddity energy no longer having a buffer. The first one would use this bad energy at the shrine to reobtain form, but that's not all that he did. In the skirmish with Kanbaru and Koyomi, the first one drained the power from the hand of the Rainy Devil, an entity that bears resemblance to the entity known as Ougi. The Rainy Devil, a product of Toei Gaien and self-discipline which took form. This absorption is the first point in the story we see an amalgamation of oddities take form. The energy the first one is housing possibly branching off into form, which was followed by Shinobu eating him, who is connected to a certain someone and key to understanding what went wrong and when. Koyomi Araragi, the creator of Oshi no Ougi. There are three major events that led to his unconscious creation of the entity. The first, the incident in August involving the darkness, an object whose purpose is to simply correct mistakes. The second, the absorption of the power of the rainy devil's hand, and in turn Toei's all too similar mistake. And finally, Koyomi's own desire to criticize himself. He created an entity with the sole purpose to punish himself for going against what he assumed was the righteous path. He never outright defines what the right is, but he believes that anything that is remotely positive for him couldn't be right. He believes such a thing would be self-indulgent. He had helped Kiss shot out of sympathy for her situation and wanted punishment for his actions. Saving a suffering demon's life couldn't remotely be seen as right by the universe's standards. He became friends with Hanekawa, but believed himself unworthy as he couldn't reciprocate her feelings and led to her suffering. He had turned down the same woman who changed his worldview. Surely that wasn't right. He helped Hitagi resolve her long-term weight issues, but by dating her, he believes he was taking advantage of her weakness for those kind to her. He respects his kohai Kambaru, but feels inferior as he can't live by her straightforward nature. He helped Nadeko, but his focus was on helping even the ones who punished her. He didn't treat her with enough compassion. He reconciled with Shinobu, but was that even allowed? He had taken away the demon's selfless act to heal him of vampirism because he couldn't allow another to suffer for his sake. In the first place, is it even fair to use the power of immortality? Shouldn't he face consequences for taking advantage of such a thing? For taking advantage of his relationships? For being happy? Isn't he the worst human imaginable? These thoughts raced through Koyomi's head, created a desire to be punished, criticized, and face retribution. The emotions creating the being known as Ougi, who did exactly what he desired, slowly taking away the people in his life one by one, using the situation involving Sodachi as a springboard. Given her birthplace being Koyomi's mind, she had not only his knowledge, but the power of the oddities he had encountered, using them to sever his connections. Oshino, Kaiki, Kagenoi. She cut off his specialist support, using aberrations like the slug and snail. She became the judgment he wanted, the consequences for his actions. The only way to stop her from sucking everything out of his life is for him to confront her and expose her for what she really is. Him. If he exposes her lie, the foreshadowing she placed to make him assume she is the darkness, the lie that she is Oshino's niece, the darkness will be forced to act. Aberrations must follow the rules of their creation, and Ougi has tried to be something she is not. Gaian sends Koyomi to confront her, knowing where she'll be thanks to her predictable nature. Ougi must do as she was created, which is to take away those within his life, and punish him for choosing what he believed to be the wrong thing to do, but the right thing for himself. After having a heart-to-heart with Nadeko, Tsukihi runs into Ougi riding by. She's offered a ride. The conversation she had with Nadeko carries over into this one, Ougi analyzing Tsukihi's tendency to be drawn to those who have goals as to make up for her own lack of such. Her future is wide and unpredictable because she's capable of so much, but this makes her indecisive and inactive. She relies on the desires of others for purpose, such as the case with the Fire Sisters, helping Nadeko with her manga, believing in her brother's sense of right. She's dependent on the ones around her for meaning, yet at the same time she needs no meaning of her own. It makes her hard to deal with from Ougi's shoes, a being that just wishes to enjoy the present moment, simply live to the next day and on to the next. How do you convince them of their true role as a monster, as an immortal phoenix who, like all aberrations, is incapable of living on their own accord? The phoenix duty to simply continue living. Yet, Tsukihi thrives and is happy with this role, so she doesn't question it, nor Ougi's continued attempts to expose her true nature, which would in turn take Tsukihi away from Koyomi, as an aberration that lives a lie will meet the punishment of the darkness. But her work is interrupted at the crammed school she takes Tsukihi to.
扇ちゃん待ちかねたぜ。
Ougi sends Tsukihi home on her bike, there is something she must discuss with her brother. She comments that her attempts to expose Tsukihi were in vain. She was seemingly immune to her leading, and even if she was successful, she has a brother who continues to love her all the same, even when knowing her identity. She's acknowledged as a sister, and the darkness cannot correct something that is true. It's not that Ougi's proud of what she's doing, taking apart Koyomi's life, but it's what he made her to do. Somewhere deep in Koyomi is an inkling of doubt on if it's the right thing to let his Phoenix sister live as a normal human being. Ougi begs for her life, reminding him she had asked Koyomi to side with her, but it seems he had not made her to be charming, but imposing. Even as she begs for him to reconsider what he's about to do, she criticizes his decisions that led him to this point, makes him doubt his relationships, his compliance to Gaien's plans. Her existence is somewhat sad to watch, as if behind the cold eyes is a being asking for mercy, but the words that come out aren't able to convey the message. She accepts her fate as Koyomi exposes her lie.
君の正体は僕だ。
Even at this pinnacle moment, Koyomi hesitates. He faces this being, an aberration of his adolescence, of his conflict with right and wrong when it comes to his actions, with compassion. He wonders why she came, knowing it would be a trap. It's as she said before, sometimes you have to fight battles you'll know you'll lose.
私は私なりに荒木暦の青春をより良くはできなくともより正しくはできたのではないでしょうか。
What is right? What is wrong? Can you really cut them apart? With Sodachi, it seems Koyomi won that battle. Ougi was unable to worsen the relationship and actually allowed it to heal by bringing them together. With Nadeko, it was clear Koyomi was the problem. His insistence in being in her life, of suffering on her behalf, actually held her back from growing as a person and exposed the faults in Koyomi's actions. Ougi won that battle. As for the thing with Taratsuru, we'll have to see it as a draw. Neither got to act. Taratsuru and Gaien taking the battle of morals off script. At the end though, given that the universe is acting judge, the darkness has appeared to punish Ougi, it seems Koyomi was the one who was right in the end. He always had been. Ougi was the ugly duck he created that allowed him to realize that what he's done in life isn't wrong. The spectrum known as justice is something we decide for ourselves. Ougi bids him a goodbye. He looks torn as he parts with his adolescence, letting it die. Is that the objective right thing to do? Maybe. But is that what he believes to be right?
やっぱり無理!
It's in this moment that Koyomi truly sheds his immaturity. He realizes the idea of a universal right and wrong to each scenario isn't realistic. There could be a universal entity that deals with justice, that judges our decisions on a straightforward scale. But it's not something he, or frankly anyone, has the capability of actually knowing the rules of. So how could he act upon it? What he should be doing is strengthening what is his form of righteousness, instead of doubting his ability in doing so. He needs to live by his heart, and the criticisms of Ougi allowed him to arrive at that conclusion, that he is right, and his form of right does not believe he should let the power of the darkness consume the girl known as Ougi, so he intervenes, losing his arm in the process. Ougi is left in shock, thinking him to be an idiot. He isn't an immortal vampire any longer, yet he's still sacrificing himself for others. He corrects her. What he's really doing here is saving himself, both literal and figurative. By saving her, he is staying true to who he is, and not letting his sense of right die along with Ougi. Koyomi, for the first time, does not doubt his action, and firmly believes in them to be just. Ougi is touched, the two prepared to die.
そうでもないさ。
A voice that is nostalgic, not heard from for what feels like years. Oshino stands with Hanekawa. She had found Oshino holed up in Antarctica. Her willpower to find and retrieve him a statement to why Ougi felt so threatened by her during the Sodachi incident. She knew Tsubasa could best her. Oshino acknowledges Ougi as his niece, this simple act making Ougi Oshino's existence a fact, no longer a fabrication. The darkness has no place correcting something that is no longer a mistake, and it leaves. The conclusion is reached. Meme is proud of Koyomi for confronting his issues, and coming out of it, not a man with broken morals, but a better version of himself. He saved himself, and so Oshino Ougi begins existing, and Koyomi's adolescent years come to an end. No longer will he believe that not taking care of himself is the act of loving others. Koyomi will start loving who he is and who he has become. Mayoi was given the duty of the acting god in the Shirohebi shrine by Gaian. This way, the darkness would not come after her given her new aberration role. She's happy she can see Koyomi once again. Kishot's desire is to once more take on the form of an innocent little girl, wishing to spend her days peacefully with Koyomi once more. They recite their vow to live as long as the other lives and die together one day. The pair once more return to their roles as quasi-vampire humans. Heading to graduation, Koyomi gives Karen a word of advice. She has arrived at the conclusion that her definition of right is helping others. Koyomi advises her to start by helping herself. He doesn't want his sisters to commit the same mistakes he did. Outside the school, he runs into Hanekawa, who tells him she'll be leaving right after the ceremony to explore the world. First stop is an institution she promised to share her smarts with in return for a fighter jet to Antarctica to acquire Oshino. She proved to be quite resourceful. It's made clear that Kagenoi is currently at the North Pole and for the time being plans to train there, meaning Yotsugi will remain at the Aragi household for the time being. Oshino and Gaian had left rather quickly, off to do whatever it is they do. As they continue walking to meet Hitagi, Hanekawa learns that she and Koyomi have begun calling each other by their first names. She takes this as a sign she no longer needs to worry about their relationship. These two will be fine on their own. She teases Hitagi about this, who begins calling her by her first name as well. The trio climb the stairs to graduation, reflecting, enjoying their final moments before entering the world. In a small moment, Koyomi spots a distressed girl heading down the stairs. The girls already know what is going through his head, pushing him to go do what he always has. He tells them to grab his diploma as he rushes downwards, running by a classroom Ougi is standing in. She comments that he never changes. He stops for but a moment. He makes it clear he is changing, arriving at new conclusions, new ways of thinking. But no matter how much he may change, he is still himself. Koyomi will always do what he sees as right, always help those who need help. It's who he is. Even through the self-doubt around his actions the past year, he held those same values. She smiles. Koyomi's coming-of-age story comes to an end, but that's not where his journey stops. High school is over. Koyomi's title as a student is revoked, and he's found himself stuck in limbo. He hasn't yet received a pass or fail on his college entrance exams, so for this time, he does not know what lies next for him. For the first time in his life, Koyomi is titleless, and when you find yourself in this kind of situation, you tend to reflect inward on the choices that got you to this point of your life. Looking in the mirror at himself, he notices his reflection becoming immobile, no longer mimicking his movements. He stares at the Koyomi in the mirror, reaching out to it, when it finally moves. The first difference Koyomi encounters is his sister, who has shrunk significantly, no longer the large tomboy obsessed with combat sports. This Karen loves shopping. Tsukihi, on the other hand, seems unchanged. The third encounter, Yotsugi, who is expressive and non-doll-like. Whatever happened to Koyomi, it's altered the people around him. He seeks audience with the town god, hoping she may set things straight. It seems even Mayoi has been altered, now a 21-year-old woman, though still a god. Koyomi tells her about the changes in the mirror, leading to their first hypothesis, that the things around Koyomi are not reversed, but mirrored reflections, showcasing who those around him are within. The pieces of them that lie below the surface, which would explain why Karen became smaller and feminine, and not an older brother to Koyomi. What the boy has found himself in is a mere world of sorts, a world full of paradoxes, of contradictions. Koyomi deduces Shinobu not being present is due to the fact it's a mirror. Vampires cannot exist in such a world, but even so, the people of the mirror world, like Mayoi, know who Shinobu is. However this world works, there's one thing that's clear. Koyomi remembers a story Gaian told about being able to see the reflection of the one you're destined to be with in the Suruga household's bath. It's a long shot, but it could potentially allow him contact with what he assumes is the other side, his reality, where Shinobu must still be, but getting into the house may be harder than first expected. The hatred Kanbaru seems to house has been brought to the surface in the mirror world, and seeing Koyomi sends it into a rage. He's saved from death by an unexpected hero. Black Hanekawa looks to be Tsubasa's reflection here. She remarks that she still hates Koyomi and only saved him because she was asked to, though she does not reveal who that person is. The fact these two girls are not necessarily reflections, but total oddities, brings up holes in Koyomi's original hypothesis of this world. And on top of that, Tsuki remains unchanged. Exactly how does this world function? With his encounters so far, Koyomi's left to come up with a new theory for the mirror world, but the newest character chain veers him further off course.
なんだ暦か
Sodachi, not the hateful, despising one with years of pent-up trauma, but a Sodachi that is cute, emotionally expressive, and wears her feelings for Koyomi on her sleeve. A Sodachi that didn't run from their house in elementary school, a Sodachi that stayed, that has lived with the Aragis for years. It's a form that undoubtedly is better than the one he knows, because this Sodachi did not have to suffer. Koyomi's emotions about this world become conflicted, seeing how it's benefited her. A small voice in his mind wonders if it's better to stay here, but Sodachi's comment raises questions. She says things have always been this way, living with the Aragis, yet she wishes for it to stay like this forever, as if she knows the other side of the mirror.
こんなの全部嘘だって思ってる
He's a little shaken, and the situation seems more dire than originally thought. He's worried that an oddity is the cause for this mirror world, and more so what may happen if he stays here for too long. No matter how he might feel seeing his childhood friend happy, he has to solve this mystery. Luckily, Nadeko can fix that. Her strong attitude has come to the surface, but with that is also her status as a serpent god, which helps us formulate a new theory. It isn't that mirrors reverse left to right, but show the other side of people. A reflection is the other side of a person's image. This is why Tsuki remains unchanged. She does not have another side. She's 100% herself, 100% of the time. This also backs why Hanako and Kanbaru and Nadeko have their oddity side showing. It's one of their hidden masks. This seems like the right theory, yet still is lacking something, as if not the full picture, as if missing a piece of knowledge, that of understanding. Why did these alter egos surface? What is their reasoning for coming forward? And more importantly, if this is the mirror world as Koyomi believes, then where is the mirrored Koyomi? In his reality, or still here? Could it be Ougi? That would be the most logical assumption with what we know currently, but she's already a part of his reality. There's not a possibility that she could be from here. There's much more to understand about what he's found himself trapped in. Sodachi's life in this mirror world brings both happiness and pain. Seeing what could have been and what is here makes not only us want things to stay mirrored, but delays Koyomi's actions, as if he's trying to take in the what-ifs this world is showing him. But at the end of the day, he knows he can't stay here. Sodachi explains to Koyomi that mirrors only show about 80% of one's reflection. The other 20% of light is lost in the glass, meaning that even when looking into a mirror, we can only see a blurred vision of ourselves, both physically and mentally. These altered versions of the people in his life seem to be more than just reflections of who they are. Our theory begins to unravel once again. Yotsugi seems different, or in a better sense normal. She now acts as the unexpressive, doll-like Yotsugi we know, saying that after Koyomi acted weird this morning, she had been reflecting on herself and arrived at a conclusion that something was off. Not necessarily with her, but with him. She altered her persona to something that she felt would be more normal to this Koyomi, so that she could help him solve his issue. Their first lead, the kiss shot of this world. It seems vampires can exist in a mirror, or more to say, the humanity of a vampire can exist in a mirror. Kiss Shot tells Koyomi that he must find a way to return to his world, as his presence in this one is slowly disrupting the balance. Yotsugi already affected by this, and her changing persona. Others are sure to be affected as well. His disruption of the world that puts worry in Kiss Shot leads him to have an urge to kill himself, holding himself back from ripping his own throat out. This feeling is strange, and he continues to fight it. He concludes that while he thought he was the victim of this issue, in reality, he's the problem. The mirror world, the one truly in danger. He was foolish to not follow Oshino's advice and look within himself to find the root of the problem. This mirror world is his doing, not an oddity. He must remember that. Kiss Shot tells him to seek Kanbaru's bath out. He was on the right path, though she is not sure he'll necessarily find what he looks for there. Koyomi's feeling of overwhelming guilt for putting this world, and more importantly Kiss Shot, in danger surpasses his limits. He attempts to take his own life. Yotsugi removes him from Kiss Shot's castle. The reflection of Kissshot is such a glorious princess that a mere human feels an overwhelming feeling of superiority from her, leading them to want to kill themselves, unworthy of having an audience with her. Before he had been forced to leave to avoid killing himself, Kissshot told him to seek aid from another against the guardian of the bath. That other is none other than Yotsugi, who will distract the monkey so he can enter the bathhouse. Sodachi, while still cheerful on the surface, seems to be slowly succumbing to Koyomi's altered presence, leading to the dread of reality seeping back into her mind. He's worried about her, but even more worrisome, as Tsuki washes his face, he sees a change in his reflection, a smile, leading him to wonder what exactly is happening to him. While the face change is somewhat important, for now the two of them dismiss the reflection alteration and focus on the goal of the bath. They are uncertain of its success, but it's the best plan they have. Yotsugi brings up the option of Koyomi altering himself to fit the world's mold of him, but there are holes in this idea. Koyomi is tempted by Sodachi's character in this world, but he has to put that aside. He left too many things in his own reality to live out what remains of his existence here. It wouldn't be right. The devil comes. Nothing, absolutely nothing is reflected in this bath, leading to a dead end. It seems they'll have to go back to square one when a new face enters the bathhouse, Guy and Toei. Through deduction, Koyomi's expressions and actions, Toei is able to grasp his situation fairly clearly the more time that passes. Within 10 minutes, she not only understands that Koyomi is in a mirrored reality, but also the reason characters are mirrored the way they are, the fact that she is actually dead, and even how to fix this issue of Koyomi's. While Koyomi may know he's in a mirrored world, he lacks understanding of it. That's his issue. Until he understands why he created this world, he won't be able to solve his issue. No one can fix this for him. Just as he had to do with Ougi, this is something he must solve himself. She offers to wash his back, Koyomi a little off-put by this. They had only just met, but that really isn't the case.
私の左手がお前に合っているだろう
Toei tells Koyomi of her own inward reflection, the Rainy Devil, an entity made to punish herself by herself, not too dissimilar to Koyomi's own mirror, Ougi. She, however, had killed her mirror and given the paw to her daughter in hopes that it may be useful when she too must face her mirror one day, as all with Guy and Blood must. They are monster creators, whether they want that title or not. The remaining ligaments of the Rainy Devil were dispersed around the world, only dangerous if they were to come together. Given that the devil is part Toei, she'd rather be left to rest in pieces. She tells Koyomi to let Kanbaru know when he feels the time is right, that there is no reason to hold on to that paw. There was only ever one thing she wanted to make clear to Kanbaru when she gave it to her.
私のようにはなるな
To her, the only path was to forsake her other side, the crybaby demon. But Koyomi proved a different path was available when faced with the same circumstance. At the end of the day, that demon in your closet is none other than yourself.
それが闇であれ光であれお前の相棒であることに違いはない
Partners in life, inseparable. A piece of you that you may find ugly, evil even. Koyomi embraced that, feeling it is as worthy as the part of him in the light. With that final message, Toei disappears, leaving him with a note inscribed on his back, "Now too high." Yotsugi refuses to go, leaving Koyomi on his own to the school. Something about what's there brings fear to her, and would to Koyomi if he knew what awaits him. He dons his school uniform, that of Ougi's, who he has come to believe is the mirror world version of himself. But it would seem there is a large misunderstanding. Or more to say, everything we've come to know about the mirror world is wrapped in many misunderstandings. What we know isn't inherently wrong, but it most definitely isn't right either.
やあ遅かったですね
Ougi waits in the ghost classroom of Sodachi's trial. She confesses that she swapped their uniforms and did the reflection smile in an effort to increase Koyomi's sense of urgency, knowing that he was avoiding the reality of their situation, more interested in taking in this side of Sodachi than facing what he created this world for. He continues to act ignorant, questioning Ougi on what is happening, but she points out the obvious.
私は何も知りませんよあなたが知ってるんです
Everything that Ougi says, Koyomi would already know. The only difference is that it's Ougi's duty to share his subconscious thoughts out loud, for us and Koyomi to see clearly. She confirms that she is Koyomi's double from their original reality, not a mirrored altered character from another world. She already in some sense was a reflection of him upon creation. More importantly, what they have found themselves in isn't a mirrored world, but a reality mirrored over their own.
鏡の国に来たのではなく、鏡の国を引っ張ってきたんですよ。
Koyomi did not enter a mirror. He brought out that 20% that is lost of oneself in a mirror, 20% that would disappear, executed to use a more harsh word. He empathized with that part of himself, a part that he was leaving behind as he entered into his new uncertain future. He was leaving behind possibilities, regrets, and pieces of himself from adolescence. When he reached out to it and pulled it from the mirror, he also intrinsically pulled out the 20% of those around him, the parts of themselves that they had buried and tried to leave behind, to forget about. Gaien's sister, Karen's femininity, Sodachi's desires, Shinobu and Yotsugi's humanity, Mayoi's aging, Hanekawa's departure and black self, Nadeko's angst, Kanbaru's hate. Koyomi saved those pieces and brought them to this world. He understands now what each person's reflection symbolizes, though he still doesn't understand why he did it. Why did he pull the 20% from the mirror? The answer is quite simple.
一体誰ですか？
It's obvious. He is who he is. Koyomi Aragi, a simple-minded boy-turned-man who saves beings and oddities instinctively, without favoritism. The person in the mirror, none other than the part of him he's regretting leaving behind as he moves into the future. Someone he wants to save and not bury 6 feet under. That 20% is something he wants to remember as once him, no matter how much he changes over his next chapter, which allows Ougi to bring a close to this issue, one that if went on much longer could have led to their deaths at the hand of angry specialists. After all, Koyomi had reflected his own world full of regrets on the town he lived in. That can't be ignored forever, but thanks to him, his choice to save Ougi will be less questioned. Her presence is the only thing that could bring this tale closed. With her existence as an amalgamation of oddities and Koyomi, she's able to pull a piece of darkness that takes and holds the reflection of the town, a 100% reflection, black when looked at, but colorful on the inside. He takes the black mirror housing the regrets of the town's people from Ougi to enshrine with the town god. Reflecting on the events, Koyomi realizes what Ougi was trying to push him to understand. His regrets were not just about himself, but what he was leaving behind. Things he regretted mixed with the regrets others had. He felt responsible for Karen's feminine complex due to how he treated her when she tried to be girly. Sodachi's loss of a good adolescence because he wasn't perceptive enough of her situation. Shinobu's loss of a humane death as he saved her and continued to use her for her vampiric abilities. Gaia not living up to her standards of being as good as her sister with the occult. Koyomi always getting in the way of her plans. Failing to let her live up to her expectations of herself. Not being able to save Mayoi and allow her to live a full life as her true age. His regret with how he handled Haneko's black side, how he averted eyes from Nadeko's true self, how he ignored Kanbaru's hate for him. Through encountering these regrets he had with everyone, mixed in with their own regrets of themselves, he found peace with what they were all carrying beneath the surface. Things that can't be fixed, that may only hurt to remember, but reflection on one's past is important.
多分そのくらいでいいのだ。
He can't bring it to his future, nor should he forget about it entirely, but reflecting on how he got here every once in a while should be just fine. He understands now why Hitagi was not present in his mirror anomaly, because with her he regretted nothing, and so she was unaffected by the issue. The two stand at the edge of the sidewalk, waiting for the light of their future to turn green. Koyomi had been afraid, like when he was a child, of which foot he should step with first. The decision does not alter his fate, but makes him immobile. Just as this past 2-day experience was a distraction from his uncertainty of how to move forward with the weight of this past year of choices, but with Hitagi by his side pushing him forward, he's able to leap into the unknown. Their next story begins. Kanbaru reflects on her mother's tendency to speak of contradictions and how all of mankind is created of them, ideals both right and wrong, never absolute and never fact. The fact there's so many opinions in this world makes life a rather daunting task. Thrown at you left and right are the morals of family, friends, peers, and teachers, conflicting and contradicting ideas found in each, that they are the ones who know the true way to live life, the real righteous. This leaves Kanbaru in an interesting seat. The senpai she looked up to, Koyomi and Hitagi, have graduated, her new life beginning, one without them to guide her through what's thrown at her. Kanbaru finds herself now driving the ship, and she's stuck in limbo, unsure which way she should steer it. Ougi is perceptive of Kambaru's internal battle, and possibly with the intent to push her towards facing it, makes her aware of a rumor, that of a devil that solves the worries of others, one that reminds Kambaru all too much of the brainy devil's acting principles. She tries to get more information out of a classmate, using Koyomi as an excuse for butting into the rumor, which causes the room of girls to light up in excitement at the name. This is odd. It seems Koyomi was popular, something he didn't speak of in his stories. I assume it was one of the things he didn't consider important, but Kambaru does not feel the same. Keden would provide Kambaru with the details to find the worry-ridden devil, leading her to a ghost of her past, a former arch-rival in basketball, Roka. She had gone off-grid following a broken leg in middle school, which led her to being dropped from a scholarship for high school, leading her to be jobless and a dropout, finally to becoming Devil Sama, the demon who rids people of worry. She collects people's misery as a hobby, something that makes her feel better about herself. Kambaru, without hearing a word more, acts out. What exactly is it about Roka that bothers Kambaru? It's the satisfaction Roka has playing the collector of misery. It's gross, a betrayal of the people who confide in her, her intent not to help them, but to use their worry to offset her own. At least that's how Kambaru sees it. Roka points out she doesn't do anything, literally. She just simply listens and tells them she understands their issues. They then believe she will fix them, and lo and behold, their issues usually solve themselves.
悩みなんてものは大抵の場合、時間が解決してくれるからに決まっているじゃないか。
Running away from the problem enough will eventually solve itself with time. It's only people who immediately try to solve the problem that have it tough. If anything, really, she's unburdening others of their worries, bearing it for them for their own satisfaction. Is that really such a bad thing? Kambaru becomes confused, her own sense of righteous weakened, not well understood. When faced with Roka's own ideals, she caves and wonders if what she's saying is right. And what she's doing, while not right, isn't by any means wrong either. It makes her reflect, if she had only endured her problem in elementary instead of trying to solve it immediately, then no one would have ever been hurt by the devil pop. She still thinks what Roka is doing is wrong, but it's not harming anyone. She feels that she has no business changing the situation, and goes home, confused and unsure.
悩むなんてのは時間の無駄だ。考える暇があるなら動け。
Kambaru remembers another one of her mother's teachings. It rattles in her brain along with Roka's ideals, but her reflection is interrupted by a change. Her hand is no longer a monkey's paw. What could have caused such a change? Why now? Oshino had told her it would eventually go away with time, but what exactly made that time now? Why was it so anticlimactic? She's cautious of the disappearance, but for now, she enjoys the freedom from the devil. Her bliss interrupted by some news.
あれなんかいなくなったそうですよ。
Ougi once more sparks her journey. Asking her classmate once more about Roka leaves her with the information that she hasn't been heard from since middle school when the injury happened. No one knows where she's gone or how she is, yet Kambaru saw her yesterday. More confusion around the mystery of Roka accumulates. She sees her friend out of town, where she runs into the familiar face of a dead man. The explanation behind why a supposed dead man has made his reappearance is easily understood by his own words of warning during the story he narrated. Don't trust all that he said, and so we won't. Therefore Kaiki, a man who never died, stands before Kambaru, who runs only to lose the race to a con man. She does not know how, but regardless, she feels powerless, embarrassed, and frustrated. Kaiki has been waiting for Kambaru to step out of town since last summer. Given his banishment from the town, he's mulled around the city limits till this day, all to share with her some information. She doesn't want to comply with him. She was told by Hitagi and Koyomi to never speak to him and run. But obviously that didn't work, and without further guidance from others, Kambaru can't think of what to do.
この件からお前が得るべき教訓は逃げるだけでは解決しない物事もあるということだ。
A realization that time can't solve everything is what she can take away from here. But doesn't that contradict what Roka said? She's unsure, confused what she should believe, but she agrees to at least hear the man out. Not that she has much a choice. Kaiki has known Toei, Kambaru's mom, since they were high schoolers. He was never a fan of her sister, but Toei he had a soft spot for. She had always helped him when he needed it, and she had asked him to take care of her daughter would something happen to her. Kaiki's choice to not use the name Kambaru, as it was the name of Suruga's father, allows her to deduce that Kaiki was not a fan of her dad, and that Kaiki was in love with Toei. He admits he was while in university, but at the time he had a girlfriend and the two of them never got anywhere. Regardless, that isn't important. He didn't come here to talk about lost love, and hands Kanbaru his card. As he promised her mother, he tells her to call him should she ever need help. She hesitates taking the card. She wants to hate the man, but she can't. He's done nothing to allow the feeling and everything to make her like him. It isn't a given the person you like will like you, just as the person you hate won't necessarily hate you. No human has the same personality when viewed from all angles. No human is the same personality at all times. He is not a good guy, but he isn't bad either. At least that's certain around her. She's at a loss. He shares the reason he brought her here. Someone will come to collect the monkey paw very soon. She should give it to him. It's better that way. Never use it. He acknowledges that the paw is no longer in her control. Her current wrapped arm, normal. But it seems this advice means more than what can be taken at face value. She wonders how he knew she'd be at the station. He tells her Loka was the one who told him. Again, the mysterious girl that disappeared from the public's eyes crosses her path again. She wonders if Kaiki knew what Loka was doing, but given his warning, it's obvious he did. Loka took the con man as strange, only sharing half his information when talking to anyone, not wanting to decide how the story ends, just act as a good-intentioned third party. People solve their problems themselves. Kaiki won't be stepping on Kanbaru's own growth as a person. This is her story to finish. The two play, the game showing their emotions through actions, their frustrations, their ambitions, their stories. Kanbaru shares her past with Loka. Loka understands Kanbaru's feelings. She too is more interested in girls, but it's not clear if this is just her teasing Kanbaru or real, as we'll begin to see. Like Kaiki, Loka doesn't share all the information. There are holes in her story, the one pertaining to her current existence. The origin of her misery collection dates back to the leg injury that ended her athletic career. Before it, her infatuation with misery was more directed on understanding why she was given talent and athleticism and others were not. Because of her talent, she was ostracized and she wished that everyone had talent like her, for then she wouldn't be shamed. And so in some roundabout way, her wish came true. She no longer could use her talent. Stress fracture. Overuse of the bone that caused the break. Loka would quote it as stress she and her teammates would put upon her, something she thought she could carry, but as it turns out, she had a breaking point too. Even though she had been broken, it only increased the amount of misery she would be exposed to. So began people coming to her with their worries, seeing Loka as an easy person to talk to, as she was deeper in the swamp of misery. These people didn't want advice and pity from people who were happy. What they wanted was someone to tell them they'd be fine, and so Loka became that. She became a wall for them to bounce their worries off of, and they'd eventually sort themselves out. She liked this, liked the misery, and began seeking it out as the devil for comfort. Not in a desire to change it, but a desire to collect it. Hold it close. But this isn't a healthy hobby that leads to a good mental state. Loka's story becomes darker. Her misery collecting begins to include the parts of the Rainy Devil after a run-in with the conman Kaiki. The two, having overlapping business practices, did not get along. They acknowledged each other's practices and decided to never run into each other again. Before leaving, he shared the theory of the supernatural existing with Loka, which sparked something within her. Before moving to the next segment of her history, Loka tells Kanbaru that absolutes don't exist in this world. There is no absolute evil nor good. Evil always saves something. She begins a story about a girl named Loka, though the last names differ. But keep in mind that Loka does not do business with her real name either. This Loka was the bearer of the devil's leg, having wished upon it to solve her problem. That problem, her mother, who was abusive and demanding of an abortion of the baby and her daughter from the boy the daughter loved. This Loka too had an injured leg, one that the demon took over to try and kill the mother. But this was not enough to kill her. She was hospitalized, the daughter in shambles, knowing what happened. She did not know what to do, which is when the Loka Devil came in. She would solve this Loka's problems, that is what she told her, and she meant it. Loka really did want to save this girl, and so the next morning Loka woke up with the girl's devil leg. She decided to collect the devil's parts along with others' misery, claiming it an enemy to her business, one that ensures her clients suffer permanently, like with the girl Loka. She wishes to take on the devil entirely to end the suffering it could create, by suffering at the hand of the devil herself, which is precisely why she had took the hand that had cursed Kanbaru. Loka had left to continue her mission, telling Kanbaru to enjoy a life she couldn't, but Loka's story doesn't add up, and she can't stop thinking about it. There were holes in her story, her contact with Kaiki strange and not fully explained. Why would Kaiki just tell her of the devil parts without reason to do so? And 2 Rokas? That seems odd. But Kanbaru can't wrap her head around the girl or her story. And to add to the fire, a twist.
3年前に自殺しているんだから。
Apparently there was some stuff going on at home on top of her mental struggles after the injury. Suddenly the 2 Rokas make sense. The one from the story who wished on the devil's leg, and the one who saved her the same person. If Roka is currently dead, and the one we've come to know a ghost aberration of the girl, her memory would be fuzzy and full of holes similar to Mayoi's own when she met Koyomi. So it makes sense why she separated herself into 2 roles in the story. She had killed herself following the assault on her mom, and then coming back as an aberration seeking out the pieces of the devil as her unfinished business. Kanbaru is shaken by the fact Roka has been dead this entire time and goes for a run with no goal in mind. She pushes her body to the limits, collapsing outside of town. Her emotions drained, her head cloudy. A familiar face picks her up.
荒木先輩
Kanbaru lies in the back of his car, telling him she's lost sight of what it is that makes her who she is. Koyomi believes this may be because she's trying to play a role that doesn't fit her, causing her to lose sight of things, or lose them altogether.
好かれたいやつに好かれたいキャラをみんな演じちゃうものなのかもしれないな。
There's something she wishes to change, but it's better left alone cause no one's bothered by it. The devil girl doesn't know she's wallowing in misery. She's blissfully unaware of it, but Kanbaru is bothered by it.
お前が動く理由に十分なるんだ。
Such is Koyomi's way, to act based on his own values, to do what he believes is right, not what he's told is right. The collection of people around her telling her the right way to live has wrapped her in a dizzying circle. People like Roka, her mom, Kaiki. Koyomi gives her the best advice possible.
その誰かってやつはお前じゃねえんだ。
She needs to live by her own wishes, not others.
お前のやりたいようにやっていけばいいんだよ。
It's not that she can't live by the ways others tell her to, but if she can't accept them, if she can't find herself agreeing with it, she should fight it. She's found her spirit and sets out to do what she must, tell Roka of her true existence. Roka is unaware she is dead. She's been wallowing on Earth, collecting suffering and misery for at least a year. Kanbaru gets her to agree to a one-on-one decided by one possession, using the devil's head, which Kaiki all too timely delivered to Kanbaru's house at the exact moment she needed it as leverage. If Roka wins, she can have the head. If she loses, she must give up her search for the devil parts. Before the match begins, Kanbaru confirms the fact that Roka is unaware of her own death, which leaves her shaken. She had conviction coming to the gym, but now that it was time, and whether she won or lost, her situation would be equally difficult to face. She begins buckling. She steals her resolve as Roka comes out from the locker room. The possession begins and ends within a minute. The best thing to do is do something and not regret it. Kanbaru has no regrets of what she did. She won, and the 2 lie there for a minute together. Roka admits she lost, and that she'll give up her search for the devil parts, which means her reason for existing as an aberration has been lost. Kanbaru realizes looking down on her rival that she didn't hate the girl. She was really just envious of her conviction and ability to walk her own path. Sure of herself, not a slave to the words of others. Turning around again, she finds Roka is gone. Without as much as a goodbye, she disappears to what lies beyond the horizon, leaving behind her small collection of the Rainy Devil. She had passed with her unfinished business, being passed off to Kanbaru, who has become the new successor to the role of Devil Hunter. She collects the parts and returns home. Sometimes, good's motive is envy of evil, and evil's motivation, animosity to good. That seems to be Kanbaru's motivation when dealing with Roka, to break down the evil she was instilling onto herself, to free her from it. In their own ways, they burden devil parts as a penance for their actions. Kanbaru's thought of the arm as payment for the thoughts of killing Koyomi. Roka turned her grief for desiring her mother's death into motivation for collecting the parts. The 2 were tied by that, but one of them released the other from their labor and freed herself from the burden that came with the duty as well. With Koyomi, she reflects on the ideas of wishes. Koyomi thinking it's best to know what you'd wish for, regardless if wishes come true or not. It helps one understand who they want to be or what they want to do. Without knowing your wishes, you can become lost and confused in life. Kanbaru believes that was her mom's reasoning for leaving her the pawn. It could be, but in the end, Kids never know what it is their parents were thinking. She decides to part with all her hair, choosing to once more join basketball. Long hair would just get in the way of sports. Her decision to finally say goodbye to the hair is a symbol of her growth, her bloom into maturity, and a funeral for her adolescence. Her reunion with a person from her past and decision-making with her issues allowed her a chance at self-realization, and she has come out the other end different. People will tell Kanbaru she did the right thing with Noka. Others will say she did wrong. But what she did was neither.
お前は青春をしたんだ。
To grow, that's all she did. There are no instructions to living life. We all do it in our own strange ways. We live by different values, different ideas of righteousness and evil. We conflict each other, contradict ourselves. There is no glorified justice to the world like we may see depicted in movies, and realizing that is a mark of maturity. Doing things your way is the closest to a right in this world there is. Even when following your heart, you'll face regret, change of heart's pain, but all of that will shape who you are. Around the world, there are people who will tell you how to live your life, but the real answer has been within you this entire time. It's not an easy journey. It's much more comfortable to live as the person others want you to be. But are you really living by doing so? Or do you have one foot already in the grave? Hiding behind masks, living by others' principles, doubting oneself. Monogatari has tackled it all and more, all in the pursuit of sharing the idea that life's answers are within. Your worries, your mental hardships can only be dealt with by you. Sure, there's things outside your control, things that may happen to you randomly and unjustly. Life isn't fair. People die every day. But we can't ignore our own present. For now, at this moment, you are alive, here now, living life. So why not live it your way, by your values, without a doubt? Grow as a person, fuck up, learn from it, and grow again. Koyomi, Kanbaru, they all will continue this journey of growth until the day they die. Their journey does not end when the story concludes. The anime finishes, my analysis stops. Nothing really ends anyway. Koyomi's story not only continues in our minds, but on paper, and soon in animation. He, along with his sisters and Vampire Shadow, have all returned in the Off and Monsters season, and I'll walk down that road with you in Chapter 4 when the time comes. I shared with you the series that changed my worldview, that made me realize that whatever may come my way in life and in death, that I have control in who I am now, and what I choose to live by, and what I choose to act by, and what I choose to stand by. The world is strange. It acts in mysterious ways. It confuses the shit out of me and everyone, but there's always someone or something you can learn from. Seek it and live by your true self.